We are kicking things off with the ultimate backstab. Our main guy, Suho, an absolute beast with a blade, is gasping in the dirt, forced onto his knees. He is shaking uncontrollably, looking up at the exact squad he used to call family. Nasty dark veins pulse up his arms, a dead giveaway he has been poisoned. He is hacking up his lungs, fighting for every single scrape of air. It clicks almost instantly in his brain. This is not some low-tier dungeon venom. This toxic garbage is straight up lethal. And towering over his fading body, two of his supposed ride-or-die teammates. But instead of throwing him a heal, they are cracking up. These absolute psychos are actually relishing his agony. The party's tank smirks, spitting out that Suho should have just played ball and joined their scheme. But Suho, he wasn't about that life. He stayed totally locked in on his duty, refusing to bend. He chose hardcore morals over dirty money. Get this, his raid team had literally just cleared one of the legendary 5 disaster gates. A literal hellmouth, spitting out nightmare fuel. But these scumbags, they plan to intentionally leave the portal cracked open. No boss kill, no final sweep. They wanted to guarantee a steady supply of monsters crawling out into the world. Why? So they could milk it like an infinite money glitch. Endless threats mean endless paychecks, massive clout, and VIP status. If the world is actually safe, they instantly become irrelevant nobodies, losing all their flex. Flashbacks hit Suho hard, all those chaotic raids, bleeding together in the trenches. He trusted these snakes with his actual life. Now they are casually watching him fade out, without a single ounce of guilt. They even try to gaslight him, claiming he brought this on himself by being the lone buzzkill while the rest of the squad cashed in. Then, their ranger strolls up, completely unbothered, and stretches out a hand, pitching a fake-ass second chance. Give in, join the dark side, and get the antidote. But Suho is not an idiot. Why would he ever trust the exact rats who slipped him venom and grabbed popcorn? Plus, he knows his own body. His system is absolutely fried. The toxins have already hijacked his bloodstream. It is game over. He is not making it out of this cave alive. But if he is going straight to hell, he is dragging at least one of these backstabbers down with him. Running on pure, unfiltered spite, Suho scrapes together every last drop of mana in his soul. An insane, blinding aura explodes out of his dying. It is absolutely suffocating. Half the party instantly freezes, stumbling backward as raw panic sets in. The female mage? She looks like she just saw the Grim Reaper himself. She desperately tries to do damage control, screaming at the ranger looks like he is about to wet himself, fully realizing they messed up. And then, Suho blitzes. In a total blur of motion, he closes the gap. Slash. The tank's arm gets completely shredded. Literally a microsecond later, his blade flashes again, perfectly decapitating the dark mage. The ranger barely dodges the bloodbath, dragging their terrified healer away. That cocky, untouchable energy they had a minute ago? Poof. Gone. Replaced by pure, unadulterated dread. The healer panics, spamming high-tier recovery magic on the bleeding tank, but the wounds are just not closing. Absolutely shook, she realizes her magic is completely useless here. She locks eyes with Suho and witnesses something literally out of this world. He isn't a dead man walking anymore. He is an absolute force of nature, dripping with raw willpower. And his blade? It has completely morphed. It is now glowing, forged from nothing but his unbreakable mindset. The intangible sword, a mythical weapon birthed from sheer, violent determination. But pulling off a god-tier move like that drains everything. The adrenaline crashes hard. Suho's legs give out, and he absolutely crumples. Swaying backward, he tips right over the edge of a massive ravine, plummeting straight into the abyss until he is completely swallowed by the shadows. Leaving the surviving traitors in dead silence. Fade to black. Immediately, his eardrums are blasted with absolute chaos, blaring sirens, panicked screaming, and the frantic stampede of footsteps. A fully geared firefighter is hauling him over his shoulder, but Suho is completely clueless about what is going down. His brain is totally glitching, blurry and spinning out. The whole vibe feels super surreal, like a fever dream. The first responder is sprinting like a madman toward a bunker, dodging through crowds of civilians, absolutely losing their minds. Suho cannot compute what he is seeing. His last memory is straight up dying. He knows for a fact he flatlined. So why is his heart beating right now? Stuck in this rescue operation, super confused, reality finally slaps him in the face. He zooms in on the chaos. A massive rift had just torn open. A full-blown dungeon break is popping off in the middle of the city, and beasts are flooding the streets. And not just any monsters. It is an absolute swarm of swarms of these monsters tore through the streets, ripping up. Scanning the wreckage, Suho spotted a battered transit sign, half buried in the rubble. Cindereem Station. The pieces instantly clicked together. His fragmented memories weren't playing tricks on him. This was ground zero, the exact subway hub totally trashed during a flashgate outbreak. He had lived through this nightmare before. Out of the blue, a stray projectile whistled through the smoke, plunging deep into the shoulder of the first responder hauling him. The guy screamed in agony as his knees gave out, sending both of them crashing against the concrete. The mob was closing in fast. Choking back the pain, the wounded hero shoved Suho, begging him to bolt, but our boy stayed absolutely planted. Instead of dipping out, his gaze locked dead onto the heavy rescue axe discarded on the pavement. Without missing a beat, he snatched the grip, lined up his shot, and launched that massive blade right at the nearest monster. The steel spun through the chaos and buried itself square in the creature's chest, dropping the beast instantly. Right as the adrenaline peaked, a glowing blue interface materialized out of thin air. Holographic text, literally like a video game pop-up. The system prompt had flashed online. It was hyping up his official awakening. For a split second, he just froze, completely mind-blown. Everything was mirroring the past, pitch perfect to his past life. The glowing screen demanded he lock in his combat class. Pure muscle memory almost had him tapping the warrior option. Instinct screamed at him to go melee, but he caught himself. Nah, this run-through, he was holding off on that choice. He shifted his glare back to the green menaces, who were howling with twisted laughter, their shrieks bouncing off the ruined buildings. The freaks were acting untouchable, giggling like absolute psychos, as if they had already won. But Suho was completely deadpan. Zero hesitation. He literally rocketed himself headfirst, and his footwork was insanely crisp, dodging their sloppy swings like he was just strolling through the park. One desperate minion thought it could score a cheap blindside hit. But the second its ugly mug met Suho's cold glare, the creature because standing right there, our guy had just ripped his discarded hatchet out of its buddy's corpse. The monster recognized that blood-stained weapon in a heartbeat, its ugly features warped into sheer dread. Honestly, if these freaks rocked jeans, that guy would have totally wet himself on the spot. Suho gave zero craps, though. He wasn't here to put on a show. Before the scumbag could even squeal, he cleaved right through it with one brutal swing, erasing the beast before it could make the subway even more disgusting. He kept the momentum rolling, snatching up a jagged blade dropped in the dirt. Man was on a mission. He knew this enemy inside and out. Sure, these things were lethal to total noobs. But to an absolute vet who had survived literal hell, to him, this was a total joke. He just kept shredding through the front line, slicing them into ribbons, one by one, moving with a crazy, deadly rhythm that outclassed his previous life. Within just a few minutes, the entire invasion wave was completely annihilated. The massacre wrapped up so fast, it honestly felt like he was using cheat codes. As the smoke cleared, he stared at the dripping steel in his grip. He totally realized he had just let the bloodlust take the wheel. During that slaughter, logic and strategy went completely out the window. He had just let pure, unhinged rage pilot his body, and while that raw, feral power had its perks, he knew that in this chaotic timeline, he desperately needed to stay iced out. But honestly, if his gut was right, he got time-slipped back to day one for a huge reason. This was his total reset, a 1 in a million shot to build his stats from zero, and he absolutely refused to fumble the bag. Out of nowhere, a massive stack of system notifications spammed his vision, hyping up his newly maxed-out blade proficiency. But another detail snapped him out of it. The wounded hero nearby was just gawking at him, completely flabbergasted. That insane display of absolute carnage had definitely raised some eyebrows. The poor guy couldn't help but wonder, wait, is this kid actually an awakened player? Suho just gave a subtle nod, instantly pivoting his focus back to he had officially locked in his ultimate strategy. He was going all in on the healer route. Choice confirmed, he casually strolled up to the bleeding man and smoothly asked to inspect his gaping wound. The poor guy just blinked, totally bewildered. Literally 2 seconds ago, he was playing bodyguard for this kid, and now the kid was trying to play doctor. The math just wasn't mathing. But Suho dove straight into action. He sparked his healing magic, and a brilliant, golden aura instantly went to work. In a flash, the massive gash vanished without a trace. The firefighter was absolutely speechless. Wait, how was this guy a healer? He literally just watched Suho shred through a massive goblin horde, like a seasoned blade master. Before the dude could even process this, a glowing system prompt popped up. It was time for Suho to pick his starting weapon. Zero hesitation. He knew his exact loadout. He grabbed the standard beginner's blade, the exact same gear he rocked in his past life. He locked in, fully prepping to breach the looming portal. Seeing this icy focus totally freaked the firefighter out, sending him into a straight panic. That dungeon was basically a death trap, but Suho was packing a major ace up his sleeve. He had unlocked a core sword mastery passive before even locking in his official class. This was an absolute game changer. Any ability rooted in innate talent ignored all class restrictions. So as he grinded levels, both his base talents and class abilities would scale into absolute powerhouse moves. Suho's mind flashed back. Isabella's Holy Spirit was the ultimate, god-tier evolution of his basic healing spell. If he had wielded that kind of insane power back then, maybe his entire squad wouldn't have been wiped. But this run, he was doing everything flawlessly. The blueprint was set. He was going to dual class as an elite swordsman and a god-tier healer. The memory of his old squad, those toxic snakes who threw him to the wolves, ignited a fierce, burning rage in his chest. He stepped right up to the very portal that had brutally ended his past life. Back then, he was basically dead weight. Now, with elite combat instincts literally hardwired into his DNA, he was absolutely unstoppable. Without batting an eye, Suho crossed the threshold and warped straight into the dungeon. As the blinding light faded, he was completely swallowed by a thick, pitch-black forest. Instantly, a glowing blue alert flashed across his vision, revealing the zone's title, Green-Red. Weird vibe, but he didn't have time to overthink the lore. A few steps down the trail, Suho tripped over an absolute bloodbath, a massive pile of slaughtered goblins. Their mangled bodies littered the dirt track. Judging by their terror, these little runts were desperately fleeing from something way more massive and completely ruthless. Their twisted corpses screamed pure panic, not just a lost fight. A deep, nasty growl echoed through the trees. He whipped his head toward the shadows and locked onto the threat. Two absolute units of hobgoblins were casually dragging a freshly slaughtered monster carcass. These definitely weren't the squishy, low-level mobs from before. Hobgoblins were built entirely different. Massive, vicious, lethal, and the second they locked eyes with Suho, their ugly faces twisted into psychotic grins. To these freaks, fresh human meat was a 5-star meal. They instantly chucked their dead prey into the dirt and leveled their rusty, blood-stained weapons right at him, totally foaming at the mouth for a taste. But here is the massive plot twist they completely missed. The tiny human they were drooling over? He wasn't a snack. They had just cornered the ultimate apex predator. The first giant rushed him, swinging its heavy blade with brutal speed, but it completely whiffed. Suho slipped past like a ghost. He was technically way underleveled for this zone. His starter sword was basically a butter knife against their armor-like skin. But raw stats didn't matter when you had maxed out game sense. He knew their exact critical weak spots. In a blinding flash, he closed the gap on the first hulking beast, driving his blade directly through its massive eyeball. Critical hit. The monster let out a deafening, agonizing shriek that violently shook the surrounding trees. Being the merciful guy he is, Suho put the ugly thing out of its misery with a fatal twist. But oops, he totally didn't mean to one-shot it. His muscle memory was just too cracked, resulting in an accidental, flawless, instant kill. He really wanted to farm the brute for juicy skill proficiency and combat EXP, but he literally melted it too fast. Pivoting to the second hobgoblin, Suho decided to properly milk this one for stats. Seeing its buddy drop dead, the surviving giant absolutely lost its mind, roaring in pure rage as it bulldozed forward with reckless, wild swings. Suho just chilled, completely zeroed in. He casually danced around the chaotic strikes. The monster cleaved left, chopped right, thrashing like a rabid animal. Not a single hit connected. You see, in this system, spamming a specific action is the ultimate hack to unlocking insane new passive skills. Suho completely understood the meta, and right on cue, after effortlessly ghosting a few more deadly slashes, a wicked smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. Bagging an evasion skill was incredibly clutch, but his hunger was far from satisfied. He immediately locked his sights on target number 2. Suho danced through the brutal incoming barrage, batting away the lethal strikes with razor-sharp precision. Deflecting wasn't some basic rookie trick. It was the absolute lifeblood of armed warfare, acting as the ultimate stepping stone for god-tier techniques. It was a total must-have, and he was completely obsessed with snagging it. After flawlessly countering a handful of heavy hits, the system finally chimed in, rewarding him with the coveted parry ability. But sadly, his oversized sparring partner was practically running on fumes. The giant staggered, violently gasping for air as its stamina hit rock bottom. So, exactly like last time, Suho gracefully put it out of its misery. This round ended with a lightning-fast decapitation. No malice involved, just pure bloody business. Now, armed with a pair of brand new abilities, his adrenaline was absolutely pumping. He was itching to clash with the Horde, not just for the wild thrill of the fight, but to grind out insane abilities, farm a mountain of XP, and skyrocket his power levels. Meanwhile, right outside the glowing portal, the waiting hunters were practically boiling over with absolute rage. Word just dropped that some random rogue had crashed their exclusive dungeon without a shred of clearance. The second the rumor hit, explosive profanities echoed through the camp. These guys were fuming, feeling utterly spat on, fiercely ranting about the sheer audacity of this trespasser. A few hotheads were already plotting a brutal beatdown for the mystery gatecrasher. The second that Punk stepped out, there was going to be utter hell to pay. Just a stone's throw from the portal, a first responder was locked in a dead serious debriefing. He was dropping intel to a squad of sharply dressed suits, heavy hitters, straight from the Hunter Association. They were on an active investigation, relentlessly digging for clues about a guy named Suho. The rescue worker spilled absolutely everything, without hesitation. From his terrifying front row seat, Suho was nowhere near your average awakened. The kid had single-handedly slaughtered a massive swarm of the undead, flawlessly stitching up his own brutal gashes mid-slaughter. One of the high-ranking officials looked absolutely shell-shocked. He had rolled up to the scene on time, yet somehow, the goblin infestation was already reduced to ash. And the absolute craziest part? The one pulling off this massacre was supposedly a support class healer. He immediately tried to wave it off as pure cap, based on their massive database. Medics just didn't pack the lethal firepower to solo a bloodbath like that. Yet, if this kid actually flattened a dungeon all by himself, especially a chaotic goblin nest, there was zero chance they could let him slip away. If he really orchestrated that sweep, drafting him into their elite ranks was a top priority. Back on the bloody battlefield, Suho was deep in the zone, ruthlessly executing hobgoblins and watching his XP bar skyrocket. He darted through the shadows like a literal ghost, effortlessly slicing off multiple giant heads with a single, devastating swing. His strikes were surgically precise and completely controlled. Yet, he purposely let one terrified survivor slip through the cracks. A single, freezing death stare from Suho sent the beast sprinting for its life. But that was exactly his genius master plan all along. He needed the coward to run home and fetch the rest of its ugly squad. Taking advantage of the momentary silence, he pulled up his glowing system window. Thanks to the massive slaughter fest he just orchestrated, his raw stats and combat levels had hit a massive spike. Gazing out over the ocean of mangled green bodies, a brilliant idea flashed in his head. Those rotting carcasses were still holding absolute gold. Buried deep inside their guts were precious mana crystals. Sure, these specific drops were super low tier, completely common trash. But cashing them in meant a cool 50,000 won per stone. That massive payday was all the motivation. Suho needed to get his hands dirty. Normally, a powerhouse wouldn't even blink at this grunt work. He couldn't afford to waste a single second, but with his bank account looking more like a broke college student's than an elite awakened, leaving that sweet loot behind was completely off the table. He plunged his hands into the beasts, ripping out the glowing cores one by one, and tossing them straight into his spatial storage. Brushing the grime off his hands, a massive wave of satisfaction hit. The bag he secured was absolutely insane. But the second he finally exhaled, that peaceful vibe violently shattered. A suffocating tsunami of pure bloodlust slammed into his chest. He snapped around, locking eyes with a massive horde of 30 furious hobgoblins. Marching at the very front was the exact same coward he had spared moments ago. And now, backed by an entire army, the green horde blindly stampeded right at him. But Suho didn't even flinch. Instead, he launched himself into the sky with absolute godlike agility. Darting through the shadows like a lethal phantom, Suho dropped multiple hobgoblins in the blink of an eye. Severed heads thumped against the dirt. He carved through their ranks with zero friction, making it look violently elegant. Right on cue, the system chimed in. Level up. Fresh stat points flooded his screen, surging a brand new wave of raw power through his veins. Riding that massive adrenaline high, Suho decided to stop playing around. It was time to wrap up the show. He launched himself right into the thick of the swarm, a blur of flash shredding the mob flawlessly. Suddenly, one gutsy brute sprinted straight at him, swinging for the fences. Flinch? Not a chance. Suho just flashed a manic grin. This dude was literally feeding on the hype. Meet the dungeon boss, a massive chief hobgoblin, sitting pretty at level 20. Playing the heavy hitter, it rushed in for a devastating opening blow. Huge mistake. It whiffed completely. Trying to capitalize, a squad of grunts ambushed his blind spot. But without even bothering to look back, Suho snapped into action, swatting them away like annoying flies. Realizing brute force was useless, the boss pulled a wild card, the fear skill. This debuff was an absolute nightmare. It completely locked down its victim, plunging their brain into pure panic. And obviously, a boss-tier monster was packing a supercharged version of this psychological warfare, even in a low-level gate. Now here was the catch. Our guy was rocking zero mental resistance gear. Absolutely no passive skills to block the psychic damage. He was completely exposed. Smelling blood, the giant green menace stampeded forward for the kill. But spoiler alert, Suho was no amateur. This guy had survived far crazier hellholes than this. He knew the exact cheat code to break the stun. Without a second thought, he cranked his grip on the hilt and sliced open his own arm. The sudden spike of agony shattered the mental lockdown instantly. Brain back online, he deflected the heavy execution strike of the boss with a sickening clash. But instead of trading blows with the big guy, Suho completely ignored him. He locked onto the trash mobs first. Dancing across the blood-soaked dirt, he systematically butchered every single lackey in his path. In less than 10 seconds, the entire minion wave was reduced to dust, leaving only the alpha standing. Before going back for round 2, a soft glow wrapped his arm, sealing his self-inflicted wound. HP maxed out, no distractions, just a pure one-on-one deathmatch. And honestly, the chief hobgoblin was visible. The arena exploded into chaos as they traded heavy impacts. Suho was putting his back into every swing, but let us be real, his stats were still way too low. His blades were just bouncing off the thick hide of the monster, like plastic toys. Trying to outmuscle this tank was obviously a massive fail. Time for a quick pivot. Instead of mindlessly hacking away, he sank his steel deep into its massive thigh, a critical strike to cripple its mobility. Panicking, the boss spammed its praying for a lucky stun. But yeah, nice try. Fear only works if you let it, and Suho had already built up full immunity to that garbage. Completely unfazed, he laser-focused on that bleeding, brutally hammering the exact same wound over and over. He ripped the muscle to shreds. A few savage crits later, the colossal beast finally hit the deck, one tap away from a game over. But Suho was just getting started. Instead of the execution, he sparked up his healing light, a pure restorative spell, and dumped it straight into the boss. The dying beast was absolutely brain-fried by this move. Why the heck was the guy who just mangled it now playing medic? Meanwhile, our boy Suho? He was grinning like a maniac. He had just discovered an infinite glitch. Deal damage, heal the target, and repeat. It was the ultimate live-fire training dummy. So, the dungeon turned into his personal gym. Slash, shatter, heal, repeat. Over and over, he grinds it out. With every single loop, Suho's power skyrockets, leveling up his skill set with massive gains, pushing multiple abilities straight into A and B tiers. Meanwhile, the boss monster totally lost its swagger. It shivers in absolute panic, too traumatized to even make eye contact with our guy anymore. Having squeezed every ounce of XP from this dungeon, Suho hits the ceiling. The beast's role is officially over. It's just an expired stepping stone. Stone-faced, Suho wraps up the run, effortlessly slicing the monster's head clean off. Boom. The dungeon is totally cleared. Suho stands there, the undisputed king of the race, snagging the ultimate MVP title. He bags a massive mountain of bonus XP. He officially hits level 10. A massive flex for any rookie hunter. Even his base regen spell, Healing Light, bumps up to E rank. Plus, he unlocks a fresh ability, Cure. It sounds super basic right now, but at this crazy leveling speed, it's only a matter of time before he can wipe out literally 10,000 crazy toxic debuffs. We're just in the tutorial phase, but his potential is honestly insane. With the loot secured and the boss wrecked, it's time to dip. Suho pivots toward the portal. Back in the real world, the vibe is incredibly sketchy. The magical barrier shudders, sending anxious whispers rippling through the crowd. Did someone actually beat the raid? Before anyone can even speculate, Suho casually strolls out. He is completely unbothered, ignoring the massive chaos he just left behind. Not a single drop of sweat or scratch ruins his aesthetic. Just pure, icy chill. The bystanders are mind-blown, desperately trying to compute who this absolute unit is and what he just pulled off. But Suho? He leaves them on red. He just lets the hype simmer. Seconds later, elite guild recruiters swarm him like paparazzi. They are dead set on locking down the mysterious solo clearer. Yet, Suho dodges every single pitch, brushing off insane contracts and VIP invites without blinking. He totally curves them, gliding right past the crowd, and stops squarely in front of a dude in a razor-sharp suit. Suho drops a super casual greeting. This guy isn't a random NPC. He is the top executive of the South Korean Hunter Association, Yang Chul-min. And based on his totally stunned expression, he absolutely did not expect the raid's mastermind. Cut to the association headquarters. Team leader Yang and Suho are locked in a face-to-face sit-down. From the outside, it looks like a boring paperwork session, but Chulman is internally short-circuiting. His brain is stuck on replay, obsessing over their meetup outside the portal. He recalls how they initially met, the chill handshake, and Suho nonchalantly dropping that he was heading to the association regardless. Initially, Chulman figured it was a basic license refresh, literally standard protocol for veteran players. But as they keep chatting, the bombshell drops. Suho is there for his absolute first-time registration. Chulman's jaw practically hits the floor. He is desperately trying to do the math. How does a guy locking in the healer class solo an entire hellish dungeon without breaking a sweat? Not to mention Suho's whole vibe. Totally unfazed, snacking on chips like he is just hanging out at home. Chulman obsessively rereads the guy's stat sheets. On paper, Suho screams warrior, not medic. The data is completely cracked. He has the brute force and killer instincts, plus the icy nerves of a frontline tank. The math ain't mathing. While Chulman spirals into a mental black hole, Suho cuts through the silence, snapping him back to reality by casually asking if something is wrong. Chulman reboots and launches into the standard interview protocol, running through the basic lore, schooling, background, the usual. But then, the real tea starts spilling. Turns out, Suho is a university dropout. He was literally a phys ed major before ghosting the campus. 99% of those jocks instantly lock in DPS roles like warrior or ranger when they awaken. But our boy swerves so hard, he manually picked the support class. His big galaxy brain reason? He just hates taking damage. Then he recaps the absolute bloodbath inside the portal. He drops the craziest combat details with a deadpan, totally unbothered tone. He conveniently left out the massive flex that the whole thing was an absolute breeze. He just claimed he fought tooth and nail to survive, and that was that. But the second Suho casually name-dropped Chief Hobgoblins like it was nothing, Chulman alarm bells started ringing in his head. Dungeon spawning those absolute units were never supposed to be a walk in the park. Catching on to the older guy's panic, Suho just smirked and calmly triggered his digital inventory. Boom! He dumped his entire stash of dungeon drops right onto the table. The gear slammed down with a massive thud, literally jump-scaring Chulman. His jaw practically hit the floor, and for a split second, he was on the verge of a full-blown freakout. Sitting right there was a massive pile of glowing magic crystals he ripped from the hobgoblins. The bite-sized ones came from the basic grunts, while the massive, super-refined core had been torn straight from the boss himself. Since Suho was completely clueless about their actual street value, he just casually asked the team leader to help him cash them out. Even while desperately trying to keep a poker face, Chulman was completely hypnotized by the stash. It was an absolute snapping back to reality. He locked eyes with the kid, dead serious. He asked if Suho actually wanted to go pro. Suho just gave a slight nod, and you could literally see the stars align in the manager's eyes. Trying not to fanboy too hard, Chulman double-checked if this was just some random, spur-of-the-moment vibe, but Suho just flashed a chill. Nah, he had been plotting this. While Chulman was practically doing cartwheels in his head over landing a recruit like this, the atmosphere suddenly plummeted as Suho spilled his actual endgame. He wasn't chasing clout or a massive paycheck. This was deeply personal. He utterly despised the beasts, and he loathed the portals that spawned them. Way back when he was just a kid, a brutal dungeon break wiped out his entire bloodline. From then on, he was just another ghost in the orphanage system, surviving totally solo. Initially, he thought slaughtering these freaks would somehow numb the massive trauma burning in his chest. But even after burying a mountain of bodies, that suffocating weight refused to let go. The kill count kept rising, but the emptiness stayed. That was his turning point. He knew he couldn't rewind the clock, but he could absolutely weaponize his future. He swore he would never let another soul experience the absolute hell he went through. He wasn't out for blind vengeance anymore. He was fighting to be a literal human shield. He needed to be knee-deep in the trenches, doing the heavy lifting. Which is exactly why he was choosing the badge over the bag. No flashy private guilds, just the official South Korean Hunter Association. Chulman was totally blown away by the raw grit. But as a seasoned vet, he had to hit him with a reality check about the dark side of the job. He laid it out straight. The government's paycheck was literal peanuts compared to the bags those corporate guilds were throwing around. But our boy didn't even flinch at the pay cut. As long as he scored an all-access pass to basically any portal, VVIP, dibs on raiding, and the legal right to completely wreck any corrupt hunters, he was totally sold. Chulman's brain practically short-circuited. See, even though the government suits legally hold first dibs on all the gates, they almost always pawn off those raiding rights to the highest corporate bidder. The math is simple. Absolutely nobody wants to get ripped apart by monsters for a pathetic government salary. Sure, everyone preaches about saving the world, but in reality, they're all just dodging the danger, trying to coast in cushy desk jobs collecting an easy bag, without ever having to step foot inside a lethal dungeon. That's exactly why, instead of risking their necks out on the battlefield. But staring at Suho, Chulman felt a massive vibe shift. This kid wasn't looking for a safe space. He was a one-in-a-million unicorn, a pure-blooded hero desperate to crash the front lines, just to keep everyday people breathing. An actual, unironic believer in serving the public. The sheer hype hit Chulman so hard, he literally started seeing stars, but he slapped himself back to reality real quick. and immediately shifted gears back to processing that massive mountain of glowing rocks. Here's the catch, though. Securing that official hunter license means surviving a brutal two-part gauntlet, a brain-melting written test, and a physical showdown. Massive plot twist, though. The signups for the year were totally dead, and the actual trial was kicking off literally tomorrow. But luckily for our boy, he had the absolute GOAT. Considering the insane fact that Suho basically speedran an entire portal totally solo, there was a massive chance. They could bypass the red tape and finesse a VIP pass from the big bosses. Bending the rules? Easy money. The real nightmare keeping Chulman up, however, was that insanely tough written exam. Cramming for that monstrosity with literally 24 hours on the clock was absolute suicide for any normal human. But Suho, dripping with his usual main character energy, didn't even blink. In his head, when the universe drops an opportunity, you lock in and seize it. Zero excuses. The only glaring roadblock. Our guy's pockets were completely empty right now. He was so dead broke he couldn't even scrape together the cash to cover his exam registration fee. Swallowing his pride, he hit up team leader Chulman to see if he could fence the magic crystals for him. And Chulman, being the absolute legend he is, stepped up to the plate without batting an eye. At this exact moment, the only soul Suho could genuinely lean on was his older bro, Chulman. And honestly, he was incredibly thankful for the carry. Fast forward a bit, and they wrapped up every single aptitude test. The team leader then wired over the cash from the crystal payout. Cutting to the next scene, Suho was absolutely demolishing Chulman's personal snack stash like he paid rent there. Fencing those glowing rocks scored him a sweet 3 million won. Plus, since he officially registered as a government hunter, he unlocked some heavy tax exemptions. But he wasn't done yet. He had one final favor to pull. Word on the street was the association housed the private library, and he desperately needed a cram session before tomorrow's written test. He politely asked the boss for a VIP pass, and obviously, Chulman happily gave him the green light. He even personally escorted Suho straight to the archives, letting him know he could skip the employee ID scan. Right before they split up, Chulman threw him a solid good luck for the big exam. Suho quietly watched his back fade into the hallway, realizing just how solid his older brother still was. Deep down, he knew for a fact. Chulman was destined to claim the president's seat one day. With his bro out of sight, Suho locked his focus onto the bookshelves. He had one clear mission: hunt down anything linked to his previous life. He could recall massive, earth-shattering events that flipped regions upside down, but the fine print was completely blurred out. The human brain isn't wired to drag memories across reincarnations, and he was no exception. But somewhere buried in this room was the missing puzzle piece. A hidden slice of knowledge or an ability he was itching to grab. After digging through the aisles, Suho's eyes locked onto something bizarre. A colossal, ancient-looking tome that was way too thick to slide into a shelf. Intrigued, he hoisted it up. The split second he flipped it open, the system flashed a crazy alert. This relic wasn't from Earth. The prompt revealed it had a unique trigger condition, totally unrelated to reading, and Suho immediately caught the drift. Zero hesitation. He hoisted the massive book over his head like a gamer unlocking a secret quest line. For a hot second, he felt like an absolute idiot. Dead silence. His arms started aching. Irritation spiked hard, because he was 100% positive this was the unlock requirement. Then, right before he dropped a curse word on the stupid thing, the system chimed back in. The artifact, Library of Memories, was hooked by his personal lore. That is when reality snapped. The tome glowed blindingly, space warped around him, and in a heartbeat, Suho vanished from the dusty archives. He was suddenly face to face with a colossal cosmic tree, its roots biting into glowing bedrock, while its branches pierced an artificial heaven. A winding spiral staircase hugged the trunk, twisting into the abyss, and this right here is the Library of Memories. We then find out that this insane place gifts its host the ultimate cheat code, the power to perfectly remember every single thing they have ever witnessed or heard. Even the Usually, our brains survive by deleting the bad stuff, but the second you equip this skill, you are stuck with a cursed, photographic mind. The original master of this power was actually the Hexagon Guild's manager, an ex-employee of the Korean Hunter Association. While she was grinding for a career swap in a regular library, she accidentally triggered this exact skill, just by using a random book as a pillow, because sleeping flat on her face sucked. Suho laughs internally at her insane luck for tripping over a god-tier ability, incredibly thankful she paved the way for him. He promises himself to buy her dinner someday to pay it forward. Suddenly, a blue holographic prompt flashes, demanding Suho to feed his own life story into the library's core. He pauses, letting the sheer weight of this ability sink in. It was the ultimate backup drive for his entire existence, completely bypassing the human flaw of fading memories. Fully grasping the insane value He locks in. Snagging this power was non-negotiable if he wanted to keep a success notification pops up. Out of nowhere, a massive hurricane force gust rips through the void. And the AI announces the library is downloading his entire timeline. Gravity completely dies as Suho lifts off the ground, bathed in an ocean of glowing, floating text. A glowing schematic flares to life right above the ancient tome, instantly declaring that the Library of Memories is now fully online. This insane database will archive every single thing he ever witnesses or hears, basically giving him a VIP pass to his own brain on demand, while dropping crucial hints. Suho just glares down at his own palms, feeling a weird glitch in the matrix during the upload. It's totally obvious this whole dimension is just one massive digital mirage. But hey, a new skill is a new skill, so he takes it for a spin. He shuts his eyes tight and dives straight back into a savage past raid. Boom. He's right there, watching his past self bleeding out and totally wrecked. The raw, unfiltered trauma hits him like a freight train, igniting a fiery rage in his chest that proves just how terrifyingly HD this playback really is. He glares at the backstabbers who left him to die, absolute scumbags who dragged their feet on closing the portal, purely to save their own pathetic skins. He vows to burn their faces into his mind forever. As his mind drifts through a sea of glowing blue screens, the flashback leaves him completely sick to his stomach, wishing he'd queued up literally any other memory. But out of nowhere, a rogue panel flashes red with a mind-blowing alert. He's getting a 1 in a million shot to level up endlessly, crowned as the very first player to ever breach the Transcendent tier. The interface loudly broadcasts a total system reboot, specifically for player on Suho. He's completely stunned as the bizarre void snaps right back into the real world. A crazy theory hits him. Did the admin actually just hit rewind on his entire life? He flashes back to the moment he achieved absolute synchronization with the Divine Blade, scoring that legendary double S tier ability. But right now, sitting at the absolute peak of transcendence, the universe is handing him a wild do-over, a glitch nobody else has ever triggered. Suho pieces it together. This time travel trip definitely isn't some random bug. Cut to the next scene. He hops out of a cab in front of a highly specific drop point. Hitting the pavement, the absolute weight of this second playthrough sinks in. This time around, he holds the power to crush those catastrophic tragedies before they even spawn, and to aggressively shut down those chaotic dungeons that previously wiped out millions. Fired up to speedrun these nightmare zones, he knows the clock is already ticking. He pulls up to a towering skyscraper, Nexus. Cranking his neck to take it all in, he admits the architecture is actually insane, recognizing it as literally the most elite private hunter academy on the entire server. Plus, it's the ultimate goldmine to farm cash and secure his late game. Locking in, he strides through the glass doors. A super bubbly front desk clerk welcomes him, immediately asking what brings him to the guild. Suho doesn't miss a beat. He demands a sit-down with director Kim Soo. The girl behind the counter blinks, totally caught off guard, and checks if he actually booked a slot. Suho shakes his head, but makes it crystal clear this is urgent. He just tells her to pass along the ultimate flex. Tell her the lone wolf who casually soloed the Cinderim Station pre-catastrophe dungeon is waiting in the lobby. The camera cuts to a sleek executive suite, where an ice-cold boss lady officially introduces herself as Kim Soo, the head honcho of Nexus Academy. Our boy shoots back with his own name, On Suho. The boss motions for him to grab a chair, giving him props for the crazy Cinderim clear. Then she cuts to the chase, asking why he crashed Nexus. Suho drops the bomb. He's here to bag a full-ride scholarship. Her jaw practically hits the floor at the sheer audacity. He nods, casually dropping that he's also crashing the official hunter licensing exam tomorrow morning. Still trying to process this absolute fever dream of an interview, Director Kim interrogates him, asking exactly how many years he's been awakened. Suho doesn't blink, literally today. Absolutely floored, she scrambles through her files and stammers out the insane stats. A ghost player who got his powers less than 24 hours ago wants to take the ultimate exam tomorrow and already wiped a disaster tier dungeon by himself? Suho hits her with a cool yep. He smoothly adds that an insider over at the Hunter Association pulled some strings to squeeze him into the roster. His objective? Absolute domination, taking first place. His massive ego completely short-circuits the director's brain. Then, our main character lays out his terms. When he clinches the #1 spot, he wants that VIP Nexus scholarship. Status, locking in infinite funding. Suho is fully aware that for a literal nobody off the streets, securing the top spot sounds like major cap. But he is 0% rookie. He's a scarred, high-level veteran who has survived more brutal raids than anyone could count. If they thought he was bluffing, whatever, that was their funeral. Director Kim internally acknowledges that surviving a lethal raid entirely solo is no joke. Even so, she firmly reminds the kid that the official hunter trials, that was an entirely different beast. With the brutal pass rate hovering under 20%, Suho laid down his terms. If he didn't secure that absolute #1 spot, they could rip up the contract and scrap the scholarship deal altogether. Hooked by his sheer audacity, Director Kim asked why he would pick Nexus over top-tier powerhouses like Hexagon or Prime. Suho didn't pull his punches. He pointed out that while Nexus flaunted the biggest campus, they had seriously fallen off lately. They hadn't churned out a single top-ranking prodigy, taking a massive toll on their— Director Kim swallowed her pride. He hit the nail on the head. Nexus was starving for a monumental win, and not a single kid in their current roster showed a spark of becoming that breakout star. If Suho actually pulled off a first-place sweep, Nexus would ride that massive wave of hype all the way to the bank. In that light, his gamble was flawlessly timed. Yet, the director couldn't stop wondering. What kind of absolute madman walks in and makes a wave? Peaked, she leaned in and asked exactly what kind of payout he was hunting for. Suho deflected, casually asking what the grand prize was for topping the leaderboards. She explained the perk, a solid 30 million won bonus, and a golden ticket straight into the elite Nexus Guild. Suho nodded. Not bad for the nation's biggest academy. But then, flashing a razor-sharp smirk, he casually dropped his counteroffer. 300 million won sounded way better. The sheer number left Director Kim speechless, but Suho didn't miss a beat. He argued that given the insane PR boost of housing the #1 student, plus the massive scale of their operation, that price tag was a steal. For Nexus, 300 million won. Deep down, Director Kim knew he was spitting pure facts. Gritting her teeth, she sealed the deal. If he clinched the top spot, she would hand over the 300 million. Later that night, Suho strolled through the sprawling campus. The deeper he went, the more the sheer scale of the place hit him. It practically dwarfed a massive theme park. Once he officially enrolled, he'd have every single resource right at his fingertips. His personal guide chuckled with obvious pride, boasting that Nexus held the undisputed title of the largest academy in South Korea. But Suho caught the heavy bags under the guy's eyes, realizing the poor dude had probably been dragged out of bed just to play tour guide. Feeling a twinge of guilt, Suho thanked him for the midnight walkthrough. The guide flashed a weary smile, insisting it was no sweat for a total VIP. Suddenly, a silhouette swinging away on the training field caught Suho's eye. Curious, he asked if that was one of the students. The guide nodded, explaining that the kid was an absolute machine, grinding every single night at this ungodly hour like the hardest worker on campus. That hooked Suho's attention. The lone grinder's name was Dihan. The guide called out, telling him not to run himself into the ground. To which Dihan just shot back a bright smile, claiming he had to go all out since his third-year clock was ticking. It clicked instantly. Suho remembered him crystal clear. In his past life, Dihan was a core member of his raid squad. Back in the day, the guy was an absolute wall, the nation's undisputed top-tier tanker, legendary for his godlike endurance and unbreakable defense. It was a total tragedy when pure tanks eventually got phased completely out of the meta. But seeing him right now, watching Dihan awkwardly swing around a massive battle axe instead of hiding behind, Suho instantly grasped the problem. Dihan hadn't even tapped into his true awakening yet. This was the ultimate opening. He could step in, fix the guy's flawed build, and totally recruit him into his own elite hunter squad later on. The guide quickly introduced the two. Skipping the small talk, Suho zeroed in and asked if Dihan seriously planned to main that battle axe. Dihan nodded, completely earnest. Probing further, Suho asked what drew him to such a clunky choice. Dihan scratched his head, explaining that, since he was aiming for a frontline DPS role, his instructors practically shoved the axe into his hands, claiming his bulky frame was built for it. The guide backed him up, hyping up the battle axe as the ultimate weapon for raw, devastating power. Suho raised an eyebrow, asking if Dihan had literally only ever touched an axe. Sheepishly, Dihan admitted it was true. Calling himself a bit of a slow learner, he confessed that juggling different weapons felt like a massive waste of energy. He'd spent 2 grueling years just to become somewhat passable with the axe. And honestly, he still felt super clunky using it. Staring at him, Suho mentally analyzed the whole tragic picture, pinning down exactly what was bottlenecking the guy. It wasn't a lack of grinding. The brute force axe was just fundamentally the worst class for his stats. Dihan wasn't slacking off, he was being crippled by absolute trash tier advice. If that dude's growth stalled straight out of the gate, he should have ditched that weapon instantly. Honestly, Suho couldn't wrap his head around how the nation's most elite academy fumbled something this basic. He pitched a totally fresh perspective, reminding him that players inevitably get their stats recalibrated anyway. Going with a weapon that actually felt like an extension of your own. Sure, system assists can skyrocket your proficiency, but dominating a real battlefield? That takes raw battle IQ and pure experience. For a massive guy like Dihan, Lugging around that battle axe was a massive mismatch. Yeah, it packed a devastating punch. But those brutal cooldown windows left him totally exposed. And with his towering frame, guarding him during those massive delays was basically a nightmare. That reality check hit Dihan like a truck. The dude had literally grinded for 3 straight years, mastering that exact axe. Suho totally respected the insane hustle, but dropped a truth bomb. Dihan's ultimate potential was locked behind becoming a hardcore tank. He urged the big guy to strap a massive kite shield to his left arm and grip a brutal one-handed mace in his right. Suho practically guaranteed this exact loadout would instantly skyrocket his battlefield dominance. Dihan froze up. Swapping his entire class literally 24 hours before the most crucial exam of his life felt like a massive gamble. To break the tension, Suho challenged him to visualize the true anchor holding any elite raid squad together. Most rookies hype up the flashy mages, but the raw, unshakable core, it is always the tank. A tank lives to drag all the aggro and shield their squad. To pull that off, you absolutely need a heavy shield, paired with a secondary weapon to bash down the crowd. The logic finally clicked into Han's brain. Fired up by this new game plan, he fully committed to the switch. Suho was hyped to see Dihan crush his own doubts, totally respecting how fast the guy processed the advice and pivoted. Suho threw him a quick fist bump for luck, and Dihan shouted a massive thank you before marching off. Moments later, the guide chimed in, explaining that Director Kim personally ordered him to show Suho around, treating him like a but now the guide was low-key suspicious. Was Suho secretly an elite instructor? The dude just flexed way too much combat and contract knowledge. Waving it off, Suho made it crystal clear he was definitely not teaching anyone. In his head, though, warning bells rang. A totally unlicensed guy dropping pro-level strats? Yeah, that definitely looked sketchy. He quickly covered his tracks, claiming he was basically a private stakeholder. Buying the excuse, the guide nodded and mentioned his phone just buzzed. The paperwork was officially finalized, meaning it was time to hit the director's office. Fast forward to the morning of the brutal hunter exams. The plaza outside the association headquarters was absolutely swarming with nervous rookies, gripping their blades tightly, desperate to secure those highly coveted hunter badges. Every single soul there had grinded insanely hard for this exact moment, pushing their stats and mental focus to the absolute limit. In a hilarious twist of fate, Suho, the literal beast who solo cleared an entire dungeon, was feeling like complete trash today. Stepping out after crushing the exam, Suho's mind wandered, trying to figure out the actual point of all those strict rules. They hyped up all these intense anti-doping protocols, but honestly, Suho thought the whole security setup was a complete joke. The real scammers weren't popping pills. They were secretly injecting high-tier magical buffs. Right in the middle of the test, one specific girl, along with a few others, flared up with mana pools that a measly level 5 rookie could never nat. Suddenly, a system prompt popped up, confirming his sensory stats were practically off the charts. He had officially maxed out his magic detection passive. Armed with that god-tier radar, sniffing out the fakes was child's play. Even without formal reports, he could literally feel the artificial buff magic radiating off the cheaters. He instantly knew he had to shut this clown show down. Glancing over at Cholman, Suho felt a wave of relief. That at least one genuinely honest dude was in the building. Strolling through the massive corridor, where sweaty candidates were obsessing over their answers, he caught himself feeling like he had accidentally used cheat codes too. Catching up to him, Cholman casually asked how he handled the intense exam. Flashing a confident smirk, Suho guaranteed a passing grade, but quickly flipped the question, asking what Cholman was even doing here. The guy sighed, explaining he was on volunteer duty, because the Hunter Association was chronically bleeding staff. He mentioned rumors that this written paper was a total bloodbath, completely blown away by Suho's chill vibe. Suho casually shrugged, claiming he completely aced the tricky parts, then smoothly asked if he could drop a quick observation. Cholman gave him the green light, strictly warning him not to leak actual test questions. Suho smirked, saying it was in a gray area, and immediately pointed out a massive flaw. During the entire assessment, not a single examiner scanned for invisible aura buffs, and he demanded to know why. Looking completely confused, Cholman asked what on earth a buff scan even was. Breaking it down, Suho pointed out that sure, the officials obsessed over drawing blood and taking lab samples to bust chemical juicing, and aggressively stripped every one of their gear to block artifact smuggling. But they completely ignored the most broken exploit of all, skill manipulation. He pitched a genius idea, deploying active mana radars to instantly weed out anyone coasting on external auras. Cholman totally vibed with the tip, promising to launch a full investigation before the practicals even kicked off. Suho nodded, pivoting to prep for the next phase, but Cholman grabbed his shoulder. The guy looked him dead in the eye, dropping a heavy dose of encouragement. He made it crystal clear he wanted them on the same squad. After a solid good luck fist bump, they parted ways. Suho flashed a grateful grin. Fast forward 30 minutes. The scene at the testing grounds was pure chaos. The PA system blared, hitting everyone with a massive curveball, a 2-hour delay. The official excuse? The staff herded the massive crowd of recruits toward the cafeteria to grab some grub, telling them to chill in the lounge or hit the training zones. But our boy Suho wasn't buying that garbage for a second. His gut screamed that his bro Chulman was already pulling strings behind the curtain. A massive witch hunt had begun, sniffing out the scumbags trying to abuse stat buffs. And man, Chulman moved like lightning. Out of 1,200 desperate hopefuls, the pass rate was already a brutal sub 10%. Weeding out the fakes would absolutely tank that number to a savage 7%. Surviving that kind of bloodbath meant you were an absolute beast. Suho slipped into the shadows, scanning the room like a hawk, hunting for any hidden gems worth his time. Suddenly, a toxic argument sliced through the noise. Some loudmouth was practically begging another dude for a beatdown. The target bit back, barking at the psycho to back the hell off. But the instigator just smirked, playing innocent, and claiming he only wanted a friendly spar. He blatantly mocked the guy, taunting him about being terrified of exposing his trash stats. Boiling over, the victim shoved the troll hard, screaming at him to get out of his damn airspace. Unfazed, the aggressor lazily leveled his practice blade, daring him with a chilling, "What if I swing first?" before the spark could hit the powder keg. Bam! Suho ghosted into the fray, effortlessly parrying the strike with his own wooden sword and forcing the psycho to jump back. The victim was completely shell-shocked, screaming at Suho, asking if he had a literal death wish. Ice cold, Suho just waved him off, telling the dude to take a back seat while he handled the trash. Bewildered, the guy demanded to know who this mystery savior was. Was he an undercover pro? Suho shrugged it off. Just another rookie, he dropped, before throwing a lethal glare at the attacker. He warned the victim that tangling with a loose cannon like this would only get him disqualified, so stepping aside was the big brain play. The sword-wielding freak tilted his, demanding to know why Suho was playing hero. Flashing a wicked grin, Suho dropped his name and served himself up on a silver platter. If the guy was itching for a brawl, Suho was right here. But the bully just sneered, completely unimpressed. He spat on the ground, rejecting the offer to waste his stamina on some low-level NPC. That single word, weak, hit Suho like a physical glitch. The punk claimed that block was pure, dumb luck. He barked at Suho to humble himself and scamper off, but Suho instantly flipped the script. "What, you chicken?" he taunted. The attacker's ego bruised instantly, his face twisting as he demanded what the hell that meant. Suho doubled down, practically daring him to test that luck theory, pushing every single button the guy had. Swallowing the bait hook, line, and sinker, the meathead snapped. He started spewing trash, branding Suho as just another pathetic tryhard. Smirking, Suho locked in the duel, but laid down the ground rules. They do it legally. Get the proctor's green light and hit the official blood ring. The second the referee nodded, the two gladiators stepped onto the mats. The tension skyrocketed, instantly pulling a massive, hyped-up crowd of recruits. The ref laid down the law. 0 lethal gear. Only the dull, wooden association blades were allowed on the floor. He also made it dead clear, the second things got too messy, he was pulling the plug. Go. The instant the match dropped, the psycho lunged like a rabid dog, swinging wildly. But Suho? He didn't even sweat. He deflected the massive blow like swatting a fly. The guy launched himself into orbit, bringing the hammer down for a skull-crushing strike. Swish. Suho sidestepped it flawlessly, completely mind-blown and raging. The madman roared, promising to rip Suho limb from limb. Instead, Suho brutally pinned the guy's blade to the floor with his boot, staring down at him to deliver the ultimate disrespect. Pathetic. That single word sent the dude absolutely nuclear. Let's get real for a second. This maniac was Park Yong, a notorious, bloodthirsty sword fanatic. The guy was a literal combat junkie, always hunting down top-tier prey to crush. His toxic addiction to leveling up had mutated him into an absolute demon on the battlefield. Suho's brain flashed back. He remembered exactly how lethal Yong was in their previous timeline. Seeing this psycho, lumped in with this batch of rookies, totally threw him off. The math was simple. Yong had to be put down, hard and fast, before history could repeat its darkest chapters. Wham! Out of nowhere, Suho launched a devastating kick, launching Yong across the arena like a rag doll. As the bully crashed into the dirt, Suho mercilessly threw his own arrogant words right back in his face. Dazed and gasping, Yong sputtered, completely baffled by Suho's insane power scaling. Suho just walked up, his aura and dropped cold, hard facts. Rushing in like a brainless tank was a rookie mistake. He practically whispered that Yong had clearly never crossed swords with a monstrous before. Up until now, the guy had probably only been bullying squishy level 5s. Wiping the dust off, Yong forced a psychotic smirk back onto his face. He admitted Suho's chill vibe was terrifying, then cracked his neck, swearing to unlock his full arsenal. "Bring it," Suho smirked. And with that, Yang exploded into a blinding tornado of... But Suho dodged every single strike without breaking a sweat, keeping just one hand planted on his hilt. Yang was absolutely swinging for the fences now, his attacks packing weight, and Suho totally felt the heavy, lethal pressure behind each swing. Then Yang popped off, unleashing his ultimate dragon sword technique. A blinding, explosive flash wiped out the arena as their blades violently collided. Convinced he just secured the dub with a fatal blow, Yang started gloating. But the second the smoke cleared, Suho was just standing there, not a single scratch on him. He completely tanked the hit. Shaking out of his mind, Yang freaked out, screaming to know how he pulled it off. Flashing a cocky smirk, Suho roasted him, calling the move way too sluggish. The brutal truth? Yang had only scraped together a bootleg, watered-down version of the legendary dragon sword art. Without an official hunter license, unlocking the genuine technique was literally impossible. Absolutely fuming from the disrespect, Yang rushed him again, swinging wildly, but Suho danced around the heavy blades like a ghost, dropping low into a tight crouch. Suho perfectly baited the guy into one final, desperate lunge. Right as Yang screamed out that it was game over, Suho launched a devastating uppercut straight into his jaw, knocking his lights out instantly. Yang crashed hard onto the floor, completely wrecked and totally out of it, desperately trying to process how he just got folded. Cold as ice, Suho just repeated that the guy was moving in slow motion. Boiling with insane rage, Yang was paralyzed on the mat, angrily cursing the name of Suho under his breath. Staring down at him, Suho figured out that this dude's entire villain arc was about to be hyper-fixated on taking him down, completely ghosting anyone else in his path. Now that the annoying side quest was handled, Suho hoped the exam hall would finally chill out. Off to the side, the proctors watching the bloodbath unfold were totally shell-shocked. Snapping the staff back to reality, Suho casually flagged them down, mentioning he accidentally knocked out Park Yang and asked them to come scrape him off the floor. Cutting to the next scene, Suho was chilling inside a high-tech chamber, completely packed with advanced gear. Scanning the room, he instantly clocked way more elite auras lingering around than earlier. They were definitely undercover anti-doping agents, blending in as regular lab techs. As the chatter in the room cranked up, Suho started getting visibly annoyed, low-key wishing everyone would just bounce and leave him alone. A staff member stepped up, telling him to hop into the capsule and lie flat. The guy ran through the emergency protocols, pointing out the panic button just in case any gear disconnected during the deep dive. Suho gave a quick nod of his head. The machines roared to life, Suho settled in, and thick neural cables locked right into both sides of his temples. A massive holographic window popped up, confirming the Hunter practical exam was officially booting up. As his mind ripped away from his physical body and linked straight into the Matrix, the sync rate rapidly spiked from 5%, jumping to 40%, shooting past 77%, right up to a flawless 100%. The neural link locked in, and his specific healer class simulation violently kicked off. When Suho finally snapped his eyes open, he was dropped straight into a completely shattered, apocalyptic wasteland. Off the rip, he instantly knew this trial was going to be an absolute nightmare, especially since the pass rate for healers was already sitting at rock bottom. Sprawled out right in front of him were brutally injured victims, screaming in pure agony, with several bodies totally crushed under massive concrete chunks. One girl was crying, practically tearing her hands apart trying to heave a giant boulder. Taking in the absolute carnage, Suho internally dragged the Hunter Association for designing such an unnecessarily savage environment. The vibes were already pure trauma. But hold up, before we dive deeper, let us break down how this crazy practical exam actually works. It is literally the make or break moment of the entire Hunter licensing process. The absolute main objective here is to see if a rookie actually has what it takes to survive in their specific role. Year after year, they completely scramble the virtual maps and flip the grading metrics. Usually, you are getting thrown into intense one-on-one death matches, or forced to endure brutal, endless waves of monsters. Your final rank heavily relies on how long you can stay breathing and your total kill count. But if you roll a healer class, the rules totally flip. They do not just care about how crazy your restoration magic is. Sure, mending broken bones is important, but the ultimate, top-tier trait they are hunting for is raw, unfiltered medics who literally throw themselves into the meat grinder to tank hits for their teammates, secure the most elite scores. As horrifying beasts started crawling out of the shadows, Suho mentally unpacked the twisted logic of this trial. The whole point was to act as a meat shield and literally die trying to protect your patients. There was just one massive glitch in the system. His overpowered real-world stats completely carried over. Striding fearlessly straight toward the horde, He locked eyes on checking it out. He realized his durability was way too insane. He would have to absorb an unimaginable amount of damage before flatlining. Unlike normal, he heavily questioned the brain-dead logic of just standing there, letting some low-level mobs tear him apart. Honestly, getting killed once was already enough trauma for one life. All around him, the simulated victims shrieked in absolute terror as the bloodthirsty pack closed in. But Suho stayed cold, fully aware that every single scream tearing through the air, the brutal truth. He was standing in an absolute graveyard. Stepping over the fallen, he closed in on a trembling survivor, softly checking if she was still in one piece. Shivering uncontrollably, she begged him to run before the nightmare fuel came crawling back. But Suho wasn't about to bail. He knew the actual endgame here. His mission was zero fail, guard her until the clock ran out. Kneeling down, he locked eyes with her, swearing on his life that backup was coming. Jaw clenched, he planted his feet into the dirt, gripping his weapon as the next wave of freaks closed in. Meanwhile, back in the control room, the simulation pods hissed open, spitting out exhausted players one after another. A dude stumbled out, totally kicking himself for fumbling his run. An admin gave him the standard, "good hustle," telling him to grab his gear and clear the room. Pivoting away, she glided over to the next setup and tapped the monitor. The screen flashed a player's profile right in her face. Kang Jin-young, rocking the Archer class, clocking in at 9 minutes and 4 seconds. She sighed, muttering how this season's leaderboard was completely tanking because the exam was insanely brutal. Catching a vibe, she glanced over and asked Director Shin how long Suho had been grinding in the tank. Shin casually dropped the bomb, 30 minutes. Her jaw literally unhinged as she echoed the number, refusing to process that kind of survival time. Sprinting over to Suho's rig, she practically slammed her face against the glass to check the stats. Exactly 30 minutes. Brain fully short-circuiting. She demanded to know if this guy was a frontline warrior. Shin just smirked and corrected her. Suho was a straight-up healer. Calling total cap, she accused him of messing with her. But Shin just tapped the glass, pointing straight at the heavy blade in Suho's hand, telling her, huddled around the monitor, they pulled up the live feed. Seeing Suho absolutely styling on these beasts, she gasped, asking a second time if this guy was actually a medic. Blown away by his insane combo strings, she wondered out loud if he'd catch a ban for completely refusing to die in a survival test. But Shin shut that down fast. There was zero rule forcing players to bite the dust. The true win condition was just keeping the VIP alive until the timer hit 0. She slowly nodded, finally getting it. Shin broke it down even more. Suho was absolutely crushing every single objective. He never ditched the girl, held the front line right next to her, and kept popping heals the entire time. He was literally throwing himself into the meat grinder just to keep her safe. As long as he checked those boxes, handing him an L was completely off the table. Hearing that, the admin smiled, realizing the MVP of this whole exam was already locked in. Back in the Matrix, Suho was still throwing hands, yet, even surrounded by monster dust, the guy wasn't satisfied. He needed to push harder, move faster. When the next wave spawned in, he tore through them back to back, without breaking a sweat. His eyes locked in absolute flow state. And before long, he completely wiped the map. Suddenly, a blue holographic alert flashed. Your grasp of tactical movement is off the charts. Congratulations, you have mastered the footplay skill. Suho scanned the floating text, a smirk creeping up his face. He realized that even though this was just virtual reality, the physics engine was so insanely realistic that the system could track his actual muscle memory. The AI registered his manual inputs, proving he could literally grind physical stats right here in the pod. Basically, even if the experience drops were totally nerfed compared to the real world, it was still an S-tier training ground. Aside from just hacking and slashing, he had stockpiled a bunch of passives and leveled his core blade skills all the way to A rank. Sure, there was no loot or raw experience to farm, but the stat bumps were absolutely worth it. If he kept grinding until every single sword skill hit A rank or beyond, he could easily unlock an ultimate move, just like Park Yong's legendary dragon sword technique. Out of nowhere, another notification pinged. Epic milestone unlocked. Your blade proficiency just broke the server limits. The system is hyped by your custom combat flow and demands to officially register it. Do you want to forge a brand new class skill by fusing your core sword arts with your advanced footplay? Suho cracked a huge grin. It was finally time to birth his own meta, Guardian Sword. A prompt flashed up, asking him to lock in the official name. He slammed yes without hesitating. The system instantly spammed him with congratulations for reaching God-tier mastery, crowning his brand new, totally unique combat style, Guardian Sword S. This busted new perk passively buffed all his weapon and movement stats by a massive 50%. To top off the achievement, the system gifted him 10 free stat points, and literally told him to keep dominating the swordsman's path. One last golden text box sealed the deal. He had officially unlocked Sword Mastery S, a crazy rare VIP perk, only given to true blade gods. This instantly ripped away all level caps for learning new sword moves, stacked another insane 50% multiplier onto all his blade abilities, and completely wiped out any weapon restrictions. Suho zoned out, his mind flashing back to his previous life. Back in the day, grinding to this absolute god-tier level had drained more than 10 years of his blood, sweat, and tears. But hitting the reset button with all that future intel, total game changer. He was speedrunning his progression now, fully aware that his stock was skyrocketing. Snapping his attention back to the grueling trial, he mentally ran the numbers. The mob spawn rate was totally capped from the start. He honestly wondered how much insane prep the organizers threw into building this arena. But now, with every single side quest checked off, the crossroads boiled down to just two brutal options: either get completely obliterated by these beasts, or literally slaughter every last one of them. Cut to the control room. The proctors glued to the live feed were absolutely They literally could not process the absolute madness unfolding on their monitors. For the very first time in testing history, a rookie had just solo cleared the entire dungeon. They were completely shook, not just because his combat mechanics were cracked, but because he flawlessly clutch-healed the VIP too. One examiner scoffed, joking that they might as well toss the leaderboards in the trash at this point. The MVP was locked in. Fast forward a couple of days, and the camera pans over to the ultra-sleek Hexagon Guild HQ. Some cocky executive was basically flexing that their golden boy, Kian, was guaranteed to snatch that #1 crown. His buddy nodded along, hyping up the insane amount of but then somebody spotted the official winner's notice. The second they read it out loud, the entire room just froze. Spoiler alert, Kian didn't take the W. The name stamped on that paper? Suho. The whole squad was totally paralyzed. The vibe in the room instantly nosedived into sheer panic, with someone frantically demanding Kian's location. Right as the guildmaster's phone started blowing up, we smash cut to a totally different vibe. Suho was currently chilling, chatting on the phone with the team leader. The boss man opened up by saying sorry for the delayed hype, explaining he had been completely buried under a mountain of paperwork, but he made damn sure to give Suho his flowers for bagging that absolute top score. Honestly, he confessed, he never expected the kid to flex that kind of flawless consistency. Suho played it totally cool, humbly bouncing the credit right back to the leader's guidance, but the older guy instantly waved off the compliment, insisting that Suho's epic carry was 100% his own doing. Plus, he dropped a massive bombshell. Suho's god-tier run accidentally exposed a massive ring of dirty players. Losers who were straight up exploiting illegal buffs to artificially inflate. Thanks to that drama, future trials were about to get slammed with insane security patches, which was honestly a huge win for everyone. Then, the leader lowered his voice, carefully dropping the million-dollar question. Was Suho still down to sign with the Elite Great Hunter Association? Suho didn't miss a beat, explaining that while he might surf with his current guild for a hot minute, his endgame was absolutely locked in. He was still dead set on joining the big leagues. The leader practically breathed a sigh of relief at that straight-up answer, promising to ping him the second the official draft dates dropped. Suho flashed a knowing grin and agreed. Right before hitting end, the boss reminded him to actually fuel up and stop neglecting his HP, to which Suho fired back the exact same warm advice. Call over. The camera lingers on the leader, staring intensely at some mysterious object in his palm, quietly muttering to himself that he really should grab a bite. Flashback to our boy. Suho just stood there, staring at his screen. The vibe in the leader's voice was low-key giving him major red flags. It just sounded off. Was something secretly going down? But before he could deep dive into that paranoia, his screen lit up with glancing at the caller ID. A smirk tugged at his lips. He knew exactly who was dialing. He swiped to answer, throwing out a smooth greeting. It was Kim Soo on the line, practically glowing with hype as she congratulated his massive victory and confirmed the cash bag had already hit his account, exactly as they had negotiated. Suho gave her major props for the lightning-fast transaction, impressed by how insanely professional her mega guild operated. And then, she dropped the bait. She straight up headhunted him for the Nexus Guild, swearing on her life that their perks would utterly body anything the rival factions were offering. Intrigued, Suho pushed back, asking just how deep their pockets actually went. Kim Soo didn't even blink, vowing to pull every string necessary to meet his wildest demands. Since he was literally their sponsored prodigy and the top dog, she bragged that ripping up and rewriting the contract terms would be a total walk in the park. She was so eager, she pushed for a face-to-face sit-down to ink the deal immediately. But our guy? He smoothly curveballed her, claiming his schedule was completely booked with real-life stuff for the day. He promised to check his calendar and get back to her soon. Still, he left her a massive breadcrumb, teasing that since Nexus had essentially funded him, signing with them over some random competitor was just basic math. That single sentence sent Kim Soo straight to the moon. She was literally vibrating with so much adrenaline that the entire office floor started giving her weird looks. She basically begged him to ghost any other recruiters until they talked. Chuckling at her frantic energy, Suho locked in a promise to meet up soon. Hearing the dial tone, a sly grin crossed his face, her desperate, hyper-excited voice still echoing in his ears. Right on cue, his cab driver hollered from the front seat. They had finally hit their destination. Suho tossed a quick thanks and stepped out into the crisp air. Pausing on the sidewalk, he let the weight of the day's chaos wash over him. He'd absolutely crushed the exam, bagged his official license, and secured the bag. Phase 2 was officially locked in. Eyes burning with quiet resolve, he marched ahead, totally hyped to start grinding at Lighthouse General Market. Scrolling through his screen, Suho smirked at how effortlessly he'd stockpiled all his essential gear. Only one crucial missing piece remained: a weapon. Dodging the massive, tourist trap armories, he tracked down a shady, hole-in-the-wall spot. The mainstream stores were trash anyway. Lingering by the battered door, he prayed this ghost town of a shop held the hidden gem he desperately needed. Pushing the creaky door open, Suho tossed a casual nod to the grizzled owner, who immediately grunted, asking what he was after. Suho played the rookie card, claiming he just awakened and desperately needed something light to swing around. The old man basically scoffed and pointed him toward the bargain bin. Sweeping his gaze over the rusted junk, Suho caught the thick blankets of grime. It hit him. These low-tier scraps had 0 stat cards, but no stats didn't automatically equal trash. Some gear just needed a hardcore jumpstart, a sick process called liberation, to awaken their god-tier potential. These sleeper hits leaked a razor-thin, almost invisible aura. To basic hunters wandering in here, it was totally undetectable. Gripping a battered polearm, Suho silently sparked his magic detection. A wicked smirk crept across his face. Bingo! He hit the jackpot. Strutting out of the alley with his new spear, Suho chuckled to himself. If that old guy ever figured out what he just gave away for pennies, he'd straight up riot. But now, the real grind started. Shutting his eyes, Suho hyper-focused, violently pumping his mana straight into the rusty shaft. Instantly, the weapon turned into a black hole, violently sucking his magic dry. Sensing the lethal drain, Suho yanked his hands back and crashed to the concrete, gasping for air like he'd just run a marathon. His heart pounded. One more second, and his core would have shattered from absolute mana exhaustion. To snap this beast out of hibernation, he couldn't flex it right now, but this spear was guaranteed to be an absolute game-changer down the road. Clenching his fists, he vowed to speedrun his leveling and unleash this weapon's true carnage. Cut to the glitzy PBS headquarters. Hotshot reporter Jinwei's phone randomly started buzzing. It was Suho. Skipping the small talk, Suho dropped his name and casually flexed that he was the absolute #1 draft. Oh, and the cherry on top? He casually leaked that he was the Phantom player who solo wiped that apocalyptic Cinderim Station disaster. Jinwei's jaw basically unhinged. Dead silence filled the room as his brain short-circuited. Some random, unlicensed kid had solo cleared a lethal dungeon before even getting a badge? To Jinwei, this guy wasn't human. He was a straight-up anomaly. Sweating, the reporter demanded to know why this freak of nature was calling his private line. Suho kept it chill. He'd stalked Jinwei's deep dive blog and openly acknowledged the reporter's crazy rich kid background. But instead of hating, Suho respected the hustle. He knew Jinwei chased raw stories out of pure, unadulterated passion. Suho laid it all out. He was about to break the internet with insane moves, and he wanted Jinwei riding shotgun as his personal hype man. Jinwei immediately threw up his defenses. Was this lunatic seriously trying to leash a Silver Spoon journalist as his personal errand boy? Deep down, he wanted to write Suho off as a chronically online tryhard tripping on main character syndrome. The logic was totally tracking, but the whole setup left a seriously bad taste in Jinwei's mouth. Yeah, he lived and breathed for viral scoops, but bowing down to some newbie? Catching the vibe, Suho quickly smoothed it over. He didn't want a dog on a leash. He needed a ride-or-die partner. Jinwei wasn't holding back. He coldly called Suho out, accusing him of farming clout to milk a fatter contract from the big leagues. Suho laughed. It wasn't a total lie, but cash wasn't the goal. He wasn't hunting for a payday. He wanted massive, blinding fame. Because his ultimate endgame? Becoming a totally average government employee. Jinwei mentally blue-screened. Wait, did this maniac seriously just mean enlisting in the Hunter Association? Chasing god-tier clout just to land a boring desk job sounded completely psychotic, but Suho's voice was dead serious. He wanted boots on the ground, grinding in the field as part of the very Hunter Association. Jinhui narrowed his eyes, probing into the guy's roots. Was Suho just another trust fund baby treating hunter work like a flashy side quest? Suho fired back with the harsh truth. He was a gate orphan. That traumatic past fueled his obsession with public service, shaping his ultimate drive to obliterate gates. Jinhui's gaze flicked to his glowing laptop screen, deeply skeptical. With so many clout chasers popping up lately, was this guy actually for real? The lines were blurring, but ultimately, Jinhui just shrugged it off. He respected the hunter's grim perspective, yet flat out rejected the pitch. He liked pulling the strings on his own scoops, but Suho wasn't about to back down. He threw down a wager. Intrigued, Jinhui took the bait and asked for the stakes. Suho promised to secure the journalist's loyalty by backing up his talk on the battlefield. He casually dropped a bombshell. He was going to solo the Tower of Challenge, right then and there. Jinhui's jaw basically hit the floor. That specific dungeon was an absolute death trap. Conquering it was labeled a suicide mission, even for a fully stacked squad. Running it completely alone? Pure lunacy. Yet, Suho held utter conviction. If he survived the bloodbath, he knew it would completely sell the reporter. The ultimate prize? Jinhui would become his dedicated, ride-or-die media mouthpiece. Suho's mind flashed back to the Jinhui he knew in his past timeline. He had been a legendary PBS anchor. Notorious for his massive ego, the man blew up online as a ruthless journalist who bowed to nobody. Despite that, in Suho's previous life, the duo had joined forces countless times. That partnership thrived purely on Jinhui's lethal investigative skills and insane grip over the public narrative. But that exact genius painted a massive target on his back, turning him into a nightmare for the higher-ups. Eventually, political crossfire dragged Jinhui down, forcing him into a bitter early retirement, before he vanished from the spotlight entirely. This time around, Suho made a silent oath to rewrite that tragic ending. Right over the phone, he laid out his terms. If he crushed the Tower of Challenge entirely solo, Jinhui was locked in as his exclusive PR weapon. Still reeling from the sheer audacity, Jinhui accepted the challenge. If this wild kid actually pulled off the impossible, the reporter swore to throw his entire arsenal of media influence behind him. The line went dead right after Suho coldly announced it was showtime. Staring at his phone, Jinhui groaned in pure frustration, feeling like this kid was actually pushing him to the edge. His brain kept spinning over that bizarre, out-of-nowhere demand, completely baffled by the sheer nerve of it. Yet, underneath the heavy annoyance, he kind of vibed with the idea. The pitch felt weirdly authentic, and Suho definitely didn't give off cheap scammer energy. Trapped between major annoyance and burning curiosity, Jinhui muttered that he was officially losing his mind. Brushing the stress away, he treated it like a low-risk dice roll. If the guy was legit, massive W. If he was faking, zero harm done. The camera cuts straight to the towering gates of the Tower of Challenge. Suho steps up to the heavily guarded entrance, flashing his hunter badge. The guard instantly spots the lack of a crew and flashes a warning glare. Going rogue is completely legal, but it's basically a death wish. Judging by the fresh ID number, the guard figures this rookie just scraped through his exams. The veteran urges him to find a squad, warning that even the absolute bottom floors chew up and spit out beginners. But Suho shuts the advice down, dead set on his solo run. Yielding to the kid's stubbornness, the guard slaps him with the 70,000 won entry fee, telling him to settle the tab when the invoice drops. Suho gives a cool nod, tossing a quick thanks over his shoulder. The guard yells out one final warning, begging him to bail the second things go sideways. Without looking back, Suho acknowledges the warning and strides into the abyss. As the shadows swallow him, he thinks over the dungeon's reputation. It's hyped up as a brutal sandbox for low tiers. Capped under level 20. This government-funded raid zone exists purely to grind stats and bulk up rookies. With his power fully reset to rock bottom, there is literally zero better spot to launch his comeback arc. Pushing past the heavy iron doors, the system interface chimes, instantly locking in his presence. A blue screen flashes, offering him a panic button, scream surrender, and he gets warped back to safety in a heartbeat. Suho manifests his blade out of thin air, just as the system triggers the first floor's brutal trial. A massive slime morphs from the ground, immediately lunging for the kill. Dodging the strike, Suho clocks the beast's massive bulk and insanely fast reflexes, which throws him off balance for a split second. Even though it's basically a level 1 mob hitting like a wet noodle, its erratic bouncing is getting under his skin. Getting bogged down here would totally wreck his speedrun. Eager to wrap this up, Suho thrusts his steel violently straight through the slime's glowing core, shattering it to pieces. But the victory is short-lived. This thing clones itself. The sickening reality sets in. When the heart fractures, it spawns a whole swarm of mini, hyper-aggressive duplicates. Sure, there is a hard cap on their endless cloning glitch, but the sheer volume is deadly. That gross regeneration hack is exactly why normal players drag a full squad into this hellhole. Because in here, mobs crash the party in endless waves on every single floor. Not missing a beat, Suho unleashes a flurry of strikes, ruthlessly shredding the multiplying horde. He launches himself skyward, impaling a monster mid-flight, before yeeting his blade to snipe a second target. Free-falling back down, a slime whips a gnarly tentacle straight at his face. Suho snatches the slimy appendage mid-drop to break his fall, using that raw momentum to slingshot himself even higher, unleashing an absolute masterclass in swordsmanship. He shreds the incoming tentacles and completely wipes the floor with the remaining mobs. A system prompt flashes, confirming he just dominated floor 1 and asking if he's ready to push forward. Suho glares upward, absolutely locked in. With 48 more brutal levels staring him down, he isn't wasting a single second. The interface chimes, kicking off floor 2's trial. Suho flashes back to the infamous Tower of Challenge, recalling that back in his past life, the absolute peak run ended at floor 48. Right now, the global server record is hard stuck at 29. And both of those milestones required massive squads. Normally, hunters raid this death trap in full parties, and the head count totally scales the difficulty. Running a massive squad means nerfing your own XP gains, but it keeps you from getting flatlined. Most tryhards chasing the leaderboards stack their rosters with 20 max-level heavy hitters. Chewing on that intel, Suho absolutely bulldozes through floor 18. Gazing up, he knows he doesn't have to play by the mainstream meta. Without even blinking, he hits accept for floor 19, instantly triggering the next bloodbath. Ditching the endless mob spam from the earlier zones, this arena spawns one absolute unit of a boss. Sure, the enemy hits like a freight train, but soloing this beast guarantees an instant fast track to the next level. The literal second the Titan materializes, Suho with a single, devastating slash. The system pings, declaring floor 19 completely conquered, and offers the warp to 20. But instead, Suho hits the brakes, crouching to inspect the boss's remains. Something feels incredibly off. While normal mobs disintegrate into ash instantly, this carcass straight up drops a glowing red gate. It's a massive clue from the tower, basically screaming that there's a hidden secret to uncover. Suho snatches a unique drop from the gore, instantly clocking its hidden utility, even if it's completely useless by itself. Pinging his mana radar, he uncovers a cloaked dimension tethered directly to that red gate. This secret zone happens to be the personal subspace fortress of the infamous Fortress King, Jongpyong-ho. This pocket dimension is wildly overpowered, because unlike basic item-crafted realms, it actually lets living targets warp in and out with zero restrictions. Stepping through the rift, Suho drops into a damp, massive, rocky cavern. A radiant orb materializes out of nowhere, and the system drops a bombshell. The original admin has flatlined. A prompt asks if he wants to claim the title. He clicks yes, grabbing the core as it violently merges straight into his flesh. The HUD flashes, crowning Suho as the absolute ruler of the subspace fortress, stripping its item status completely. It's now a permanent, soul-bound passive skill. The interface also breaks down. How the base's aesthetic will morph based entirely on his raw mana output. Suddenly, the entire cavern begins to warp. The jagged rocks glitch out, instantly reforming into a sleek, fully furnished lounge. Mind absolutely blown, Suho realizes. This feature is insanely high tier. The square footage literally scales with his mana stat and customizes itself to match his exact vibe. He breathes a massive sigh of relief, glad he gate-kept this god-tier power from Jongpyong-ho. That psycho used to stash literal everything here, from black market loot and illicit goods to straight-up hostages, flashing back to the pure trauma of those restless nights. Fueled by those sick crimes makes his stomach completely turn, but with the keys in his hands, he guarantees that nightmare is cancelled for good. By completely deleting the future Fortress King and securing an ultimate private stronghold, Suho knows he just pulled off a monumental W. Eyes blazing with fresh hype, he gears up to conquer the next tier. Meanwhile, Zhou Jinhui was doom-scrolling his feed, his eyes glued to a rapidly trending article. He peeped that a massive wave of cadets were suddenly hardcore, flocking to the Nexus Guild. Suho had previously hyped up his goal of joining the Great Hunter Association, but these leaked press releases heavily hinted that Nexus was dead set on poaching Suho for their roster. Jinhui wasn't buying it, only time would expose the truth. Still, he was totally obsessed with figuring out Suho's current floor count. Out of nowhere, a global server ping blasted across his screen. Floor 30 was officially cleared. The unbeatable Tower of Challenge record was absolutely decimated, and some absolute madman was already stepping onto floor 31. The surrounding crowd went dead silent, their jaws practically hitting the pavement. Whispers erupted. Was this a fresh high score, a massive guild run, or something way crazier? The collective mind-blown state only got worse when the server suddenly flashed again. Floor 31, obliterated, and the timer had barely even started. Jinhui stood paralyzed. If that was actually Suho in there, his entire read on the guy was totally off base. Up to this point, he figured Suho's flexes were just pure luck and flashy stunts. But if this god-tier speedrunning was legit, then Suho was a massive threat he'd be locked in a permanent rivalry with for the long haul. Over at the Hunter HQ, Director Kim caught wind of the chaos and was visibly sweating bullets. She scrambled to verify the live intel. Suho was literally shattering high scores in real time. Clocking his insane worth, she knew they had to drop a bag so massive. The kid would be crazy to say no. She barked at her squad to page the top brass, then ordered everyone to speed straight back to the main base. At the same time, Chol-min watched Suho's brutal blitz through the Tower of Challenge, and knew they were witnessing absolute history. If this guy was seriously down to sign with their crew, they were looking at a literal generational GOAT. Suddenly, his screen lit up. The VP was calling. Heart racing, Chol-min swiped to answer. The big boss immediately demanded his location. Learning he was camped right outside the Pangyeo gate, the VP pounced. His order? Drag Suho straight back to the boardroom. Chol-min's eyes sparked, hype building because he thought he just scored the ultimate recruitment mission, but the VP instantly crushed his vibe. This wasn't a drafting pitch. He literally just wanted a cheap PR photo op of Suho shaking hands with the chairman. Click. The line went dead, leaving Chol-min fuming. Gritting his teeth, he muttered to him, this toxic, clout-chasing management was the exact reason civilians dragged them as a washed-up, useless organization. In his gut, only frontline warriors had any right calling the shots. He glared back up at the monolith, brain scrambling for a decent hook to reel Suho in. Cut back to the grind. Suho had just nuked floor 48, shattering the leaderboard yet again. But the heavy burnout was kicking in. Sprinting non-stop through this hellish gauntlet was literally draining his life force. He caught himself wondering, when does this insane bloodbath actually stop? But the moment he popped open his holographic HUD, his mood spiked. Locking in level 39 felt like a massive win. Every single cleared stage dumped 5 bonus stat points into his lap, and hitting apply felt better than opening a premium loot crate. Having the server mechanics totally figured out made this whole thing feel like min-maxing a hardcore RPG avatar. A god-tier alter ego. And low-key, he was addicted to the grind. Stats optimized, Suho cracked his knuckles for the ultimate showdown. Floor 49 initiated. A blinding crystal pulsed in the arena, splitting open to spit out the apex predator. A level 49 tower dragon. Suho locked eyes with the behemoth, instantly realizing this fight was totally rigged, even if it lacked purebred genetics. Just having dragon DNA made its base stats unbelievably OP. He seriously questioned if the server even designed this nightmare to be beatable. But Suho hadn't come this far to choke. Zero hesitation. Jaw locked tight, gripping his blade. He blitzed the raid boss with absolute zero chill, hungry for the finish line. He closed the gap for a lethal strike, but the monster immediately clapped back. The dragon unleashed a terrifying, face-melting counterattack, forcing Suho to launch himself skyward just to survive. Hanging in midair, a chilling detail clicked. For a creature built like a massive tank, this thing's agility was totally glitched. Out of nowhere, pitch-black energy bled from its talons, generating a massive gravitational pull that started reeling Suho straight into its gaping, razor-sharp maw. Messages from becoming a mid-fight snack, Suho physically planted his hands on the beast's snout, vaulted directly over its armored skull, and brought his heavy blade crashing down with everything he had. The reptile shrieked in absolute rage, thrashing its massive neck with such psycho force that Suho got violently launched across the arena, skidding back into a defensive stance. Gasping for oxygen, a terrifying reality set in. His ultimate, full-power strike literally did zero damage. He basically just pissed the thing off. The angry Drake retaliated by stomping the arena bedrock with apocalyptic weight, sending seismic fissures shredding through the terrain. Suho dove hard behind a giant boulder, quietly thanking the heavens he just dumped his points into vitality. If his defense was even slightly lower, that AoE blast would have easily one-shotted him. The grim math instantly clicked. Sure, its actual level wasn't totally capped, but its racial passives gave it literally impenetrable armor. Basic hacking and slashing was a total waste of time. He had to aim for the critical hitbox, the mythical reverse scale. After all, this beast wasn't level 100 yet. It had to bleed somewhere. Scanning the massive beast revealed one glaring flaw. It couldn't entirely mask that one cursed scale. Suho locked eyes on the fatal weak spot, right down by its tail. Zero hesitation. He blitzed forward, slamming his strike into that concrete thick armor with everything he had. The monstrous reptile shrieked in pure agony. Instantly, a system alert popped up. Landing a critical hit on its weak point had thrown the tower dragon straight into a bloodthirsty frenzy. Leaving his blade buried deep inside that reverse scale, Suho braced himself. This boss fight was nowhere near over. Playing the long game here was basically a death sentence. Surging with raw energy, he forced the steel even deeper into the beast's flesh. Totally losing its mind, the dragon triggered its ultimate crowd control move. Suho's muscles instantly locked up. His vision warped as nightmare-fueled hallucinations hijacked his brain. The interface flashed, status effect, fear applied. He desperately tried to cleanse the debuff, but the system shot him down fast. This wasn't some low-tier spell. The terror was way too high level to just casually. A split second before that colossal tail could smash him into absolute paste, Suho ripped open a portal to his personal dimension and ghosted out of the arena. Hitting the ground safe, he practically inhaled a purification potion. A sweet system ping confirmed the cleanse, and the creepy letting out a massive breath, he grounded himself. This subspace was his ultimate safe zone. No one was getting in unless he explicitly gave them the green light. He just randomly scooped up that potion from the general shop, having literally zero clue it was going to save his life this fast. This raid was turning out to be way more insane than he budgeted for. Wiping the fear debuff once didn't grant him some magical immunity buff for round 2, and standard healing magic was completely trash against it. Bouncing back and forth to his safe zone just to spam potions? Yeah, that strategy was completely chalked. He'd burn through his stash in no time. He desperately needed a new play. Ripping through his inventory, he debated tagging in the Mad Pulverization Scholar for backup. But right before he made the call, the system hit him with a massive update. A skillbook unlocked a beginner crafting recipe, and suddenly, a massive fusion jar materialized right in front of him. Instantly realizing the insane potential, he tossed 3 completely random drops straight into the pot. The unknown thief's socks, the unknown minstrel's instrument, and the unknown cleaner's broom. The jar lit up, kicking off the crazy fusion sequence. Suho smirked. When you run a fusion with a guaranteed absolute recipe, there is zero chance of failing. People loved to toss out so-called trash loot, completely blind to the insane stats hidden inside. The fusion flared out successfully, birthing an ultra-rare artifact. The first Mumu, a crazy powerful ring spawned from a starter recipe. Plus, the system blessed Suho with 10 bonus stat points, just for being the first player ever to craft it. In this world, claiming a world-first item practically guaranteed an S-tier drop. But this bad boy? It was S+. Purely because it was a scaling artifact that leveled up right alongside. He slid the ring on, and the system instantly locked it down as soulbound gear. The memories flooded back. In his past life, Suho totally fumbled the bag on scoring the first Mumu. All because that Mad Pulverization Scholar figured it out first and leaked the meta recipe. Not this time. Suho had secured the bag for himself. Riding high on the bonus stats, he pulled up his interface and dumped 4 raw points straight into his magic, maxing it out to a solid 100. A massive congratulations banner flashed across his vision. His magic stat literally shifted colors, glowing a menacing red. An insane milestone he hadn't even scratched in his past life before hitting level 50. Earlier that day, he figured hitting the legendary purple tier would take a lifetime. But right now, it felt completely within reach. Unlocking purple demanded a staggering 700 points. An absolute grind, sure, but he was hyped and ready to crush it. With his stats locked in and heavily boosted, Suho called upon his beat-up, trusty old spear and started flooding the shaft with raw, concentrated magic. The metal drank up the aura like a black hole. The second it hit the threshold, the system chimed in, confirming a flawless weapon awakening. The basic polearm completely mutated. Hovering in his grip was the legendary Shadow Spear. It was officially time for round 2. Lore drops flooded the screen. This wasn't just any weapon. It was a literal treasure, ripped straight from the Shadow Lord's vault, carved out of the bones of a demonic shadow beast. And the best part? It had just chosen Suho as its one and only master. He didn't even need an inventory slot for it anymore. He could literally pull the blade and instantly repair any battle damage, just by feeding it mana and dark energy. Suho instantly grasped just how insanely broken this loot was. Just like Zhang Pyungho flexing that subspace fortress, an actual monarch-tier deity like the Shadow Lord used to swing this exact weapon. If that terrifying boss was actually lurking somewhere inside this gate, Suho was currently gripping its signature. A wave of massive relief washed over him. Thank God he snagged this god-tier item before some psycho villain could get their hands on it. Enough waiting around. It was time to road test this bad boy. Yanking the spear out of the darkness once more, he couldn't help but smirk at how since camping in his subspace fortress meant zero offensive pressure, he had to pop out and snipe that reverse scale himself. Catching the massive beast slipping in its sleep, Suho phased out of the void. He scaled a jagged cliff, dropping right above the monster, hoisting his shadow spear high. With brutal precision, he hurled the weapon dead center into the glowing gem fused to the worm's tail. The blade punched right through the heavy armor, sending the colossal titan through. Suho instantly bailed from the ledge, just as the system flashed a massive warning. The boss had triggered its second rage phase. A shockwave of pure dragon fear exploded outward, but our boy was already ghosting back into his subspace, dodging the massive debuff like an absolute pro. This became a relentless game of cat and mouse. Strike, fade into the shadows, repeat. The grind was dragging out way longer than he planned. But the strategy paid off. The reverse scale's durability finally dipped into the red, tanking below. It wasn't completely shattered yet, but the armor was practically paper now. Time to ditch the sneaky stuff. Suho threw stealth out the window and went full savage. Blasting out of his dimensional hideout, he rocketed straight into the sky and buried the shadow spear deep into the dragon's giant eyeball. The shockwave rattled the entire cavern, blasting Suho backward through the air. But the Titan, now completely blind with rage, thrashed around hunting for him. Suho capitalized on the chaos, flanking the beast and sprinting straight for the tail. The worm tried to pop another dragon fear, but Suho crushed the gem first. Boom. System confirmed. The reverse scale was officially dusted, and the boss's energy instantly flatlined. Suho chugged a cleanse potion, launching himself skyward to deliver the final judgment. One razor-sharp swipe across the jugular, and the colossal titan hit the dirt. The legendary raid was finally over. The system pinged, confirming Suho just swept the 49th floor, and absolutely shattered the Tower of Challenge speedrun record. 10 bonus stat points dropped instantly, followed by a massive tidal wave of premium loot. Sprawled out on the cold stone, he finally let the massive winds sink in. He actually solo cleared the entire tower. A massive flex that literally 0 previous versions of himself had ever pulled off. Hitting level 40 also unlocked a brand new trick. Healing Spirit, an insane area of effect heal that, once maxed out, could literally keep an entire army alive. But the system wasn't done cooking. Acknowledging the absolute madness of this raid, it blessed him with the ultimate drop. Dragon Blood. Suho's jaw dropped. This was the exact broken ability used by Yoma, the legendary monster player. So this is where that dude farmed it. Right here in the Dragon Mountains. The prompt explained that inheriting this bloodline granted straight-up draconic abilities, scaling completely off the user's own limit breaks. Before he could even call back his shadow spear, another alert popped. The blade was violently resonating with the dead dragon's shadow. Like a black hole, it swallowed the massive boss's shadow, triggering a massive evolution. The shadow spear unlocked a crazy hidden perk called Shadow Devour, a feature completely scrubbed from the original stat sheet. The weapon had literally evolved, waking up a piece of its own soul. Scanning the fresh patch notes on his weapon, Suho was practically drooling. Both Shadow Binding and Shadow Regeneration spiked straight from A rank to S tier. The binding skill could now literally rip an enemy's shadow right out of their body to lock them down, while Shadow Fangs would just shred that shadow to pieces, stacking massive continuous bleed damage. Growth-type weapons were honestly built different. Smiling at the haul, Suho geared up to dip, but a massive object in the dirt grabbed his eye. An absolutely colossal fang. The system scanned it as a mighty dragon's fang, a busted relic that slaps targets with an incurable debuff that completely shuts down all healing. Suho was floored all over again. He actually bagged a raw dragon drop, a mythic tier material most hunters thought was literally impossible to farm. This proved the boss he just packed up was a pure-blooded titan, naturally guaranteeing these elite drops. This whole dungeon run was basically hitting the lottery, with his inventory completely stuffed. Suho finally pivoted toward the exit, knowing perfectly well that reporter Jinhui was probably sweating outside waiting for the scoop. Right on cue, the dungeon crystal exploded into stardust, and the system coolly broadcasted that the trial tower was officially beaten. The MVP? A player named Suho. Instantly, every other hunter still inside got violently kicked from the server. A massive portal ripped open, spitting out a squad of top-tier hunters who face-planted into the dirt, looking absolutely shell-shocked. One dude just collapsed to his knees, gripping his head like his brain was short-circuiting, muttering that this couldn't be real. Did some absolute madman really solo the trial tower? His buddy, still eating dirt, demanded to know who the heck Suho even was. The first hunter just shakily pointed a finger forward, asking if the kid standing right there was the myth himself. His partner squinted, gulping hard as he quietly confirmed that. Yeah, that was 100% him, because the paparazzi mob surrounding the guy was so insane, there wasn't even oxygen left to breathe right now. The absolute chaos hit him instantly. Our boy was totally mobbed by a sea of desperate reporters. Blinding camera flashes exploded from every angle, with the paparazzi screaming over each other, begging for a soundbite about his legendary tower clear. But honestly, Suho was running on literal fumes. That colossal tower dragon had chewed through way more of his HP than he'd originally planned for. The guy just desperately craved a bed. Definitely not this suffocating media circus. He totally underestimated how fast the press would swarm his location. Cutting through the madness, his eyes locked onto Jinhui. The reporter was slumped dramatically over his car hood, looking absolutely shell-shocked. Absolute madman. That was definitely the thought frying Jinhui's brain right then, because soloing that impossible death trap was straight up fiction. Slipping through their blind spots, Suho crept up right behind him, clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder, and dropped a casual greeting. Jinhui practically jumped out of his skin, tumbling to the concrete in pure panic before his jaw hit the floor, realizing exactly who just spawned behind him. Stuttering like a broken record, he gasped out Suho's name. Flashing a cocky little smirk, Suho just shrugged it off. He played it up like he just pulled off some masterclass, S-rank assassin maneuver, literally evaporating into thin air without leaving a single footprint behind. Reaching his hand out to pull the shaking guy up, Suho teased him, asking why Jinhui still had trust issues. Hesitantly grabbing his hand, the reporter stared at him like he was a complete psycho, and blurted out that he sounded completely unhinged. Totally unbothered, Suho hit back, saying if the vibes were really that off, he should just say the word, and Suho would gladly step back. Scrambling to his feet and brushing off the dirt, Jinhui muttered that if he actually doubted him, he wouldn't have risked his neck this whole time. Then, panic setting back in, he shoved Suho toward the passenger seat, desperately yelling to get in before the cameras spotted them. Speeding down the highway, Suho's phone buzzed with a call from team leader Cholman, hyping him up for dominating the trial tower. The guy confessed he wanted to drop his praises in person, but Suho had already dipped way too fast. Playing the polite rookie card, Suho thanked him, making up an excuse about laying low because his stamina was totally drained. Cholman let out a booming laugh, swearing Suho always shattered the scaling charts. He pressed to see if the kid was still kicking around Pangyo, wanting to set up a quick meetup. Suho smoothly deflected, claiming his ride already scooped him up, before flipping the script and asking if there was an actual agenda for this little chat. Cholman hesitated, admitting there was no official business, unless Suho felt like swinging by the Hunter Association headquarters, assuming he wasn't completely running on empty. Dead silence. Suho narrowed his eyes. The association? Cholman nodded through the phone, stressing that this clear was an absolutely unprecedented anomaly. The entire world swore that Trial Tower was an unsolvable death trap, treating it like a permanent public gate. With a raid of this massive scale, the suits were demanding a full-blown investigation. Suho's voice went ice cold, casually reminding him that he didn't recall the government breathing down people's necks whenever massive A-list guilds wiped out high-tier dungeons. If the brass just wanted raw data, couldn't they just shoot him a formal request? The line went totally dead for a second, before Cholman finally caved, telling him to just go get some sleep. Suho tossed out a quick thanks and hung up, sinking deep into the leather seat as his mind raced. No cap, the chairman or his lackeys definitely wanted to parade him around for some cheap PR photo op. He had mad respect for a real one like Cholman, but he wasn't about to be a poster boy for those clout-chasing executives. If he let them drag him into their toxic corporate politics, he'd be drowning in annoying red tape. His game plan? Ghost them completely until he formally secured his badge at the association. Keeping one eye on the road, Jinhui shot him a nervous sideways glance, asking if he could pry for a second. Suho gave a lazy nod, giving him the green light to spill. Jinhui basically asked, with those insane, god-tier stats, couldn't he practically write his own ticket anywhere, especially straight into high-ranking government seats? A knowing smirk crept onto Suho's face. The government bag was heavy, and no matter how much these private mega-guilds flexed their muscles, the Fed still held the ultimate trump card. Jinhui blinked, totally confused, arguing that the private sectors had all the mainstream hype and major global influence. Suho just shut it down with cold logic. Cloud is fleeting, just a heavily filtered, fake spotlight. Sure, the private squads look like superheroes right now, but give it time. The public's gonna stop standing them and start being terrified of them. Jinhui slowly nodded, realizing the kid was dropping absolute facts. Letting out a heavy sigh, Suho kept going. If he was actually going to wipe out this gate apocalypse, he needed a massive backing. Solo leveling had its limits. That was the exact reason he was gunning for the government faction. Jinhui couldn't help but grin, realizing Suho was playing next-level chess. No other player out there was moving with that kind of righteous, hardcore conviction. Suho just tossed him a chill thanks, casually casting a low-key healing buff to fix his wrecked arm. Changing gears, Jinhui asked if he was seriously going to endure the standard, boring recruitment grind. He argued, it would be an absolute crime for a beast like Suho to get stuck doing level 9 rookie grunt work. Suho just smirked, saying he wasn't aiming for the bottom tier. Jinhui took a wild guess at level 7, but Suho coldly dropped the bomb. He wanted level 5. Jinhui practically swerved the car, screaming if he was out of his mind. Rolling his eyes, Suho told him to seriously chill out and stop tweaking every single time he dropped a simple Jinhui shot him a curious side-eye, admitting that, yeah, obviously he was dying to know the tea. Suho flashed a faint smirk, promising to spill the details, but with two hard rules. Jinhui had to keep it completely off the record and seriously keep his eyes glued to the road. Halfway through the story, the reporter's jaw basically hit the steering wheel. He was absolutely mind-blown by Suho's genius strategy. Our boy just gave a chill nod, agreeing it was totally a big-brain move, but strictly repeating that the press couldn't catch wind of it just yet. Because his master plan was to use Jinhui to drop the official nuke later down the line. And once that moment hit, the shockwave was guaranteed to absolutely shatter the internet, meaning Jinhui would score the ultimate, holy grail exclusive before any other journalist even woke up. The reporter just stared, deadpan, and asked if Suho was dead set on milking him for every single drop of clout. Suho didn't even flinch, shrugging that. Having a journalist bestie meant he was 100% going to abuse that cheat code. Jinhui cracked up, tossing his hands up in defeat. Suho could weaponize him all he wanted. But then the vibe shifted, as Jinhui asked if heading home was really the play, considering his info got hard doxed. And a massive mob was probably already camping his front door. Suho just smirked, casually dropping that he'd pull a Houdini and vanish into thin air, exactly like his epic exit at the tower. Jinhui pumped the brakes on that idea, awkwardly offering Suho to just crash at his place. He mentioned he had a massive crib all to himself, a decked-out guest suite, and security systems so insanely beefed up that not even a ghost was sneaking in. Suho froze for a second, questioning the exact drop location. Jinhui puffed out his chest, bragging that his home was in Kaiser Cheongdam. And Suho's brain did a hard reboot. He knew damn well those top-tier penthouses cost hundreds of billions. Pulling up to the spot, Suho stepped through the front door and immediately stopped dead in his tracks. Not because he was starstruck, but because this place radiated absolute final boss, old money energy. It wasn't that loud, flashy kind of rich. It was the silent, intimidating wealth that just exists and demands respect. Jinhui acted like it was an everyday Tuesday, casually telling him to treat the place like it was his own house. Suho gave a slow nod, mentally absorbing the reality check that this was exactly how the game of life played out when you spawned in with the premium DLC already unlocked. Jinhui gestured toward a sleek smart pad chilling on the coffee table. The thing was loaded with a high-end concierge app, where Suho could instantly order takeout, drop racks on shopping, ping tech support, or literally summon an emergency healer to his doorstep. The reporter then pointed out that Suho's color had finally come back, looking way less like a zombie than when he first hopped in the ride. Suho didn't skip a beat, stating the obvious fact that he was, quite literally. Jinhui blinked twice, asking him to repeat that. Suho let out a heavy sigh, sounding super over it, aggressively confirming his healer class. The journalist scrambled to apologize, confessing that despite seeing the viral articles, his brain just couldn't process the glitch. I mean, healers always played it safe, instantly joining guilds and getting hard carried to level up. They never casually solo cleared the entire tower of challenges. Grabbing his designer bag, the rich kid announced he had to bounce back to the daily grind at the office, dropping the passcode for the front door before dipping. Suho told him to chill out and drive safe. The second that heavy door clicked shut, Suho snapped his fingers, ripping open his system interface to scope out his current build. It was officially time to dump all those hard-earned stat points he bagged from speedrunning the tower. He leveled out his stamina to match his other stats, then aggressively dumped every single leftover point straight into sensitivity. At this tier, he was way past the standard pro build. He was walking the path of an absolute god-tier successor, and honestly, even he had to admit his character sheet was looking cracked right now. With that out of the way, Suho pivoted to his next objective. Back in the day, he was basically a human radar for sniffing out hidden bugs and spy cams. And now, with his sensitivity stat boosted to the moon, he could probably sense a pin drop from a mile away. Plus, even if Jinhui was a solid bro, Suho wasn't dumb enough to blindly trust that a billionaire heir's penthouse wasn't bugged to high heaven. Better safe and paranoid than caught lacking. After tearing the place apart searching for red flags, Suho completely collapsed onto the plush couch, his social battery utterly fried. This crib was monstrously huge, easily dwarfing most high-end subspace mansions he had ever raided. Real talk? Sweeping this massive map for hidden lenses felt way more exhausting than soloing that dragon earlier. Finding zero bugs, he finally let his guard down. But his smartphone immediately started vibrating out of control. An absolute tsunami of notifications was bombing his lock screen. Lighting it up, Suho's stomach dropped. He had been completely doxxed. Some troll leaked his private digits, and his texts were blowing up like fireworks. Swallowing the bitter pill, he knew he had to burn this device and cop a fresh number, ASAP. Flashing back to that high-tech concierge app Jinhui flexed earlier, Suho booted it up, and to his absolute shock, man, he worked fast. He seamlessly synced all his crucial data over to the burner phone, locking it down strictly for personal use. His old screen was absolutely blowing up with endless notifications, but whatever. Checking the clock, it was just past 5 in the afternoon. Perfect window to chill for a quick breather before diving right back into the grind. But fast forward a bit, miles away beneath the dark sky, deep inside a dead silent facility, reality warped. A glowing portal ripped right through the air. A squad of masked figures slipped out of the shadows. They did a quick tactical sweep. 0 witnesses, blind cameras, totally off the grid. Unzipping their heavy duffels, they started rigging explosives. Every single movement was cold, calculated, and flawless. But right in the middle of their little demolition party, Suho just casually materialized behind them. Acting like he just crashed a boring study group instead of a full-blown terror plot, he deadpanned, "Yeah, blowing up public infrastructure? Not exact." The whole squad went completely stiff. Total panic set in. This place was supposed to be completely abandoned today. Suho just smirked. Normally, sure, but he crashed the party specifically because absolute chaos dropped. One guy screamed to fall back, making a desperate dash for the portal. In the scramble, a girl from their crew wiped out hard onto the concrete. Her crew froze up. Did she just trip over her own feet? One guy grabbed her arm, yanking hard, but she was literally glued. Another dude yelled to just drag her through the gate, but it was totally useless. Her legs were basically cemented to the floor. They were totally clueless, but Suho had already popped his shadow bind, coiling pitch-black energy around her ankles like iron chains. Sweating and pulling, the guy screamed that something was seriously messed up. With absolute ice in her voice, the girl hissed a single command: "Ditch me." The guy violently shook his head, refusing to leave her behind, but she snapped back, screaming at them to just flat-out murder Suho. Driven by pure adrenaline, the remaining 3 lunged forward, but they didn't even land their first footstep. Bam! An invisible, crushing weight slammed them face first into the dirt. Suho's intimidation aura just completely suffocated them on the spot. Staring down at the pathetic pile of bad guys, Suho casually asked if they repped Banshee. For context, Banshee wasn't just some street gang, they were an infamous terrorist syndicate, notorious for sparking massive bombings and absolute anarchy. Even though they got busted in the original timeline, the body count they left behind was insane. And the craziest part? Only 4 people pulled off all that carnage. The crew was totally shook. How the hell did this random kid know their alias? Suho just strolled up to the closest guy and yanked off his cap. "Kwak Duho," he stated. The crew's muscle, the dude doing heavy lifting at day labor sites to pay the bills. Next, he pointed straight at the bomb expert, Seo Kwon, who literally taught middle school science by day. Wild, right? Then there was Kim Hyunmin, the getaway driver. Just your average delivery guy abusing a teleportation skill to ghost the cops after every single strike. Finally, Suho locked eyes with the girl, Gu Yanhua, a regular college student, but secretly the absolute mastermind running Banshee. Her overpowered EMP ability could instantly wipe out electronics and dismantle magical barriers like it was absolutely nothing. Yanhua was completely paralyzed with shock. She desperately demanded to know how he had their entire roster. Flashing a knowing smirk, Suho told her that enough digging always brings up the dirt, something a mastermind like her should already know. Refusing to accept reality, she gritted her teeth and demanded his identity again. Suho nodded, giving her props for being sharp, and reminded her she already knew the score. He flat out offered to prove he wasn't messing around by tossing them all into police custody right this exact second. Looking into his eyes, she realized he wasn't bluffing. Defeated, she finally spat out, "What do you want?" Suho sighed, saying they could have skipped the drama, before gesturing around, noting that a crime scene was an awful spot for a chat. He ordered her to pack up the explosives, declaring they were taking this meeting back to her home base. She just glared at him, her mind spinning over just how deep this guy's intel went. But she had no choice. She folded. Suho then looked over at Hyunmin, checking if his legs were working yet, and told him to pop the portal. "We're definitely not taking an Uber," he joked. Cut to their secret underground hideout. Suho made himself right at home, telling the squad to chill out and ditch the masks if they wanted to breathe. Yeonhwa stubbornly crossed her arms, but seconds later, yanked the fabric off her face anyway. "It's just hot in here," she snapped, making sure he knew he wasn't the boss of her. The interrogation flipped back. She fired off questions like bullets. How did he dox their whole What was his endgame? And why would a high-profile gate hunter suddenly care about busting an underground terror cell? Suho just chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's a lot of questions. I don't even know which one to hit first." He kept it incredibly vague, explaining he used a set of off-the-books shadow skills to hunt them down, essentially fighting fire with fire, using secrets to hunt secrets. Now deadly serious, Yeonhwa stared him down and asked, "So, what was his endgame?" Suho laid all his cards on the table, straight up offering them a spot on his crew. He name-dropped that recent PBS interview, reminding them of the grand. Yeonhwa instantly assumed he was dragging them into the Hunter Association. Suho nodded, but before she could completely lose her mind, he pumped the brakes. He wasn't about to hand them over as government lapdogs. Instead, he dropped a massive bombshell. He was gearing up to smash the level 5 exam. From there, he'd climb the ranks, blitz through a couple of stepping stones, and Yunhua's jaw practically hit the floor. Suho chuckled, telling her to wipe that shell-shocked look off her face. He already knew they absolutely despised the special forces. That's exactly why their bombing specifically targeted those facilities. And honestly, he totally vibed with that energy, because he shared the exact same grudge. Suho finally spilled the brutal truth. He was a gate orphan. For years, he thought his tragedy was just pure bad luck, until he uncovered the sickening reality. Think about it. After every single cleared gate, that scorched earth magically transformed into premium, billion. The corrupt suits in the government knew a massive gate shock was imminent, but they coldly sat back and let the slaughter happen just to line their pockets. Shady development projects were pulling the strings, and Suho already had the masterminds on his hit list, so his endgame was dead simple. Hijack the special forces as their absolute top dog, and make those corrupt elites bleed. He broke it down. The special forces flexed the ultimate, unchecked authority. They had the raw juice to bully other government branches, and legally, he was handing them vengeance on a silver platter, but doing no more messy, reckless domestic terrorism. Still, Yunhua wasn't fully sold, instantly clapping back that there was zero guarantee. No guarantee he'd actually survive the brutal level 5 test. Dropping one final, ice-cold warning, he made it crystal clear. One more rogue attack, and he'd personally drag them to the feds by their necks. With that epic mic drop, he wrapped up the chat. Deep down, Suho knew their brains were completely short-circuiting right. Back in his past life, Banshee had been a total ghost, keeping her mouth permanently zipped during. But now, he saw the real them. They were just broken kids like him. Tragic victims morphed into villains by pure, unadulterated trauma. If someone had just stepped up and thrown them a lifeline earlier, maybe they wouldn't have gone completely off the rails. So this time around, before they crossed the absolute point of no return, Suho was stepping in to rewrite their villain origin story. No matter how much grinding it took. And honestly, he was dead certain Yunhua would bite. The deal was way too juicy, and his raw, overpowered competence was undeniably insane. He told them to use their brains, weigh the odds, and make the right call. The camera aggressively cuts to the South Korean Hunter Association, where the vice president was throwing a massive temper tantrum. He was ruthlessly tearing into team leader Yang Cholman for totally fumbling what should have been a basic, easy-bake mission. He barked out that even the top dog president had completely wiped his calendar just to secure a sit-down with Suho. While he decided to spare him the axe for now, he made it dangerously clear. Pull a stunt like this again, and heads will absolutely roll. Cholman could only bite his tongue, bow his head, and swallow the verbal beatdown before getting shooed away to get back to the grind. The absolute second he stepped into the hallway, he let out a soul-crushing sigh, completely drained from sitting through that agonizing roasting session. Getting chewed out like that? Man, for a split second, he legitimately thought about rage quitting and selling out to a cushy civilian guild. But then he snapped back to reality, reminding his bruised ego exactly why he signed his life away to the association in the first place. And that after surviving actual, literal nightmares, tanking one more pathetic ego, so he quietly hyped himself up, whispering under his breath to just suck it up and stay rock solid. Right on cue, Pai Song-yul, the infamous head of the special investigation, Cholman's blood immediately boiled, cursing his terrible luck for bumping into this specific, annoying guy right now. Slapping on a fake customer service smile, he politely asked what the chief was doing creeping around. Pai just smirked, oozing his usual smug, chaotic energy. He teased that he caught wind of his favorite little team leader Yang, getting absolutely dragged through the mud again. He even threw a mock salute to Yang's god-tier patience. As they strolled down the hall, Pai smoothly flipped the script, casually dropping the spicy rumors currently swirling around Suho. Supposedly, the kid was stirring the pot, but Cholman jumped in to clarify that Suho wasn't exactly going rogue or causing chaos. Even though, yeah, the gossip was catching fire fast. Pai slyly pointed out that only a super tight inner circle actually knew the tea. Then, without missing a single beat, he casually tossed out a shady offer to help clean up the mess. When Cholman asked him to unpack that, Pai dropped an absolutely unhinged suggestion. Just frame Suho with a bogus charge, slap cuffs on him, drag him into an interrogation room, and sweep the facts under the rug later. Because in Pai's twisted mind, it was all about faking a squeaky clean illusion. Yanking Suho in for an official summons would lock down the situation, keeping the chairman thrilled. The PR optics would look flawless, and they'd simply cut Suho loose the second the dust settled. Flexing the association's absolute authority, Pai pointed out that since Suho was already gunning for a spot on their roster anyway, this little stunt was a massive win-win. Yang just locked eyes with him, carefully branding the scheme as straight-up unhinged, warning that poking a powerhouse like Suho could blow up in their faces. But Pai didn't even blink. Instead, he practically applauded Yang's cute little moral compass, mocking why a high-ranking suit was sweating bullets over one solo player. Yang kept his cool, but Pai kept pressing the issue. He dropped a heavy reminder that the feds still held the absolute authority to drag awakened beings into interrogation rooms, proving exactly why hunters used to dread their existence, heavily hinting that Yang needed to bend the rules instead of blindly hugging the corporate playbook. The air grew thick with tension before Yang finally muttering that he'd chew on the idea. Pai tossed out a hollow offer of backup, leaving behind one last chilling reminder. Playing by the book was never the only way to win the game. Left in the dead silence, Yang hit rewind on the entire conversation. He used to genuinely respect Pai as one of the rare insiders who actually kept things real, a massive breath of fresh air compared to the out-of-touch elites at the top. But right now, that trust was completely. Intel corrupts people, and Pai was holding way too many dark secrets, making him a walking red flag. Suffocating in the office, Yang dipped outside, hunting for a secluded bench to just breathe. Zoning out, his brain locked right back onto Suho. The guy had been totally on board with their crew at first, but abruptly ghosted them out of nowhere. You couldn't exactly blame him, honestly. The top-tier guilds were throwing around insane bags of cash, and god-level perks that would make absolutely anyone. Still, Yang couldn't shake the burning question. What was actually going on inside Suho? Cut across town. Suho slammed the cab door shut and instantly sparked up the artifact wrapped around his finger, the legendary First Mumu. He cringed slightly, flashing back to how completely unhinged his very first test run with it had been. But that was ancient history. After fully dominating the Tower of Challenge, he had this artifact entirely dialed in. It was go time. He marched straight toward the towering Soul Central Blood Center, firing up his mana radar. His invisible senses swept the concrete jungle until a tiny spark caught his attention, a barely there wisp of raw magical residue. Dungeons naturally bleed out mana, meaning even the most deeply cloaked portals left behind a digital-like footprint. Tracking that invisible frequency, Suho locked onto a ghost-like gate, shimmering like morning fog. It was a locked phase, demanding a very specific trigger to crack open. Barely blinking, he whipped out a combat slashed deep right across his palm, and let the crimson drops freefall straight into the portal's barrier. He already had the cheat code. This specific entrance aggressively craved fresh blood. The exact moment it drank its fill, a glowing blue screen popped up, confirming the unlock sequence. A top-secret phase had been breached, and the system instantly dropped 5 sweet bonus stat points right into his lap. The zone was officially dubbed Blood's Decree. Stepping directly through the rift, Suho casually chucked a handful of luminescent powder deep into the pitch-black shadow, instantly lighting up a brutally jagged, subterranean wasteland. Stage 1 was straight up an underground labyrinth, so he pushed further inward until something thick splattered dead center on his skull. Glancing up, he quickly realized that was definitely not random cave condensation. It was pure, nasty drool. The ceiling was totally plastered with a massive swarm of bloodthirsty vampire bats. Clocking in right around level 63. Suho just flashed a wicked grin at the incredibly over-the-top. Skipping the entire warm-up, he brutally slammed the trigger for his intimidation skill, sending a crushing shockwave that paralyzed the entire flock, dropping them out of the air like literal dead weight. Ice cold, he strolled right up to a twitching target and violently plunged his shadow spear directly through its core, letting the dark energy aggressively feast on its shadow. The chain reaction instantly flatlined every single bat in the room simultaneously. Pulling up his holographic display, a massive wave of satisfaction washed over him. This area of effect combo was absolutely god tier for speedrunning low-level trash mobs. Packing an S-rank aura meant level gaps were practically a total joke. While basic players dumped all their points into just 2 core stats, Suho had completely hacked the hidden, color-coded matrix, deciding to perfectly balance every single attribute across the board. Glaring at his massively inflated numbers, he seriously debated if he was way too insane. Swiping through the kill feed out of pure boredom, his eyes snagged on a bizarre anomaly. Tangled up in the bat loot were the mangled remains of a blood slime. The sneaky blob had completely camouflaged itself inside the swarm, only to get accidentally obliterated by his fear wave. Sweeping up the garbage drops felt incredibly stale, yet he fully realized just how insanely broken the fear factor actually was. Even though boss-tier threats could shrug off the total paralysis, the heavy debuff still successfully landed, assuming they weren't strictly immune to mind control. Moments later, the colossal boss doors finally loomed ahead, sending a massive spike of raw adrenaline surging through his veins. Without skipping a single beat, he kicked the heavy doors completely wide. The second his boots hit the floor, his blade materializes in his grip. Boom! A massive vampire bat dive bombs straight for his throat, but he effortlessly parries the strike. System check confirms it, a Great King vampire bat. He claps back with a lightning-fast counter-slash, only to catch a hulking golem charging him from his blind spot. Suho sidesteps just in time. These guys aren't giving off final boss energy, they're just cracked out mini-bosses. Without missing a beat, he takes them both on at once. He carves into the stone giant, then pirouettes to deflect the bat's razor. The golem winds up for a devastating haymaker. Suho slides back to dodge the wrecking ball fist, then plunges his blade deep into the earth. A massive shockwave erupts, blasting across the cavern and body-slamming both freaks. He thinks it's GG, but as the smoke fades, these absolute tanks are still on their feet. The intensity spikes, and Suho instantly realizes that basic melee combos just aren't going to cut it against high-tier mobs. Time to pull out the secret weapon. Right on cue, the duo launches a synchronized assault. Getting pinched from the front and back, Suho summons a second blade. The impact triggers a massive blast, and as the debris settles, he's got one sword buried deep inside the bat, and the other impaling the stone giant. Even this double tap isn't enough to drop them. But Suho finally cracks the code. Their kryptonite? Pure silver completely drenched in holy energy. Right on time, the system dings. Holy aura successfully applied. The silver blade lodged inside the beast ignites with a blinding glow. A brutal crack of lightning strikes down, decapitating the creature and instantly wiping it off the map. Suho plants his boot onto the smoking corpse, watching it burst into pixels like a bug getting squashed by a god. The holy buff is absolutely busted. The golem tries to rush him again, but Suho is miles ahead, slicing the juggernaut into literal confetti with his glowing blade. The system notification pops, confirming the kill. Staring at his gleaming weapon, he can't help. Turns out, exploiting a healer-exclusive enchantment skill is the ultimate cheat code. Wrapping silver weapons in divine magic literally turns every single hit into a guaranteed critical strike. It's the absolute perfect counter for this dungeon. But suddenly, a terrifying aura creeps up his spine. He whips around and locks eyes with the Hidden Gate's true boss, who has finally decided to crash the party. Stepping out of the shadows and leaking pure, unfiltered bloodlust, it's the Cursed Prince. A monstrous level, 76 elite. The guy is absolutely fuming, screaming at Suho for trespassing in his zone and wiping out his minions. He demands the intruder drop to his knees and beg for mercy. But Suho is here to bag a bounty, not kiss the ring. This unbothered attitude totally triggers the royal boss. Roaring in pure rage, the prince erupts with dark energy, calling Suho an arrogant punk. The boss launches a bone-crushing first strike. But Suho effortlessly swats it away, casually asking if the guy is done with his whole theatrical villain speech. Ignoring the disrespect, the prince slams his claws into the earth. The entire arena instantly glitches out. A thick, blood-red fog explodes across the zone, dropping visibility to absolute zero. The suffocating aura totally blocks his normal senses. Suho grounds his stance, going full instinct mode. He knows a cheap shot is coming from the shadows. A split-second tingle on his neck triggers his reflexes. Just as the prince dive bombs him, Suho perfectly parries the sneak attack, completely short-circuiting the boss's brain. The elite monster is shook, unable to compute how Suho read his movements. Suho claps back with a cocky slash, totally convinced he scored a critical hit. But the prince just cackles, completely mocking him. He boasts that such pathetic damage could never dent his armor. Suddenly, a huge red warning flashes. The boss activates Blood Scream. Without hesitating, Suho slams his sword straight into the floor. He triggers Healing Spirit. A massive radiant purification wave violently bursts outward. The prince immediately flinches, recoiling from the blinding light. All of Suho's HP damage instantly evaporates. Smirking, he casually drops the bomb that his actual class is Healer. The royal boss glances down, completely paralyzed to find a massive gash ripped across his stomach. It's hard proof that Suho's previous combo definitely hit home. Smelling blood, Suho readies his next skill. But the prince completely loses his mind. Absolutely humiliated by a mere human, he aggressively rushes in. Suho charges forward to meet him face to face. Glowing steel collides with razor-sharp claws. The two lock into a hyperspeed blur of devastating combos. For a split second, the boss actually thinks he's got the upper hand. He spams a chaotic barrage of slash attacks, but Suho straight up teleports, materializing in the enemy's blind spot to deliver a flawless, heavy strike. Crimson spills from the boss's mouth as he violently stumbles back. Suho doesn't give him a single frame to breathe, sprinting in to chain his combo. Refusing to take the L, the prince overclocks his remaining power and catapults himself forward. The two titans slam together with apocalyptic force, detonating shockwaves that completely rip apart the entire arena. As the dust clears, the match is officially over. The cursed prince's severed head slowly slides off his shoulders and rolls across the cold stone floor. Suho casually strolled up and dropped into a deep squat next to the severed head, totally roasting the boss for being a complete pushover, until the dead skull violently snapped forward, sinking its fangs right into his hand. The supposedly dead prince started screaming inside Suho's mind, viciously demanding his blood and swearing to turn him into a mindless slave. Suho just violently yanked the skull off and chucked it across the room, scoffing that the guy was literally just an annoying mosquito. But then, the system flashed a brutal alert. Kin conversion initiated. Suho crashed hard against the floor. His veins felt completely drained as crippling vertigo and a skull-splitting migraine hijacked his brain, while an aggressive, burning thirst suddenly ripped through his throat. Inside his head, the royal freak started bragging that his fate was sealed, but Suho just snapped at him to shut his mouth. Tuning out the villain's trash talk while the lethal transformation dragged on, Suho locked in. He knew unlocking the vampire trait required a specific gamble. The sync rate had to hit the absolute perfect sweet spot. And the millisecond it did, he had to nuke the infection with holy water. The second the transformation dial slammed into 50%, Suho knew he was right on the edge of snatching the ability, and desperately snatched the flask, but crack. The glass exploded into pieces right. The prince cackled like a maniac, gloating that they were in his territory now, and any resistance was totally useless. Reality hit Suho like a truck. This guy was playing 4D chess. The wrecked hallway had completely healed itself, and the boss's corpse had vanished into thin air. The entire stage had hard reset for round 2. Refusing to take the L, Suho frantically mapped out a counterattack. But a terrifying red warning flashed. His bloodstream was fully rotting. The prince smugly announced it was game over, but Suho just grinned. He still had an ultimate trump card tucked up his sleeve. The system instantly lit up. All hidden conditions to unleash the second phase of Dragon Blood had finally been fulfilled. He had smashed through level 50 and completely survived a mind-breaking near-death scenario. A glowing prompt materialized. Dragon armor, unlocked. Suho smirked. Talk about clutching it up at the very last second. The fatal vampire conversion slammed to a dead halt, as the screen confirmed his second stage Draconic Awakening was locked and loaded. Dragon armor engaged. He was instantly buffed with 2 insane perks, Dragon's Endowment and Dragon Skin, granted straight from the gear. The second the endowment kicked in, a massive firewall blocked the vampire virus, jump-starting a hardcore cleansing process. The toxic sludge poisoning his veins rapidly filtered back into pristine, supercharged blood, flooding his core with raw energy, while whatever nasty rot remained was totally annihilated by the sheer force of his draconic aura. Suho completely hijacked the mystery energy lurking in the vampire virus, feeling an insane weight lift off his shoulders. He originally planned to trigger this evolution inside a custom dungeon once he hit level 50. But this chaotic boss fight forced it early. Swiping open his stats, he eyed his shiny new passive, Dragon's Endowment, an ultra-rare, bloodline-exclusive buff that screamed pure nobility and absolute dominance. While active, he was literally immune to all infections and debuffs, while passively siphoning enemy corruption. To cleanse, heal, and level up his own stats, the system never dropped a hint about this hidden awakening requirement. But Youngma had dropped the lore earlier. Because the vampire bite almost flatlined him, the system registered the trauma as the perfect trigger. The crazy part? The cleanse didn't just delete the virus, it actually captured the vampire's mojo. He scoped out a second ability in his menu, currently locked, a wild souvenir from almost joining the undead, leaving him totally curious if he actually bagged the power or not. His entire master plan was to steal those vampiric stats, after all. Turns out, dragon energy and vampire venom mixed like oil and water. But honestly, his new loadout was undeniably broken. So he wasn't complaining. Then, another insane drop popped up. Blood Weapon, a top-tier technique reserved exclusively for vampire royalty. But it devoured a ridiculous amount of raw blood to cast. Realizing he'd need to go on an absolute monster slaughtering spree to fuel it, he decided to grind his Phantom Shadow skill at the same time. Right then, the cursed freak started tweaking and muttering under his breath. Suho immediately told him to cut it out, calling his unhinged yapping totally cringe and annoying. The prince was absolutely spiraling, screaming about how Suho was still breathing, after taking a direct bite, babbling endlessly about broken curses, and calling himself a massive failure. But the vibe in the room suddenly shifted. Suho's eyes narrowed. Phase 2 was kicking off. The system flashed red, confirming the nightmare. The cursed king spirals into despair. His power levels are absolute. Out of nowhere, the sky ripped open, dumping a torrential downpour of pure crimson. And stepping right out of that bloodstorm, the cursed king, back from the dead. He just hit level 80, straight up leaking absolute rage. He roared his ultimate vow. Every single entity standing above him was about to get wiped off the map. Scorched, pulverized, and tossed straight into the abyss. Massive wings, woven from gore, snapped open, paired with a bone-chilling shriek that shook the entire arena. Suho instantly clocked the massive surge in mana. This wasn't the same pushover boss anymore. The monarch had mutated into an entirely different beast. Without missing a beat, the tyrant unleashed a massive blast of dark energy, triggering a nuclear-level shockwave. But as the smoke faded, Suho had vanished completely, materializing dead center above the monster's wing to drop a heavy, bone-crushing cleave. Shockingly, the monstrosity barely flinched, flexing that a weak paper cut like that wouldn't do squat. That's when it hit Suho. The boss wasn't just getting tankier, his battle IQ was skyrocketing too, whipping his massive wing like a colossal baseball bat. The king swatted Suho out of the air with pure, unadulterated kinetic force. Catching his balance, the hunter immediately read the room. Things were getting extremely. The boss blitzed forward for round 2. Suho met the onslaught head-to-head, clashing blades while igniting his divine aura, boldly claiming that his sacred light would utterly eclipse whatever garbage stats the king was packing. But a split second later, the boss snapped Suho's blade straight in half, mocking him that divine energy was completely useless against him now. Suho dashed back, his brain working in overdrive to break down the play. A blessed relic just shattered like cheap plastic, totally confirming standard gear was absolutely trash here. With zero hesitation, he whipped out his blood blade. Catching sight of it, the tyrant absolutely lost his mind, screaming at Suho to cough up the weapon, while diving into another savage, relentless combo. But Suho injected his crimson steel with pure holy mana, slicing effortlessly right through the barrage. The king was utterly flabbergasted, his brain glitching as he tried to process the counter. And right then, the math clicked for Suho. Gore weaponry naturally scaled up with his raw stats. At his current tier, this blade had easily punched into the red rank territory, making it way over-leveled to wrap up this execution. Summoning a crimson javelin out of thin air, the monarch swore to rip our boy to shreds, and launched forward. The thrust was insanely fast, but Suho smoothly morphed his blood blade into a heavy riot shield, tanking the hit and leaving the boss completely paralyzed with shock. Smirking, Suho let him know the king wasn't the only player in the lobby who could shapeshift his arsenal. Firing off a fluid transition, he snapped the shield back into a longsword and cleanly separated the monarch's head from his shoulders in one gorgeous, lethal arc. The decapitated dome hit the concrete, somehow still rocking a wildly arrogant, psychopathic grin, bragging that losing his head didn't mean jack. Unbothered, Suho punted the skull across the room like a soccer ball, manifesting his dark lance and driving it deep into the asphalt. Instantly, midnight chains exploded outward, violently choking out the detached skull. Shadowbind totally locked it down. Suho knew he had to bag this kill right now, before the freak pulled another plot twist. A blue screen popped up, vampire blood skill triggered, confirming that all the liquid vitality he just drained was securely deposited inside the blood jade, while the furious boss pitched a massive fit, screaming at Suho to get his filthy hands off him. Suho closely inspected the gem. This was his first time seeing the artifact in real life, and it was already overflowing with harvested life force. According to the lore from the Blood Monarch, this jewel was completely invisible to everyone except its master. Fun fact, that specific monarch actually started out as an average support main, grinding his 9 to 5 at the Central Blood Institute, until horrific RNG threw him straight into the hidden dungeon, Blood's Decree. He managed to crawl to the final chamber, but completely wiped against the cursed king, caught a nasty bite, and was forcibly turned into a literal bloodsucker. Usually, that's an instant game over, because once you're bitten, you morph into a mindless minion, and the dungeon goes on permanent lockdown. But this absolute madman brute forced his way through the curse, spamming his healing spells to totally glitch out the kin conversion process. Right then, an entirely new vampiric skill tree unlocked, massively overhauling his base stats. Riding that wild power spike, he absolutely clapped the king, cleared the dungeon, and rebranded himself as the Blood Monarch, an S-tier global menace feared worldwide. Eventually, Suho tracked him down and squeezed every drop of intel out of him, regarding kin transformation, gore weaponry, and vampire genetics. But even locked in chains, the severed king threw a massive tantrum, crying about getting payback and refusing to take the L. Suho just smirked, basically daring the guy to pull up. Instantly, the system fired up Phantom Shadow, synced with the screaming monarch's dark aura, and vacuumed it up until literally nothing was left. Poof, erased. And just like that, Suho checked his quest log. Blood's Decree was officially 100% beaten. The system threw up a massive victory screen, crowning our boy as the undisputed MVP. A shimmering portal spawned right in front of him. Stepping up to the exit, he took a second to process the absolute chaos. It was a brutal reality check. No matter how hyped or terrifying vampire conversion seemed, pure dragon power would always reign supreme. Compared to the sheer magnitude of dragon blood, it barely even registered. Even so, letting that bloodsucker slip through his fingers seriously ticked him off. But then, the system chimed in, analyzing his talents and dropping a massive special reward. It handed him a tailor-made ability, topping it off with a sweet 10 bonus stats, just for flexing his skills. The name of the skill? New Blood. It was completely unheard of. Scrolling past the glowing system prompts, it hit him. This wasn't just a simple buff, it was an absolute game-changer for his endgame. And the crazy part? He had casually unlocked an S-rank original vampire ability. Not even the Blood Monarch could claim that. That guy peaked at A+, without a single royal or original tag to his name. Suho figured this insane upgrade had to be the New Blood effect kicking in. His original game plan was just hoarding top-tier existing moves, but reality was serving up a way bigger feast. Still, he had to keep his ego in check. A hot streak today didn't mean he was untouchable tomorrow. With the gate crushed and his prize secured, Suho laid out his next move. The loot was secured. Now, it was time to crash the big leagues at Nexus. Cut to a towering skyscraper piercing the skyline, the Nexus headquarters, where employees hustled down the sleek corridors while Miss Sue marched her squad forward. Past a set of heavy double doors sat the guildmaster, chilling casually in his chair. Catching her eye, he waved Sue inside. She dropped the bombshell. Hunter An Suho sent a message. He was walking through their doors tomorrow to officially join the roster. The guildmaster muttered the words back, genuinely wondering if his ears were glitching. Facing the window, the massive news completely fried his brain for a second. When he finally found his voice, he barked out orders to roll out the red carpet immediately. Spinning his chair around to reveal a dead serious expression, he warned that An Suho was a total wild card. They had to play this flawlessly before the guy decided to ghost them. Back in the city, steel giants stretched into the clouds before the camera pans into a ridiculously high-end luxury apartment. Suho stepped through the front door and immediately spotted Jinhui, totally passed out on the designer's sofa, practically drooling. Suho just stared at the mess, asking what on earth he was doing. The reporter groaned, peeling himself off the cushions, muttering about how Suho literally just crushed the Tower of Tests that very day. Plus, they were technically roommates now, and more importantly, they were official partners in crime. Gripping a half-empty bottle like a lifeline, the dude hyped up the moment, declaring this kind of massive W demanded a raging after-party. He whined about coming home to an empty pad, but since he refused to let an epic milestone slide, he just kicked off the celebration solo. Suho gave him a look, lightly pointing out that juggling all this chaos must be draining his battery. But he promised the guy that this was barely the prologue. Way wilder victories were coming. Still hugging his booze, the wasted journalist blinked hard, questioning if that was 100% guaranteed. Suho just smirked, telling him to chill. The future was about to get crazy. Glancing at the massive feast covering the table, Suho hit the dizzy reporter with a question. Was he seriously down for round 2 at this ungodly hour? Flashing a massive, goofy grin, Jinhui enthusiastically nodded. Reaching for a freshly poured glass of wine beside the buffet, Suho casually dropped that he tested out the community app Jinhui hyped up, and it ran flawlessly. On top of that, the penthouse was an absolute vibe. Digging into the food, Suho brought up the guy's blog, noting the insane traffic it pulled, leading him to guess his new buddy was secretly swimming in cash. They clinked glasses, and with zero hesitation, Jinhui dropped the ultimate flex. He wasn't just doing okay, he was the youngest heir to a literal Chable empire, meaning his bank account was practically a phone number. Caught off guard, Suho raised an eyebrow, double-checking the insane claim before taking another sip of his drink. Jinhui kept spilling the tea, saying since Suho trusted him with his secrets, it was time to level the playing field. He confessed he was the youngest bloodline of the massive Daesin Corporation. Suho instantly deduced that, as the chairman's kid, he had to be next in line for the throne. But the reporter bitterly shook his head, exposing the dark reality of his family tree. His dad had a ton of kids, with different women. Since his mom was just a secret mistress, he was nothing more than an illegitimate child in the shadows. He swore he never dumped that baggage on anyone else, but considering they were locked in for the long haul, Suho deserved the unfiltered truth. Processing the drama, Suho stared at him and asked if the whole journalism gig was basically just a rich kid's side quest. Jinhui laughed it off, admitting it kind of was, but he genuinely thrived on the thrill of it. Plus, his dad literally bankrolled whatever crazy idea he came up with. Yet, the guy held zero inheritance rights and absolutely no pull within the corporate empire. They even tossed him a chance to run a whole subsidiary, but he turned it down cold, flat out admitting he was a killer reporter. But absolutely clueless when it came to business. Suho hoisted his drink, pointing out that, if nothing else, Jinhui was an absolute beast in the journalism game. Flashing a massive grin, the reporter admitted that compliment hit deep, confessing he had never crossed paths with a hunter like Suho in his entire life. The two guys slowly pushed up from the table, with Jinhui throwing out a toast to just the two of them. Suho backed it instantly, and their glasses clinked with a crisp ring. The next morning, Suho shuffled through the apartment, letting out a massive yawn. While from the kitchen, Jinhui hit him with an overly energetic morning greeting, pouring steaming water into a mug. Suho questioned if the dude seriously planned to grind on a weekend, to which the reporter shot back that his plate was totally full. Standing by the window, aggressively rubbing the sleep out of his eyes, Suho muttered they probably shouldn't have gone so hard on the drinks last night, but Jinhui just laughed it off, claiming he felt totally solid and honestly had a blast. Suho then probed why he was already gearing up to hunt down fresh scoops, and the reporter clapped back that he couldn't just coast on Suho-centered articles for the rest of his career. Catching that vibe, Suho casually dropped that this exact hustle was why he respected him so much, catching Jinhui completely off guard. He literally froze at the unexpected praise. Taking a quick sip, Jinhui asked what Suho's moves were for the day, and Suho hit him with a reminder that today was the big day they talked about. Clicking the pieces together, Jinhui asked if he was actually heading to Nexus, and Suho gave a firm nod, casually dropping that he hit level 50 last night and unlocked some major upgrades. So the timing was flawless. That casual flex made Jinhui completely freeze up, splashing boiling water right onto his hand. Absolutely shook because just 24 hours ago, Suho was sitting at level 40. He whipped around, staring at him like he was losing his mind, demanding to know how any human blasts through 10 levels in a single day. Suho just gave a totally unbothered shrug and corrected him. To be totally precise, he was actually level 51. The reporter gawked at him like he was looking at an alien, muttering that the deeper he dug into him, the more insane his whole deal seemed. Suho smirked, pointing out that sounded a little too intimate, and as Jinhui awkwardly scratched his head, Suho questioned why he was giving him that weird stare. Out of nowhere, the reporter shoved him toward the hallway, declaring that if he was stepping into a top-tier guild like that, he needed the drip to match the energy. Suho pushed back, swearing he didn't need to flex and was perfectly fine rocking casual wear, but the reporter wasn't having it, insisting he'd hook him up with a high-end suit and a luxury watch. When Suho kept fighting the makeover, the reporter dropped the hard truth that visual impact was everything at a place like Nexus, reminding him to grab the keys to any of his supercars. If he pulled up on a bus or hopped out of a random cab, he'd get clowned instantly. The scene cuts to an elite, dead silent district, where a cherry-red supercar glides to a halt, instantly breaking necks and pulling all eyes from the crowd outside. The butterfly doors pop up, and Suho steps out, draped in a razor-sharp, custom-fit suit that screams pure money. For a split second, he clears his throat, realizing this whole rich guy aesthetic actually slapped. A guy in a crisp suit marched up, smoothly sliding over a business card, while officially introducing himself as Bae Dong-hyuk, the big boss of Nexus. Suho took the card with a chill smile, dropped his own name as An Suho, and shadowed him straight into the guild's massive headquarters. Cut to moments later, he's sitting face-to-face with three heavy-hitting Nexus execs. Dong-hyuk kept his cool, noting that Suho must have power-leveled like crazy over the last few days, and probed whether that insane glow-up made him rethink his whole endgame, especially since he originally pitched himself as a future government official. Suho shut that down instantly, confirming the mission hadn't changed at all. The guild leaders shot each other wild, confused looks, prompting Suho to ask what the issue was. Dong-hyuk leaned in close, demanding to know why a guy gunning for a state job would ever want to back a private guild, if his ultimate target was playing for the government. Suho didn't sugarcoat it, flat out stating that riding with Nexus was the ultimate cheat code to secure his goals. He dropped the bomb that he was aiming to crush the 5th rank exam this very year. One of the suits questioned if he was just farming them for bonus evaluation points, and Suho owned up to it, admitting that while technically true, it was just one piece of a massive chess game. If he only chased the Hunter Association, those guys would think they had him totally trapped. That was the exact reason he was crashing Nexus, because the second the association realized other heavyweights were throwing better deals at him, they'd be forced to jack up their own offers. He threw in that while repping Nexus. He promised to grind out 100% for the guild, turning this team up into a massive win-win. Dong-hyuk just sat there, soaking it all in, as Suho swore to go all in. The guildmaster finally leaned back in his leather chair, nodding slowly. "I get it," he mumbled, but he had one massive question burning in his mind. He called it out right then and there. Back when Suho first knocked on their door, Nexus was literally bleeding out, and our boy's actual power level was a total mystery. Rolling the dice on a rookie back then? Super risky, sure, but it made total sense. But now, Dong-hyuk challenged, every top-tier guild in Korea would kill to draft you. So why, out of all those heavy hitters, are you only looking at Nexus? Suho just flashed a low-key smirk while the boss kept pushing. Flat out admitting Suho was built different, but his actual motives? Super sketchy. Interlocking his fingers, Dong-yuk dropped the hammer. Drop the act and give me the brutal truth, or this whole partnership is dead in the water. Suho let his eyes flutter shut for a split second. It's personal, he breathed out. Then, he dragged Dong-yuk's memory back to that viral PR speech he had given a while back, the one where he swore on his life that Nexus would burn down every single gate in Korea. Suho gave them major props, pointing out that Nexus threw way more cash and support at the victims' families than any other greedy guild out there. It was crystal clear. They were the most hardcore when it came to wiping those monster spawns off the map. I felt that, Suho admitted, totally convinced the boss wasn't capping during that speech. Because of that raw passion, he wanted to back Nexus, carry them to the top, and put all his insane stats on the line. Flashing a massive grin, he casually dropped that he wanted to keep this alliance going strong, even after he inevitably leveled up and joined the Big League Hunter Association. Dong-yuk dropped his eyes, a heavy sigh escaping him. All right, that checks out, he muttered. But then he shot back. Is selling out to the association really your only play here? Considering Nexus was already bleeding sweat and tears to speedrun gates and buff up hunters. Suho nodded respectfully, but hit him with the cold truth. If you guys seriously want to pull the plug on these gates for good, we have to step into hellscapes that other hunters wouldn't dare touch. He was talking about the locked-down, ultra-lethal red zones, swarming with government suits. His piercing eyes flicked over to a glowing holographic snapshot of a heavily chained portal. Way past those basic, mid-tier dungeons lie the 5 great gates. That was the endgame, and that was exactly why he needed top-secret government clearance. But until I get those keys, Suho promised, every single boss we execute will splash the Nexus logo right next to my name across the news. The sheer hype would completely shatter the current meta of Korea's elite guilds, rocketing Nexus straight to the #1 spot. Dong-yuk slammed his palms onto the desk. Yeah, but this hype train only keeps rolling. As long as you actually stay with us. Suho just gave a chill nod. Exactly. That is why I'm going to sweat blood for you guys, while I'm still in the roster. Suye's jaw practically hit the floor as wait, she gasped out. Did you seriously already scout your squad after our last chat? Suho didn't even flinch. He just confirmed it and dropped the first name on his hit list. Kang Daehan. Suye totally froze, glitching out for a second before stammering, as if her ears were completely playing tricks on her. Suho just bobbed his head, casually flexing that he was the mastermind who brainwashed Daehan into swapping to a meat shield tank class. Suye violently pushed her chair back, jumping to her feet. Are you insane? She snapped. What if he totally throws as a tank? Suho didn't even raise his voice. He just threw up a chill hand, telling her to take a breath. I did the math, he stated coldly. Every stat had been perfectly calculated. He shot back that Daehan hadn't just passed the hunter exam. He absolutely nuked it with god-tier scores. Suye bit her lip, her angry frown softening as those wild test results flashed in her mind. Against all odds, that crazy rookie had actually clinched the #2 spot overall. She grumbled that she had actually been hunting down whoever coached him to say thanks, but Suho just brushed his shoulders off. No biggie, he deadpanned, which honestly just ticked her off even more. That's when the third suit at the table finally unmuted his mic. Your pitch is absolute fire, kid, the executive stated. But let's reality check this for a second. If you're seriously aiming to raid those blacklisted, sealed gates, you gotta know the feds have those zones locked down tighter than Fort Knox. Private guilds have zero chance of getting VIP access, because keeping civilians breathing is priority #1. He leaned in, narrowing his eyes. So, hacker, how exactly are you planning to bypass? Suho didn't miss a beat. Are you seriously doubting my stats right now? He asked, his voice. Then he laid out his master plan. They would ink the contract the second he slammed a VIP clearance pass on this very table, proving he wasn't just talking trash. But wait, he paused, his brain glitching for a microsecond before he completely rewrote the deal. Forget the piece of paper. He was going to solo clear a restricted gate first. And the second he walked out of that boss room alive, the secretary in the back started sweating bullets at the sheer audacity of this flex, muttering under his breath that Suho was demanding king-level treatment. It's a fair trade, Suho insisted, zero hesitation in his eyes. The secretary nervously adjusted his glasses, mentally screaming that even though this kid had S-class potential, he was still technically a level 1 nobody with zero clout on paper. But Suho shot back, claiming that was the exact reason he was about to bust open a sealed gate right this second and flex his true power. Dong-hyuk studied him like a hawk. A smug grin crept onto his face as he agreed. Suho was definitely about to deliver. The guildmaster openly admitted he was hyped about how things played out today, adding that they could hash out the nitty-gritty contracts once the gate was wiped clean. Fast forward, Suho dipped from the building, peeling out in his ride. Up above, Dong-hyuk and his assistant leaned against the glass. The boss dropped his voice, issuing a swift command. Spin up an elite backup squad, and fast-track every single piece of paperwork for An Suho. His right-hand man faltered, questioning if they shouldn't just hold off until the kid actually pulled off the impossible. Flashing a wicked grin, Dong-hyuk brushed off the doubt. Suho wasn't the type to bluff. Plus, backing him up from day one? That was just... Shutting his eyes, he murmured that he was betting everything on the boy's promise. Sweat dropping down his neck, the assistant stammered, demanding to know why his boss was risking it all. Dong-hyuk scoffed. It wasn't blind faith, and deep down, the secretary already knew why. The guy swallowed hard and nodded. Flashbacks of Suho's piercing glare and ice-cold confidence flooded his mind. Cut to the towering, heavily fortified headquarters of the South Korean Hunter Association. Deep inside the corporate maze, Jung Chul-min was literally melting into his office chair, glaring at a monitor. Ripping at his hair, the poor guy was racking his brain, dying to find a cheat code to lock Suho down for their guild. Since the powerhouse wasn't about to just play ball and walk through the front doors, Chulman flirted with the idea of dangling a massive bounty for wrecking the test tower. But he instantly scrapped the thought. Those cheap suits up in executive management would strike that down in a heartbeat. They didn't care about a wholesome gratitude post. They craved a viral PR stunt, a photo op of Suho posing, flashing pearly whites right next to the president, faking some deep buddy-buddy connection. Chulman absolutely despised playing dirty or strong-arming anyone. Yet, Chief Pai's toxic advice kept ringing in his ears. A brutal plan that essentially boiled down to kidnapping the hunter. Chulman let out a massive groan, face planting straight into his keyboard, severely regretting his entire career path. Right as he was questioning his life choices, his phone started buzzing. A blank caller ID flashed on the screen. Drained of all willpower, he swiped answer and mumbled his standard greeting. Jung Chul-min speaking. He squinted, racking his tired brain over who the heck was dodging caller ID. But the second the voice dropped through the speaker, his jaw hit the floor. It was An Suho. Chulman launched out of his seat like he was spring-loaded. Eyes bulging out of his skull, he thought he was hallucinating. Smash cut to a gritty, hole-in-the-wall soup joint, thick steam rolling off boiling cauldrons. The two men squared off across a tiny wooden table. Suho broke the ice, casually mentioning it had been a hot minute since he last crashed here. Claiming this run-down spot, slapped with the ultimate boiled pork. Chulman blinked, totally thrown off, asking how on earth a high-tier hunter knew about a dump like this. Flashing a totally chill smile, Suho smoothly lied through his teeth, claiming it used to be his go-to lunch spot back in his blue-collar days. The suit nodded slowly, swallowing the bait without a second thought. Dipping his spoon into the broth, he confessed that Suho making the first move was the last thing he expected. Then, he raised an eyebrow, probing about the sudden phone number swap. Suho shrugged, complaining that his phone had been blowing up non-stop, so he just grabbed a burner line to dodge the spam, giving Chulman the VIP pass to use it from now on. The exhausted bureaucrat gave a knowing nod, sympathizing with the insane burnout of suddenly becoming the world's main character. Staring down at his bowl, Chulman poured out genuine gratitude for the lifeline, confessing he was totally convinced he'd been ghosted for good. Suho let out a soft chuckle, asking why the guy had so little faith, and cracked apart his wooden chopsticks. Then, without missing a beat, he dropped a bomb. He casually asked if the corporate overlords were twisting Chulman's arm, forcing him to act like a recruiter and reel Suho into their cult. Bam! Caught completely off guard, Chulman froze solid, throwing a hand over his mouth like he was blocking a punch. Chopsticks trembling near his face, he stuttered out a weak defense, asking what made him leap to that wild conclusion. Suho broke it down. It was sketchy as hell that the top dog president suddenly wanted to sit down right after the tower got demolished. Because let's be real, no matter how chaotic a dungeon break was, those paper pushers only ever stayed behind their desks. They never went out of their way to hunt down talent. Utterly paralyzed, Chulman just stared at his soup with a sickly cracked smile. Suho didn't let up, revealing he had pieced it all together. The corporate sharks just wanted a shiny photo op for their clout-chasing PR campaign. Hearing his darkest secret laid bare, Chulman shot him a look of pure, unadulterated terror. But Suho totally brushed it off, assuring him everything was chill. He just wished they'd kept it 100 from the jump, since there was zero harm in keeping things straight. Chulman kept dropping apologies, but Suho just waved them away, telling him to drop it. He'd already clocked the whole setup anyway. Honestly, he was actually grateful to the guy. The civil servant just blinked, pointing a shaky finger at his own chest, like his ears were glitching out. Suho kept talking, laying out how these shady recruitment schemes usually end up in straight-up blackmail or strong-arming. But Cholman? He kept it strictly professional. Rubbing the back of his neck like a guilty kid, Cholman muttered that the whole vibe still felt totally off. Without missing a beat, Suho casually dropped the bomb that he was officially down to swing by the association. Cholman physically froze mid-motion, practically begging to know if he was for real. Shoving another bite of food in his mouth like it was no big deal, Suho locked it in. He claimed he just wanted to show some appreciation, and figured rubbing elbows with the top brass might actually pay off. Cholman slowly bobbed his head, totally agreeing with the logic. Suho leaned in, asking when he should make his grand entrance. Cholman tried stalling until they cleared their plates, but right in the middle of his sentence, it clicked. He literally rocketed out of his chair, eyes completely lit up with hype. Bursting with sudden drive, he vowed to lock down a meeting right that very second. Fast forward a bit, and the two of them were pulling up to the massive headquarters of the Korean Hunters Association. Suho threw on a fake smile for a photo op right next to the big boss himself. Jung Kyung-won flashed his teeth for the cameras, then buttered Suho up, swearing how thrilled he was to finally cross paths. He laid it on thick, saying he knew a rising star like Suho was swamped, so accepting the invite meant the world. Right on cue, Vice President Park Hyuman chimed in, glazing him up by saying it wasn't every day they bagged such an insane rookie prodigy. Suho kept up the polite Boy Scout act, humbly replying that meeting the absolute legends of the association was an honor. But behind that picture-perfect mask, his stomach was practically churning just looking at these snakes. It had been a minute since he last saw their faces, but that pure, raw disgust came flooding right back. Narrowing his eyes like a predator checking a trap, Kyung-won asked if Suho was genuinely dead set on signing with them. Suho fired right back that it was his ultimate dream, the exact same sob story he pitched during his pre-exam interview. The president pressed him for the real reason. Dropping his gaze to sell the tragedy, Suho spun the tale of losing his parents to a brutal gate outbreak, claiming he just wanted to wipe every last portal off the map and be humanity's shield. But deep inside his own head, Suho knew that was only half the truth. The real endgame was utterly dismantling the president and his greedy lapdogs before they could rot the association from the inside out. Kyung-won clapped his hands, showering Suho with praise for his insanely noble heart. All the while, Suho silently mentally bookmarked the fact that this parasite would dig his claws into his throne until the exact second someone violently ripped him away. He was practically buzzing to see the absolute terror on this old pig's face when Reckoning Day finally dropped. And Kyung-won wasn't the only roach infesting this place. Right then, Park Hyuman opened his trap again, gushing over how flawlessly Suho handled himself. Crossing his arms pompously, he preached about how Suho was totally blind to money and fame, only caring about guarding the innocent masses, which was just top-tier hero behavior. The vice president pressed his fingertips together like some wise sage, and dramatically added that Suho had forged himself into an absolute unit of a man. He swore his parents were definitely smiling down on him. Suho bowed his head in polite thanks, while internally scoffing, betting heavily that Kyung-won orchestrated this entire PR stunt. In Suho's eyes, this guy was just a pathetic glazer, existing for no other reason than to shine Kyung-won's dirty shoes. Thanks to absolute clowns like them, half the gates in his past life went totally unchecked, and he was about to permanently strip away their power to screw over the world a second time. The mood shifted as Kyung-won eagerly asked which division Suho was eyeing up. Suho rubbed his chin, playing the thoughtful guy, mentioning he'd weighed a few different paths, but ultimately decided to lock in on the gate department. Cholman went totally rigid, jaw-dropping, while the VP demanded to know his reasoning. Suho didn't sweat it, smoothly explaining that unlike those private guilds, the association held the master keys to the gates, ran the first wave sweeps, and always got a piece of the raid action. Kyung-won gasped, claiming he was completely blown away by that level of raw selflessness, pointing out that Suho literally just volunteered for the most lethal meat grinder division they had. Park Hyuman aggressively nodded, hyping him up by saying elite beasts like Suho were built for that zone. The president suddenly pivoted to Cholman, barking out an order to prove their goodwill to the new recruit. Blinking in fake confusion, Suho asked what the catch was. Kyung-won smirked, throwing down the gauntlet. If Suho was truly that desperate to massacre portals, they'd toss him a massive menu of active gates to clear, since they were basically hoarding them. Cholman legitimately choked on his own spit, frantically trying to remind his boss that those portals were either strictly off-limits or absolute death traps. But before he could even spit out the warning, Suho cut him off with a bright, hungry smile, swearing it sounded like an absolute blast. Cholman panicked, desperately trying to talk him down from a suicide mission. But Suho just tightly gripped his fist, his voice buzzing with adrenaline as he vowed to crush the exact portals that threatened humanity the most. Kyung-won flashed a cocky smirk, declaring this bold flex was exactly the kind of energy he expected from Suho. Still completely shook, Chulman scrambled to get the president's attention, but the boss just raised an eyebrow, daring him to object. Sweating bullets under the heavy gaze, Chulman dropped his head and muttered that everything was totally fine, promising to prep the necessary paperwork. With that settled, Kyung-won ordered Suho to gear up for an absolute bloodbath inside those portals. Suho delivered a polite thank you, completely ignoring Chulman glaring daggers at the floor. He already knew the brutal truth. To these unawakened corporate suits, S-rank disaster zones were just shiny new toys. It honestly sickened him to see these pampered execs calling the shots when they hadn't spent a single second surviving the trenches. They were utterly clueless about the nightmare waiting on the other side. Legions of top-tier hunters had been slaughtered trying to conquer those exact dungeons. Yet these two executives were throwing Suho straight into the meat grinder without a second thought. While Chulman practically shattered his teeth, grinding his jaw in pure rage, Suho just held a totally chill smile. Little did they know, he already had the cheat codes for whatever twisted monsters lurked behind those sealed doors. Chulman leaned in to mutter something to the big boss. Watching them, Suho instantly cracked the code. These two were blinded by the bag. It was all about the profit margin, and they literally could not care less about the body count. As long as the raid was a massive win and the association leveled up their clout, human lives were just worthless collateral damage. Snapping back to reality, Kyung-won locked eyes with Suho, asking what rank he was gunning for in the upcoming evaluation. Flashing that signature grin, Suho dropped the bomb. He was locking in for the level 5 assessment by the end of the year. Kyung-won scoffed, asking if he actually understood the insane difficulty curve of that test. Unfazed, Suho fired back that clutching that elite rank would unlock massive perks, and he was planning to squad up with a guild to grind some hardcore field experience in the meantime. Throwing a hand up, Kyung-won hyped up the strategy, calling it an absolute masterclass. The association always prioritized veterans. Then, curiosity striking, he probed about the typical duration of those private guild contracts. Suho totally brushed off the timeline, stressing that grinding real combat hours was his ultimate main quest. As long as a guild checked off his boxes, he would stick around until it was time to crush the exam and officially join the association. Covering a lazy yawn, Kyung-won sarcastically wished him luck finding a spot that elite. A sly, knowing smirk, Suho's mind started racing. If the boss was actually greenlighting terms like this, sneaking into Nexus was totally viable. He instantly sensed a golden opportunity to forge an alliance between Nexus and the massive association. Out of nowhere, the heavy double doors swung open, and a voice announced the arrival of Pai Yong-yu. Instantly, Suho's relaxed vibe shattered, his expression freezing over completely. Strutting into the room with absolute main character energy, Pai cracked a joke about the bosses hoarding all the good snacks. But mid-sentence he hit the brakes, his eyes locking onto Suho chilling in the guest chair. Slowly, a massive, unhinged grin stretched across his face. He politely pivoted to bounce, but Kyung-won quickly ordered him to hold his ground. Gesturing towards Suho, the boss hyped him up as the absolute legend who solo cleared the exam tower. Pai squinted, buffering for a second, before practically shouting that it clicked, bursting into genuine laughter. Hyped out of his mind, he praised the insane meeting, extending a hand and flexing his title as the big boss of the special department. Suho gripped his hand, dropping his own name into the mix. They threw around some textbook corporate praises, but Suho's returning smile was razor sharp and totally guarded. Once everyone took a seat, Chulman flagged Pai down, dropping the absolutely wild lore that Suho was gunning for the level 5 promotion. Pai's brain practically blue-screened as he warning him that the difficulty spike was basically suicide. Without missing a beat, Suho shrugged, saying he was down to risk it. Pai just stared, absolutely gobsmacked. Another suit chimed in, casually revealing the association was handing Suho the keys to the forbidden sealed gates, just because the kid swore he could wipe them out. Pai went totally rigid, his eyes bugging out. He slapped a hand over his mouth, muttering under his breath, as he struggled to process the sheer madness. Shooting Suho a deeply stressed look, he demanded to know if the kid was actually serious, stressing that those specific dungeons were lethal death traps. Catching that raw, unfiltered panic on the chief's face, Suho found the whole interaction weirdly hilarious. Still, he kept his cool, replying that he knew exactly how sketchy the odds were. Visibly stressed, Pai folded his arms tight, admitting he literally had zero authority to block this suicide mission, even if he tried. But he genuinely prayed the kid wouldn't get himself packed up. Reading the room, Suho quietly realized Pai was a legit hunter at heart. a veteran who actually respected raw talent. That stressed-out look wasn't some fake corporate mask. It was pure, unscripted anger, terrified that a rising star was about to get flatlined for absolutely no reason. Leaning in, Pai threw out a lifeline, promising that if Suho ever wanted to ditch this plan and join the special squad, he would personally have his back. Instantly triggered, Cholman threw up a finger, barking at him to back off and stop poaching his recruits, since Suho was already locked in with the Gate Division. Totally confused, grumbling, Cholman explained that An Suho was obsessed with wiping out every single portal and demanded VIP access to clear them first. Slowly nodding, the puzzle pieces finally clicked together in Pai's. Flashing a sly grin, he pointed out that if fast-tracking dungeon runs was the only deal-breaker, his squad could easily fund that vibe too. Tipping his head toward his rival, he threw Cholman a smug smile, daring him to deny it. Completely defeated, Cholman dropped his hands to his hips and gave a totally miserable nod. Laughing it off, Pai casually dropped that once Suho absolutely crushed the level 5 exam, the dynamic between him and Cholman was going to get insanely toxic. Locking eyes with the young rookie, he promised they'd hash out the details post-exam, genuinely hyping Suho up to crush the trial. Suho gave a polite nod of thanks, but deep down, he knew exactly what this sly fox was playing at. Shooting a subtle side-eye at Cholman, Suho already did the math. If he cleared this, he'd instantly outrank the guy, shoving Cholman straight into a brutally awkward corner. Suho exhaled a quiet breath. Handling Cholman was always a messy balancing act. He desperately wanted to avoid making the guy feel trapped or totally eclipsed. Once the briefing wrapped up, the duo strolled down the endless, echoing hallway. Cholman just stared blankly at the floor tiles, his shoulders completely slumped. Stealing another quick glance, Suho finally broke the silence, asking if Chief Pai's words were seriously eating at him. Cholman didn't even try to hide it. Obviously, he was stressing out. He knew better than anyone just how cracked Suho's stats actually were. But even with that insane raw talent, diving into a sealed gate was pure suicide. Dropping the casual act, he practically begged Suho to stay on high alert. He even offered to pull some major strings and talk directly to the president. Ensuring the Hunter Association would back. Touched by the loyalty, Suho gave him a warm look, genuinely thanking him for having his back. But Cholman wasn't just dropping empty courtesies. He was dead serious. He reminded Suho that his Hunter license was practically still printing, heavily stressing that these sealed zones were nothing like standard dungeons. Then, he challenged Suho, asking if he actually grasped why the government completely blacklisted everyone, except the association, from touching them. Unfazed, Suho pointed out that even elite, S-tier guilds rarely secured clearance for these hot zones, strictly because of hardcore national security protocols. Cholman froze in his tracks, staring wide-eyed. If Suho knew all that, why the hell was he still marching straight into the meat grinder? Suho's answer was chillingly simple. He was 100% certain he'd secure the win. With zero hesitation, he swore everything would be totally fine. Flashing a confident smirk, Suho casually brought up a specific sealed rift under the association's lockdown, a nightmare zone known as the Nameless Sword Gate. Cholman instantly went rigid, stammering that this specific portal was easily one of the most lethal death traps on the planet. Suho didn't even blink. His smirk just grew sharper as he casually revealed he already had the cheat code to beat it. Fast forward to the next morning. A heavy-duty military rover sat idle against the classic low-rise cityscape of the Gyeongju district. Standing right at the edge of the Nameless Sword Plaza, a pair of armed guards blocked Suho and Jinwei, ordering the duo to hold their position. Suho totally rolled with it. Leaning in close, the reporter muttered that the vibes here were completely suffocating. Cool as ice, Suho whispered back that while the association technically held a leash on this dungeon, it was still a full-blown military compound. Suddenly, a shift in the perimeter caught their eyes. The guards snapped crisp salutes, before one pivoted straight towards Suho, demanding visual confirmation of his identity as Hunter Sung Suho. The second he got the green light, the brass introduced himself as Major Kim Jong-gu, the top dog calling the shots in this sector. Suho threw him a polite nod, smoothly saying it was an honor to cross paths. Major Kim didn't waste time, stating the squad leader was already holding down the fort inside. Pointing straight into the belly of the beast, Jinwei asked if they were beelining for the portal and got an instant nod. As the colossal structure finally eclipsed their vision, the journalist's jaw practically hit the pavement. The sheer, towering scale of the barricade left him totally muttering that this footage was going to break the internet. Major Kim quickly broke it down, explaining that the monolithic walls caging the gate were forged from reinforced iron and a hybrid alloy, specifically engineered to tank any nightmare trying to trigger a dungeon break, all while stopping the portal itself from growing. Jinwei kept gaping like a tourist, confessing the swirling abyss was insanely bigger than he pictured. With every step closer, he spotted wild, hidden details woven into the defenses. Suho chimed in, noting how the military had layered countless traps to make the core portal nearly impossible to breach. The crew marched deeper into the compound, until Major Kim halted in front of Chulman, officially announcing Hunter Sung Suho's arrival. The civil servant flashed a warm smile, totally welcoming Suho. The duo locked eyes, sharing a silent wave of relief and mutual respect. Chulman joked about the brutal commute out to this wasteland, totally stoked that Suho managed to make such good time. Catching on to the fact that Chulman beat them to the punch, Suho casually asked how long he'd been waiting. The official brushed it off, claiming he'd literally just pulled up a second ago. But before Suho could dig deeper, Chulman's eyes locked onto the unexpected +1 tagging along, the journalist. With a massive grin, PBS reporter Jo Jinhui practically shoved his hand forward, hyping up how absolutely stoked he was to meet him. They shook on it, but Chulman's face was a total question mark. He literally demanded to know why a journalist was chilling in a high-risk drop zone. Suho totally killed the awkwardness, stepping up to explain that the camera would only start flashing after the raid was officially wiped out, and casually asked for the green light. The government dude just shrugged, admitting the base wasn't top secret, so he had zero grounds to block them. Still scratching his head, he confessed he was just mind-blown that Suho literally brought his own personal hype man to a dungeon run. Jinhui hit him with a massive thank you for the clearance. And absolutely buzzing with energy, so he'd better burn his face into his memory. Chulman just dryly fired back that he definitely wouldn't forget. Suddenly, Major Kim rolled up to Suho, gripping an M416 assault rifle like his life depended on it. He mentioned that the Hunter Association had sent an update, stating that Hunter Sung Suho was the official raid leader for this op. Suho just gave a cool, silent nod. The Major choked on his words for a sec, muttering a quick apology before straight up asking what Suho's current level actually was. Suho casually dropped that he was sitting at level 51. Major Kim's jaw practically hit the floor, but he quickly snapped his eyes away and mumbled a sketchy okay. They finally hit the drop zone, a massive, reinforced steel vault door casting a heavy shadow over them. Major Kim locked eyes with Suho that the inner perimeter of the gate was totally prepped, giving him the all-clear to dive right in. But he dropped a harsh reality check. The second Suho crossed that threshold, the vault would deadbolt shut behind him. Flashing an icy, unbothered smile, Suho just thanked him. Out of nowhere, a familiar voice shouted his name. Chulman rushed over, totally sweating it, and asked if he even had a game plan. Suho casually fired back that he had it covered. Major Kim just stood there watching them, absolutely baffled by how they were just casually chatting in a literal death zone. Suho smoothly stated that putting his game plan into words was useless, but he was about to totally demolish this gate, exactly like he speed ran the Tower of Challenge. He then dropped an ultimatum. When he pulls this off, Chulman better not ghost him on their deal to carry him through the rest of the portals. As well, the massive vault clicked off lock and groaned open. Feeling the heavy vibes, Chulman practically prayed for him to make it back alive. Suho told him to chill out, casually dropping that 1 hour was all he needed. Chulman's eyes practically popped out of his skull as he gasped, 1 hour? Tossing back a wildly confident smirk, Suho promised he'd see them in a minute before the heavy metal door slammed completely shut behind him. Jinhui let out a massive breath, hyping up the fact that Suho had officially dropped into the strike zone. Squeezing his eyes shut, Chulman muttered that they were fully playing the waiting game now. Major Kim whispered, visibly stressed, asking if this was actually going to end well, arguing that a hellhole like this couldn't just be solo carried by a dude with crazy high stats. He literally asked if Sung Suho was somehow maining a healer build. Jinhui totally glitched out, blinking like a deer in headlights. So the Major hit him with a question again. A wild grin took over the reporter's face as he corrected him, dropping the bomb that Suho was basically a healer in name only. That just completely short-circuited Major Kim's brain. Chulman tossed a hand up, heavily dropping the facts that he had never, in his entire life, seen a dude shred with a blade the way Suho did. The Major was skeptical, asking if his swordsmanship was actually that OP. Chulman instantly started hyping up what he saw go down during the official Hunter licensing test, breaking down how Suho was literally signed up to run the healer exam. But instead, he straight up butchered every single monster with a sword, hard-carried his patient, and aced the test without breaking a sweat. White-knuckling the strap of his bag, Jinhui was literally shook, admitting he had never heard this lore before, and totally geeked out over whether speedrunning an exam like that was even legal. Chulman totally validated him, saying he was just as mind-blown, but since Suho checked every single box, the guild couldn't hit him with a penalty. Both the soldier and the reporter just stood there, their jaws completely unhinged. Major Kim instantly connected the dots, realizing Suho was rocking god-tier sword mechanics. Suddenly, the whole mission totally clicked. He was here specifically to aggressively speedrun this exact gate. Locking his eyes on the brutal dungeon entrance, Choman gave a hard nod, totally agreeing that the Major had absolutely nailed it. Right in front of Suho stood the infamous nameless sword portal, completely locked down as a strict solo-only instance. The exact millisecond he crossed the barrier, massive jagged cliffs instantly boxed him in, while the system blasted a notification that he had successfully entered the gate. Gripping his blade, he swaggered through the dense, eerie forest, scanning the zone and vibing with the fact that it had been a hot minute since his last run here. The trail ripping through the woods was totally obvious, hitting Suho with major flashbacks of how he used to get absolutely wrecked trying to clear this map. Literally surviving on 1 HP back in the day. Out of nowhere, a high-pitched alarm rang out beside him, and he caught a glitchy black shadow creeping through the trees right on his 6. A harsh system alert blared, signaling the boss had finally spawned. Out stepped a fully armored knight, the nameless swordsman. No level displayed, just pure intimidation as he readied his enormous blade. Instantly, the atmosphere warped, blazing with an intense blinding yellow aura. The system chimed in. The swordsman had locked in his domain, the battlefield. And the rules were brutal. Inside this zone, the boss's stats perfectly mirrored Suho's own. An exact physical match. Plus, every weapon and ability was completely locked. Unless it was a sword. Pure, raw, blade-to-blade combat. But Suho? He just smirked. He casually greeted this terrifying boss like an old buddy he hadn't hung out with in years. The knight blitzed forward in a heartbeat. The two warriors collided point blank, with Suho perfectly parrying the heavy strike. Suho whipped a counterattack, but the armored giant deflected it without breaking a sweat. Swirling white trails of energy bled into the air as they briefly pushed each other back to reset. Suho's eyes locked onto the boss's footwork. He watched the Sword Emperor shift his weight, keeping flawless balance to completely absorb the recoil. After every single heavy swing, as the knight cleaved through the air again, Suho knew the cold truth. Nobody in the current timeline could ever solo this monster using just raw sword skills. Gripping his colossal blade with 2 hands, the Sword Emperor seamlessly morphed his fighting style right after their blades locked. He swapped stances in a fraction of a second to bait out an opening, with a totally different moveset. And it didn't stop there. The knight threw wild, jagged slashes from insane blind spots, flicking his trajectory mid-swing as he relentlessly closed the gap. Suho had to admit it. The absolute scariest thing about this beast was his cracked adaptability. He evolved his entire strategy to custom counter whoever he fought. The knight ripped another slash. Suho barely weaved past it, feeling the enemy's lethal battle IQ. But honestly, that lethal unpredictability was exactly why Suho had learned so damn much from him in his past life. Flashing a confident, knowing grin, Suho, the nameless swordsman, launched into a massive diving strike. Suho instantly read the gap and swiped, but the boss contorted his body at the final microsecond. Still, sparks flew. Suho's edge grazed the heavy plating, carving a shallow gouge. "Did I spook you a little?" Suho teased lightly. The Sword Emperor just glared back, dead silent. Suho remembered this detail perfectly. This guy literally never dropped a single word. Until his very last breath. The armored titan squared up, double gripping his hilt. Suho exploded forward, landing a brutal chunk of damage, and instantly queued up his next combo. He casually dropped the bomb that this was actually his 7th time running this exact boss fight. He swung with vicious speed. The knight's lethal countercleave shaved mere millimeters over Suho's scalp. With surgical precision, Suho sliced clean through one of the knight's limbs, then planted a crushing kick directly into his chest, sending the Sword Emperor flying backward, crashing violently into a dense patch of thorns. Standing over the wreckage, Suho thought about how many legends in history went crazy trying to figure out what kind of monster was actually hiding inside that armor. The knight dragged himself up, now missing a leg. "You know how crushed I was when I first found out what you really are?" Suho murmured. Tightening his grip on his hilt, Suho stated the facts. The entire world hyped this guy up as the nameless swordsman, or the legendary Sword Emperor, but the reality was way darker. He was nothing but the lingering ghost of the sword demon. A flickering, phantom leg manifested right where the severed one used to be, and one of his gauntlets morphed into pure, shimmering spectral energy. The two titans clashed once more, steel screaming against steel, as stray shockwaves shredded the earth and completely pulverized the surrounding boulders. Suho parried a devastating overhead smash, his own blade suddenly erupting in a bleeding red aura, and retaliated instantly. His edge punched a massive, jagged crater straight through the enemy's chest plate. Without hesitating, he hammered the exact same weak point, causing glowing purple fissures to spiderweb violently across the Sword Emperor's entire body. Launching himself backward, the broken knight tried to create space, but Suho was relentless, sticking to him like a shadow while meticulously tracking every flinch. "My entire kit was literally built to hard counter your every move," Suho whispered. Flashing one last grin, he unleashed a devastating, fight-ending arc. Massive shards of metallic armor exploded into the sky, and finally, the dust settled, leaving Suho standing victorious over the shattered boss. The system interface pinged. The nameless swordsman was officially wiped out. The sealed gate was completely cleared, and Suho naturally secured the MVP title. Staring down at the wreckage with a twinge of nostalgia, Suho softly admitted that it was genuinely good to see his old rival again. And honestly, he owed the guy a massive thank you, because if it weren't for this brutal ghost, Suho never would have unlocked his god-tier mastery over the blade. A singular, shattered piece of the helmet rested in the dirt, a quiet reminder that Suho's ultimate power was all thanks to his greatest enemy. He truly lived up to the legendary title of the Sword God. Pitch-black energy coiled around Suho as he gave the fallen spirit a final, respectful send-off, promising to honor the guy's memory every single Teacher's Day. Boom. The system rewarded his victory, flooding his vision with glowing holographic notifications. One alert popped up, confirming a fresh level up. A second window flashed, bumping up his base stats by 1. He also snagged a sweet extra skill point, right alongside a massive 5-point bonus, just for surviving this hellish dungeon. A solitary blade rested in the dirt. Suho let out a heavy sigh, bummed that this phantom enemy left behind 0 blood and absolutely no shadow. That meant his epic bloodsucker and shadow eater abilities were completely useless right now. Whatever. He snatched the weapon off the ground, running his eyes over the razor-sharp edge. Honestly, snagging this epic loot made the whole crazy ordeal totally worth it. His own reflection bounced off the polished steel, just as the system scanned the drop. It was the nameless sword of the nameless swordsman. Rank? Suddenly, the metal vibrated violently. Crack! The weapon exploded right in his bare hands, dissolving into thousands of glowing, The system chimed in. The blade's essence had been fully absorbed, instantly unlocking a crazy new passive skill, Sword Understanding. A smirk crept across Suho's face. The phantom soul had completely rewired his combat instincts, evolving the very core of his Guardian Sword technique. A massive wall of text rolled down. Guardian Sword, rank S+. This was the ultimate, flawless combat style forged by Suho himself. Stripped down to pure, raw basics, it struck a legendary balance between lethal strikes, ironclad defense, and lightning-fast dodges. Fusing with the ancient spirit, pushed the skill's power ceiling straight through the roof. It completely devoured the weapon's lingering will, unlocking an insane, absolutely infinite potential for growth. Pure awe hit Suho like a truck. His absolute masterpiece of a sword art had finally been awakened. Meanwhile, cutting over to the anxious crowd outside. Glued to the glowing monitors, Jinwei muttered that things looked way too peaceful. Cholman shot him a sideways glance. The guy confessed that even though he backed Suho 100%, factoring in how utterly broken that boss was, Jinhui instantly clapped back, pointing out the crazy fact that barely 30 minutes had even gone by. Major Kim marched up to the front line, sternly requesting Cholman's green light to scout the chaotic scene personally. Securing the okay, he geared up to breach the perimeter, until the journalist practically screamed at him to freeze. Baffled, the major demanded to know what was going on. Cold sweat rolled down Jinhui's pale face. He frantically jammed his finger toward the swirling rift, screaming for everyone to lock their eyes on the broadcast. Suho emerged from the shadows, casually strolling right out of the crackling portal. Jinhui totally lost his mind, roaring that the impossible dungeon had just been conquered. Blinking against the blinding sunlight, Suho jumped a little when someone suddenly yelled out, "Pro on!" Out of nowhere, Jinwei and Cholman bolted toward him like feral toddlers chasing down an ice cream truck. Jinwei was literally waving his bulky camera in the air, like he was vlogging at Coachella. Suho threw his hands up, telling them to chill out, but the reporter was practically radiating pure hype, desperately interrogating him. How could anyone possibly chill when Suho just demolished a lethal, sealed dungeon in under 60 minutes? He shrieked that this feat was completely unhinged. Cholman's face was a wild mix of sheer terror and absolute euphoria. He loudly reminded the crew that Suho had actually slaughtered the legendary nameless swordsman, the exact same raid boss that had utterly crushed over 200 elite assault teams. Panicking slightly, he begged to know if Suho was hurt. Flashing a chill smile, Suho shrugged and said he felt totally fine, flexing that taking out the boss was an absolute cakewalk. The major just stared at him, absolutely paralyzed. His brain was violently short-circuiting at the absurd idea that a massacre-inducing demon could be called easy. Flanked by his two hype men, Suho caught the military guy's shell-shocked glare. The poor soldier was having a total existential crisis, trying to figure out exactly what kind of monster Suho. Vibrating with chaotic energy, Cholman begged for a massive group selfie to immortalize clearing this impossible death trap. The major awkwardly tried to dodge it, but Cholman instantly shut him down, swearing it was just a casual flex for the records and totally harmless. He hyped up the major, pitching that since he was a low-key, strictly business military dude, he barely ever got any camera time anyway. Plus, slapping an official South Korean army major on the timeline would make this unbelievable victory completely undeniable. Giving up the fight, Jong-gu finally slid into the frame. Smash cut to the massive group pic, glaring right off a sleek laptop screen, dead center in front of the Nexus Guildmaster. Suho coolly broke down the situation. Just like he dropped over the phone earlier, he officially wiped the Nameless Sword restricted zone clean off the map. Flexing the hard proof, he pointed out the Hunter Association rep and Major Kim Jong-gu chilling right next to him in the shot. He then gestured to the beaming journalist in the corner, dropping his name as Joe Jinhui. Suho made it crystal clear. They dropped this legendary group shot specifically to block any sketchy media outlets from twisting the facts. Slipping into full professional mode, Jinhui slid his sleek business card across the desk, officially declaring himself as Suho's exclusive press guy. Dong-wook aggressively massaged his throbbing temples. He straight up rejected the card, making it crystal clear that pulling strings was never part of his playbook. The Guildmaster loomed over Suho, absolutely baffled, demanding to know how on earth he pulled off the impossible. Suho just gave him a blank stare, asking. Dong-hyuk threw his hands up, wildly gesturing around the room as he pressed for answers. How exactly did this kid bypass the lockdown to enter the sealed gate? How did he completely wipe out the dungeon in record time? And more importantly, how did he walk away without a scratch from a nightmare that had slaughtered over 200 elite without missing a beat? Suho casually dropped that he just strolled into the Korean Hunters Association and got the green light straight from the president himself. Then, he just walked inside and slaughtered the boss. Simple as that. Dong-hyuk stared at him like he was losing his mind, frantically raking his fingers through his hair as his brain short-circuited. Not letting the silence drag, Suho leaned in. Since he just flexed his insane power level, it was time to lock in that contract. Holding up two fingers, he dropped his terms. The guild boss could write whatever zeros he wanted on that paycheck, but Suho had two non-negotiable demands. First off, while he was repping the Nexus badge, the guild had to back him up 100%. Second, the second he crushed the Hunter Association's official exam, his exclusive contract would vanish into thin air. Oh, and he casually mentioned that the association president already knew he cleared the gate, and that top-tier guilds were already blowing up his phone, but he ghosted them all. He was only signing with a squad willing to go all in on him. Dong-hyuk shot him a deeply suspicious glare, a complex mix of emotions flashing across his face. But then, the guy just threw his head back and erupted into manic laughter, declaring it a deal. He barked at his secretary to fetch the paperwork immediately. The guild leader matched Suho's cocky energy with absolute, unhinged hype, admitting he was foolish to doubt a living legend who just proved his worth. Suho held out his hand, sealing the alliance with a rock-solid handshake. The boss gave a grim heads-up that the upcoming grind was going to be brutal, and Suho didn't even flinch, declaring he was born ready. Cut to later that evening, crawling through the bumper-to-bumper city gridlock. Suho cracked a grin, offering to take the wheel since his buddy had played chauffeur on the way over. Jinhui just laughed it off, claiming he was merely doing his job as Suho's personal manager. When Suho raised an eyebrow at that title, Jinhui pointed out that Suho kept spoon-feeding him viral, exclusive scoops. Driving him around was the absolute bare minimum he could do to repay the favor. He smugly patted the dashboard, bragging that this sleek sedan rode way smoother than his old clunky minivan. So he literally bought this brand new ride just for the trip. Suho stared at him, absolutely speechless, getting smacked with the reality that this dude was dripping in trust fund wealth. Cruising down the neon-lit streets, Suho asked if the reporter was going to get roasted by his boss for ditching the office all day. Jinhui puffed out his chest, bragging that he'd already dropped several massive exclusives that broke the internet earlier. Nobody was going to complain, especially since he swore to his editors that he'd drag the hottest rookie hunter straight to their headquarters soon. It suddenly clicked for Suho. There was zero chance this media shark was letting a cash cow like him slip through his fingers.
Jinhui mapped out his master plan. First, they'd break the internet with the sealed gate victory, then drip-feed the massive reveal of his Nexus alliance. By spacing out the hype, they'd keep the algorithm fed and the audience absolutely hooked. But keeping it real, the internet's attention span was a wild gamble. Suho just leaned back, shut his eyes, and gave the reporter total control to run the show. But then, the playful vibe shifted. Jinhui gripped the wheel tighter, dropping a seriously heavy question. How on earth did Suho counter the Phantom Swordsman's flawless technique? Suho kept it casual, explaining the boss had a super basic, repetitive rhythm. And he already knew the legendary Sword Emperor's whole gimmick inside out. Since the deathmatch locked them into raw blade-to-blade combat, he admitted it might sound like a massive ego trip. But he knew in his gut that his blade skills absolutely dwarfed the monsters. Jinhui's jaw hit the floor, his knuckles turning white on the wheel, as Suho kept going, explaining that raw combat experience dictated that fight, and his own sword mastery was just built different. Sweating bullets, the reporter reminded him that this exact monster had butchered over 200 elite fighters, including the literal greatest swordsman in the entire nation. Did Suho even grasp how insane that sounded? Unbothered, Suho broke it down. The Phantom Warrior's whole trick was mirroring its victim's stats and shifting its fighting style to match. Inside that bloodbath of a gate, only pure blade mastery mattered. No magic gear, no cheat abilities, just raw, unfiltered swordplay. Eyes locked on the road, Jinhui gulped and asked if Suho even possessed a sword skill. Suho nonchalantly confirmed he did, an S-rank one at that. But it was completely hidden from his status window. The sedan violently swerved as Jinhui slammed his forehead right into the steering wheel. Losing his absolute mind, he screamed, demanding to know how and when this kid unlocked a god-tier S-rank skill out of nowhere. Flames of pure hype practically erupted behind the reporter, forcing Suho to tell him to chill out before he literally boiled over. He dropped a quick warning that you gotta drip-feed the intel, not just unload the whole stash at once. Jinhui let out a massive sigh, making it crystal clear that if Suho ever needed the rundown on his past, he just had to say the word and get immediate answers. Easing off the gas, the reporter confessed that Suho possessed a crazy knack for catching people off guard. He honestly never pictured himself clocking in for a boss. Suho quickly put him at ease. Jinhui shot back a genuine thanks for hitting him up first, swallowing his pride to apologize for ever doubting the guy's potential. Suho just brushed it off with a chill laugh, claiming it was no big deal. The sleek ride finally pulled up to their ultra-luxurious apartment complex, prompting Jinhui to ask if they were officially wrapping up the daily grind. Suho gave a tired nod, totally ready to crash. The journalist instantly offered to escort him straight to his door, earning a super genuine thanks from the tired boss. Later that evening, with pitch-black skies settling outside, Suho finally collapsed onto his plush mattress, letting out a long, grounding breath. A quiet wave of hype washed over him, knowing he absolutely crushed today's objectives. Scrubbing his damp hair with a towel, he suddenly noticed his energy levels were still peaking, despite the insane hustle. Tossing the towel aside, he flashed his glowing status window wide open. The holographic interface displayed 7 leftover bonus points. It clicked instantly. This was exactly the ammo he needed to trigger the insanely rare Unity effect. The requirements were notoriously brutal. Every single stat, -1, had to rock the exact same rank. And those matching levels needed perfectly identical numbers. If even a single point was left hanging, the system would aggressively force the lowest stat to catch up with the big leagues. Suho navigated the digital menus with laser focus, staring as the system calculated his crazy build. Then, boom, the glowing alert popped up. Every single brutal condition was cleared, and the Unity effect flared to life. Blinking in pure shock, he watched the system dump the final points, perfectly balancing out his entire loadout. His player card flickered and refreshed, revealing a flawlessly symmetrical build. Every single attribute was completely locked in at red level rank 14 across the board. An intense rush of adrenaline spiked through his veins. He squeezed his fists tight, screaming internally that he actually pulled it off. Back in his previous timeline, he assumed this kind of god-tier setup was a total myth, so he never even bothered grinding for it. Now, locked onto that screen, a massive, victorious grin took over his face. He flopped backward onto his mattress, absolutely determined to keep up this insane momentum. Suddenly, his phone buzzed next to him. The phone screen flashed a blast from the past. Gu Yunhua. Without even bothering to sit up, Suho answered, smoothly dropping that it had been a minute since they last talked, and her timing was honestly flawless, because he was currently riding a massive high. She instantly fired back, sarcastically noting that he must have way too much time on his hands. Caught off guard, he asked what her deal was, and told her to drop the stiff, formal act. Yunhua bluntly stated she saw the viral article. A smirk creeping up, Suho pressed the speaker tighter to his ear. Shocked the scoop dropped that fast, he admitted he hadn't even skimmed the comments section yet, demanding she spill the tea on the public's reaction. But she stubbornly threw another sir at him, demanding they link up in person. Suho wasn't having it, doubling down that he only needed her final yes or no. She snapped right back, harshly reminding him her squad hadn't actually accepted his recruitment pitch yet. Unbothered, he said if she or her crew weren't vibing with the terms, he wasn't about to force their hands. That completely threw her off balance, giving Suho the opening to press for her answer one last time. Yunhua squeezed her eyes shut, desperately asking what their next move was supposed to be. Suho finally pushed off the mattress, announcing he'd drop the full debrief in person tomorrow. He ordered the whole crew to pull up to Nexus Academy right at 1 in the afternoon. She instantly tried to fight him on it, complaining that 2 of her guys were stuck on shift and she had college lectures. His face instantly went ice cold. He savagely replied that he clearly gave them way too much credit. Looks like nobody in her squad actually cared about real progression, wasting their time on pointless side quests instead. He actually had to yank the phone away from his head as Yunhua completely lost it, screaming every curse word in the book before furiously promising to show up anyway. She barked that she'd be standing right at the academy by 1 in the afternoon and completely cut the line. A cocky smirk spread across Suho's face as he whispered a quiet goodbye. Fast forward to the next afternoon, at the insanely massive Yunhua aggressively folded her arms, snapping at him not to let this go to his head. She fiercely defended her presence, claiming she only ditched class because she honestly felt like slacking off, not because he told her to. The rest of her edgy squad awkwardly hovered in front of Suho, who was totally kicked back on a nearby bench. He coolly mentioned that he never actually asked for her excuse, earning a pissed-off huff. Deeply triggered, she demanded to know what the big emergency was. Suho finally stood his ground, his vibe shifting as he stated he had a major reality check to drop. Flashing an absolutely chilling smile, he casually announced that today he was going to wipe every single one of them out. The Banshee members completely froze, their jaws on the floor, while he ruthlessly handed out digital tablets and told them to sign the liability waivers first. Yunhua squinted hard at the glowing screen. They dead-ass thought he was making them sign away their lives on some shady death contract. Skimming the fine print, she saw it was just a basic skill assessment. She blinked, asking if he was seriously just after their stats. Suho waved it off. He dropped the bomb that once he infiltrated the special division, he'd need an elite, off-the-books crew. He'd already made it crystal clear he needed actual phantoms in the field, and he wasn't about to recruit just any random scrubs for the gig. Turning his back, he laid out the harsh reality. Their upcoming boot camp was going to completely wreck them until they puked. They were about to get a crash course in everything from bare-knuckle brawling to absolutely maxing out their unique kits. He swore the data was strictly for his eyes only, meaning they had to keep it 100% real with him. This whole dynamic ran on trust. He'd already spilled his tea, so now they had to step up. The squad nervously cut to the Nexus Academy arena. Suho flashed a sleek black keycard, a wicked grin spreading across his face as he announced playtime was over. He flashed back to when Miss Suye handed it over, hyping up how this VIP pass unlocked literally every single door on campus. That included the exclusive S-rank zones, keeping the nosy haters completely off his back. Plus, she tossed in the guest passes he'd asked for. Flipping the plastic in his hand, Suho suddenly realized he'd been so hyper-fixated on the grind that he completely ghosted Dewan after promising to link up here. Whatever, he'd slide into his DMs later to set it up. Just a few feet away, the Banshee crew was already strapped into high-tech simulation pods. Suho figured he'd just freestyle whatever problems popped up. In a flash, the digital world warped, dropping them smack in front of massive, jagged cliffs. Welcome to the Kunlun Mountains. Suho faced his new squad, smirking as he declared this brutal wasteland was their new hangout spot for literally all their free time. Scanning the room, he mentally noted they were all hard stuck below level 50. Perfect. He could completely reconstruct them from the ground up. Yunho snapped, demanding to know what the hell this twisted boot camp actually involved. Suho kept it chill. They were starting with the bare-bone basics and aggressively polishing their sloppy combat forms. Because playing at their current garbage skill tier, the Special Ops division would bag them in a heartbeat. He ruthlessly asked if they seriously thought their discount parlor tricks could outsmart the feds indefinitely. Yanhua fired back, fiercely defending their flawless master plan and swear. Suho just crossed his arms and let out a savage chuckle, happily reminding her that he'd already absolutely dismantled. Newsflash: the perfect crime is a myth, especially when you're living in a world crawling with overpowered freaks. He dropped the hammer. That was exactly why they had to learn how to keep themselves alive. And maybe, just maybe, watch each other's backs. Snap! A massive armory of deadly weapons materialized out of thin air. He casually told them to pick their poison. Locking down the basics and killing their fear was mission critical right now. Yunho grabbed a blade, dryly asking if there was a catch. Suho tilted his head, asking if she remembered the new clout attached to his name. She grumbled something about people hyping him up as the sword god. A menacing aura flared around his right hand as he proudly confirmed the title. Leaning heavily on his blade, he looked them dead in the eye. They were staring down a literal grandmaster of the blade, so expecting him to coach them in anything else was pure delusion. If they wanted to max out their swordplay in this VR space, every other he couldn't physically ban them from cheating, but relying on their magic would only nerf their growth later. The squad's faces instantly darkened. Suho spun his sword with deadly precision, daring them to try and take his head as he officially kicked off the bloodbath. Boom! He blitzed them instantly. Heads literally rolled. Stopping mid-slaughter, he taunted the shell-shocked survivors for daring to look so shook. Then, in a blur of steel, he effortlessly clipped the last two. A second later, the wiped squad respawned back at the starting line. Suho barked that since they'd already tasted death once, snapping to attention, they instantly dropped into defensive guards. Suho gave a slow, mock-proud nod. Round 2. Eyes shooting upward, they barely processed the shadow plunging toward them. Suho cratered the ground, violently scattering their bodies like bowling pins, while mercilessly trash-talking them. He roasted one guy, swearing his own grandma had better reaction times. He viciously elbowed another right in the sternum, mocking how a supposed delivery runner could be so painfully sluggish. Laughing, he asked if the dude got fired because his customers literally starved to death waiting on their takeout. The kid was sent flying into his teammate. Pivoting smoothly to the third target, Suho sneered, utterly baffled at how a teacher was this lethargic. The guy couldn't even block a basic swing. Suho savagely questioned what he was even educating kids about, when toddlers could easily outrun him. Desperate, the guy stammered that he tanked the hit on purpose. Suho just rolled his eyes, calling that pathetic cop-out worse than a middle schooler's homework excuse. Their hands were violently shaking as they gripped their hilts. One of them finally lost it, screaming profanities, and asking when this arrogant jerk would just shut the hell up. Roaring in frustration, they rushed him all at once. Blocking the strike, Suho smiled to himself. This rising rage and focus? It was exactly the mental armor they needed to not choke when hitting a massive shockwave ripped through the battlefield. Suho locked eyes with them, declaring they wouldn't just be his little delivery boys anymore. They were about to become his literal He was molding them into absolute units. Elite warriors built to completely crushing their blades beneath his boots, he hit them with a brutal truth. Leveling up isn't a walk in the park. True power only sparks when your back is slammed against a wall with zero way out. And with that, the grueling, hours melted away. The Banshee squad lay wrecked in the dirt, muscles screaming as they barely managed to drag themselves upright. Throwing up a hand, Suho admitted their hustle was actually kind of solid, but he had bigger fish to fry. Their jaws hit the floor when he casually dropped the bomb. The simulation was on a timer, and they were stuck in this nightmare until the clock ran out. Yunho blinked, totally stunned, asking if he was seriously just going to dip. But right on cue, a glitchy, digital clone of Suho materialized behind him, and he flashed a smirk, telling her to chill. This holographic copy packed his exact same overpowered stats. Hoisting its blade, the digital phantom immediately started roasting them, calling them absolute trash bags and demanding they square. Pushed to the brink, the Banshee crew lost their minds, spitting pure venom and cursing Suho's name like he was the ultimate menace. Popping out of the virtual reality pod, Suho threw one last glance over his shoulder at the 4 victims, still grinding away in the matrix. That was definitely enough torture for today. His phone buzzed, and Suye's voice filtered through the speaker, dropping the tea that a massive article just leaked about his recruitment. It was all about his sudden leap to the Nexus Guild. Suho instantly asked if the author was his guy, Zhou Jinwei. She validated his hunch. It was Jinwei's explosive exclusive. The PR team was already itching to drop a follow-up statement. Staring out at the city skyline, Suho smirked, saying the timing was flawless. And honestly, they needed to cook up another headline. Stat. Suye paused, warning him it might be rushing things, since the internet trolls were about to come for his neck. After all, he had hyped up his dream of being a government hunter, only to pull a massive 180 and secure the bag with a private guild. The comment section was guaranteed to be a toxic wasteland. Suye, however, promised that sticking to his mastermind playbook would flip the haters. Suho silently chewed on the fact that his upcoming rank 5 exam was still completely under wraps. Knowing the leak was inevitable anyway before the year ended, he promised to explain the rest of his plan later and hung up to dial another number. He hit up Jin Wei, who answered with a hyped-up greeting, his fingers flying across his keyboard like a madman. Jin Wei asked what the boss needed him to cook up next. Suho mentioned the Nexus bombshell was already making waves, and that the public backlash was getting incredibly spicy. But he had a galaxy brain play. He ordered a second headline drop, one that would expose his insanely risky next move, cracking open another sealed gate. Flashing a devilish grin, Suho dropped the name, The Swamp of Despair. Almost instantly, a fresh article shattered the internet. The headline screamed that An Suho had utterly conquered the cursed gate of the Nameless Sword. Social media absolutely lost its collective mind. Netizens were scrambling, mind blown that he just speedran the Tower of Trials and was already obliterating a sealed gate. One user tweeted, "Yo, is Suho the new Sword King?" But someone else immediately clapped back in the replies. They declared the dude was straight up a sword god. Then, boom. Article number 2 hit the feed. An Suho officially signs with the Nexus Academy. The keyboards lit up instantly, with users pulling out receipts of him claiming he wanted to ride with the Hunters Association. The timeline became a dumpster fire of people calling him a sellout, roasting him to oblivion. But right at the peak of the drama, the third headline nuke dropped. Nexus Guild's An Suho challenges the Swamp of Despair, another sealed gate raid. The comments went wild. One guy labeled him an absolute madman. Another user ruthlessly dragged the haters who thought Suho was just cash grabbing. "Where are all the sellout comments now, huh?" they mocked. Bandwagoners flooded the thread, claiming they were day one fans, while others swore their undying loyalty to their new absolute idol. Some hardcore stans even threatened to cancel anyone who dared disrespect his name again. Watching the chaos unfold on his screen, Suho just scrolled through the madness. The vibe had totally flipped to pure hype. He smirked. Every single domino. Right then, Cholman stumbled into the room, looking like he just survived a minor apocalypse. Rubbing his temples with a heavy groan, he looked completely drained. Suho wasted zero time, asking if the green light for the Swamp of Despair was secured. Cholman sighed, saying that was the exact headache he just dealt with, having vivid flashbacks to the president's unhinged reaction. The association head had practically popped a blood vessel, screaming that Suho gets a VIP pass to anything he wants, flaming Cholman for not handing it over the second he asked. Shaking his head, Cholman muttered that our guy basically has an infinite master key to any dungeon on the map now. While the poor dude braced his soul for a mountain of bureaucratic red tape, Suho patted his back, thanking him for the carry as they strolled through the bullpen. Leaning in close, Suho casually dropped that he was taking the rank 5 test before the end of the year, but it had to stay strictly on the down low. He ordered total radio silence. Cholman instantly mimed zipping his lips shut, swearing on his life he wouldn't spill a single drop of tea. Watching him panic, Suho just let out a low, satisfied. He swore it was just a joke, but the guy's jaw straight up hit the floor. He signals that it is time to wipe out the gate. The camera pans over to Yongzhongdo, Incheon. The infamous, sealed S-rank gate, dubbed the Swamp of Despair, towers over everything. Suho squares up right in front of the colossal rift. Camera crews scramble to catch every second, while the crowd mutters the dark truth. Literally 0 hunters have ever walked out of this nightmare breathing. Sure, Suho is built different, but the skeptics are already counting him out. Meanwhile, glued to the monitors in the security booth, Jin Hui is sweating bullets. He nudges the panicking guy next to him, telling him to chill out before throwing down a wild wager. Flashing a cocky smirk, Jin Hui drops 1 million won on Suho soloing the dungeon. The other dude, still shaking in his boots, hesitantly takes the bet. He prays the kid survives, but deep down, he knows beating this death trap is basically... Suddenly, Cholman freezes, completely paralyzed. He screams that the portal is vanishing. The entire room goes dead silent, jaws dropping at the feeds. Jin Hui gasps, wondering if Suho seriously just speedran the whole thing. The anxious guy freaks out, yelling that there is no shot that just happened. Jin Hui accidentally decks Cholman in the face with his elbow, screaming to know the exact runtime. 10 minutes? 20? Rubbing his jaw, Cholman shakes his head. Not even 10. The dude crushed it in under 5 minutes. Flashback to the exact second Suho crossed the threshold. The system hits him with a wild twist. The Swamp of Despair literally has 0 entry requirements. An unlimited squad could jump in. Now Suho stares up at an impossibly massive staircase, piercing straight into a haunting, blood-red sky. The lore hits him hard. This exact raid claimed way more lives than the Nameless Sword incident. packing a 0% survival rate. The general public was completely clueless about the horrors going down in here. Suho knows the real gimmick. There are 0 mob spawns. To beat this level, you literally just have to walk up the steps. Sounds easy, right? Wrong. Every single stride is an absolute. That explains the grotesque monsters lining the path. They are not statues. They are past players, frozen in eternal agony. Suho pieces the meta together instantly. To conquer this domain, you absolutely need an S-tier skill or artifact granting mental protection. Otherwise, the crushing depression flatlines you, turning your body into just another stone decoration. Hence the name, Swamp of Despair. It is a literal one-way trip. Smirking faintly, Suho plants his boot on the first step. To him, the lore is irrelevant. Bam! A suffocating wave of pure misery crashes down on his mind. His knees buckle for a split second as toxic purple aura swarms his head. But that smirk, it never leaves his face. The iconic blue screens pop up. Dragon Blood passive triggered. Total immunity to mental debuffs achieved. With ancient dragon energy coursing through his veins, the deadliest dungeon on Earth just became a casual morning walk. Suho marches upward, completely ignoring the nightmare fuel lurking in the shadows. He casually strides up the endless flight. The higher he pushes, the sparser the stone figures get. Barely anyone even survived the halfway mark. Petrified faces locked in pure terror stare back at him from the sidelines. It is tragic, but he knows there is no reset button for them. In his previous timeline, the absolute unit who originally beat this zone had to grind his mental fortitude for hundreds of days straight. That legend actually tried to rescue these lost souls. He ended up totally alone, unable to pull off a single rescue. Snapping back to reality, Suho finally hits the summit. Peering down at the endless sea of petrified corpses, he whispers a quiet tribute. He acknowledges the absolute hell they went through. Clasping his hands in prayer, he vows to give them closure. Releasing their trapped spirits is the only play left. Just then, a blinding white portal materializes. The system officially crowns him MVP, showering him with massive bonus XP and a shiny new skill point. A massive server-first notification pops off. He is the first human to ever conquer this rift, netting him 5 extra skill points. Ding! The level up alert flashes, boosting his stats and dropping even more points. Flexing a confident grin, Suho declares it is time to claim the ultimate loot. The system blesses his inventory with an insanely rare artifact. This broken accessory lets the user literally see feelings as colored auras. It can siphon light or dark energy and weaponize it however he wants, with 0 stated cooldowns. Suho recalls that in the old timeline, only the original Conqueror managed to score this exact ring. That guy strictly used its powers to cure mental trauma, only to get jumped and robbed by rival guilds later on. Raising his hand, Suho promises himself that history is not repeating itself today. He smoothly slides the band onto his finger. Standing like a boss at the summit, the artifact instantly activates. It violently vacuums up all the pitch-black aura, oozing from the cursed bodies below. Because of his dragon blood buff, the toxic backlash does absolutely 0 damage. As he presses a hand to the ground, the system flags a massive spike in emotional resonance. The energy runs pure black, and the absorption kicks into overdrive. Dark shadows violently tornado around him as Suho thrusts his right hand forward. The ring instantly hits its maximum capacity. But it is still not enough juice to cleanse the endless miles of petrified victims. Still, he has fully tapped out his options here. Pivoting on his heel, he locks his eyes onto the exit portal and prepares to step out of the void. Time to bounce, Suho muttered under his breath. But the second his boots hit the pavement, a massive swarm of reporters totally ambushed him. Blinding camera flashes exploded like rapid fire. He threw an arm up to shield his eyes, dodging the relentless shouts of journalists, begging for a single glance at their lenses. Before he could even catch his breath, the duo was totally hyped. Cholman threw a massive fist pump, aggressively demanding the rundown on how Suho actually managed 4 minutes and 17 seconds. That was all it took, and honestly, everyone swore this dungeon was way deadlier than the legendary Nameless Sword. Jinhui was practically screaming, yelling that he had to drop a breaking news article right that second. Suho chuckled, telling the boys to chill out. Flashing a laid-back grin, he offered them a quick selfie, which the 2 fanboys hyped up instantly. The second the news dropped, the internet went totally insane. Forums blew up with people debating if Suho seriously conquered the infamous Swamp of Despair. We are talking about a dungeon that literally swallowed hunters whole. Nobody ever made it back alive. But the crazy truth? Meanwhile, Dong-hyuk was completely glued to his tablet. His jaw practically hit the floor, entirely shell-shocked by that sub-5-minute clear time. He buried his face in his trembling hands, totally unable to wrap his head around the insane stats glowing on the screen. Suddenly, his office phone shattered the silence. He snatched the receiver, and the voice on the other end dropped a massive introduction. It was none other than John Kyung-hwan, the absolute top dog, the president of the Korea. With chilling politeness, the president asked if Dong-hyuk had a quick second to chat about a specific matter. Dong-hyuk did not miss a beat. He knew instantly this call was 100% about An Suho. Kyung-hwan requested an in-person meeting at headquarters, but Dong-hyuk smoothly countered with a lunch invitation. The president locked it in. The moment the line clicked dead, a guy strolled into the office wanting to talk, but Dong-hyuk brushed him off, immediately buzzing his secretary, Kim Lee-gang. He gave a strict order: set up a sit-down with Hunter An Suho right now. Fast forward a bit, a slick white ride rolled to a stop, and Jinhui gave Suho. Stepping out into the breeze, Suho casually asked if Jinhui was heading back to the broadcasting station next. Jinhui smirked, explaining that his killer Swamp of Despair piece was already drafted. It just needed a few quick tweaks before breaking the internet. He then pitched a super chill idea, a massive food tour for next time. The guy honestly lived for writing epic restaurant reviews on the side. Suho totally vibed with that and promised to tag along. As the vehicle peeled away, he glanced down at his ring, a massive smile spreading across his face. He murmured that all that insane hype from Jinhui had supercharged. Stepping into the high-end diner, Suho strolled up to the VIP table. Gwan instantly hyped him up, loudly dubbing him the ultimate protector of South Korea. The president warmly motioned for him to grab the open chair right next to Dong-hyuk. Suho hit them with a polite thank you and settled into his spot. Glancing around, he mentally checked the heavy hitters at the table. Kyung-hwan, Guwon, slightly thrown off by this intense, high society vibe, he stayed quiet while Kyung-hwan showered him with massive congratulations. The president completely hyped up his insane, record-breaking clear times for both sealed gates, straight up calling him the absolute future of the nation. Guwon excitedly raised his glass for a toast. Suho lifted his own cup, smoothly dedicating the cheers to their mutual success. Crystal clinked sharply across the table. Midway through the meal, the president casually brought up a rumor about Suho rocking an open-ended guild contract. Dong-hyuk immediately backed that claim up. While your average hunter was locked down for 3 rigid years, on Suho, the kid had way too much potential to benefit the country, meaning 0 restrictions would ever hold him back. Kyung-hwan let out a hearty laugh, super stoked that guild leader Dong-hyuk was totally on the same wavelength as the association. He turned to Suho, asking if he was cool with this flex arrangement. Suho smoothly replied that he was incredibly grateful for the guild leader having his back. Chief Bei chimed in, making his move. He flat out stated how hyped he was for the day Suho officially joined the Hunters Association. Because snagging him would not just level up their squad, it would skyrocket the entire nation's power ranking. Flashing a cryptic smirk, Gawon revealed that the president had a super exclusive letter of appreciation for him. Internally, Suho was practically doing backflips. This single piece of paper was the ultimate cheat code. It basically guaranteed he would completely ace the level. Playing it cool, he voiced his deep honor. Kyung-hwan then admitted this whole lunch was originally supposed to be a victory party for the nameless sword raid. But Suho speedran another insane gate so fast that the top brass literally could not keep up with his pace. Suho played the humble card, smoothly giving the president credit for granting him the VIP clearance. The big shots absolutely ate that answer up. Gripping his glass tight, Chief Bei finally dropped the million-dollar question. How exactly did Suho survive the Swamp of Despair when every other hunter became monster food? With intel basically non-existent, Suho immediately clocked Bei's scary talent for digging up hidden secrets, a chilling trait he remembered clearly from his past life. So, he kept his mental shields way up. Flashing an easygoing smile, he casually dropped a massive twist. There were absolutely 0 monsters inside that gate, just one massive, sketchy staircase. The second his boot hit that first step, his danger sense went totally crazy. So, he just spammed his gear and relentlessly kept climbing until he conquered the whole domain. Jaws literally dropped across the room, as the association rep stared in absolute disbelief. Chief Pai stroked his beard, genuinely mind-blown that Suho totally Leaning in, Chu-man probed about his current stats, dropping the bomb that rumor had it Suho had not even cracked level 100 yet. Suho casually admitted that he was only level 53. Chief Pai practically choked on his own breath, demanding to know what wild skill he just unlocked, as the ring on the finger of Suho pulsed with a blinding white glow. Suho instantly clocked their vibe. The association totally wanted to mold him into their own personal attack dog. Playing it cool, he claimed he was just a healer. But since he leaned more towards blades, he naturally picked up the sword path. Chief Pai brushed it off, saying swordsmanship was pretty basic, even if it was a total curveball for a healer class. Internally, Suho noted that the special division was stacked with insane abilities, so his setup was not exactly flexing on them yet. Honestly, he absolutely hated being treated like a disposable pawn. Keeping up the act, he voiced that while slicing things up was his main gig, he desperately needed backing to level up his healing skills, since the shelf life of a hunter was way too short. Dong-hyuk and Kyung-won nodded hard, agreeing that hunters basically lived in the danger zone 24/7 and hyped up the Nexus Guild as his ultimate safety net. The higher-ups smirked as Chu-Man confidently pitched himself as the perfect bridge between the guild and the association. Chief Pai chimed in, making sure Suho knew he had his back too. Low-key overwhelmed by all this aggressive networking, Suho pumped his fist and swore to absolutely wipe out every single gate in Korea. The suits clapped it up, and Chu-Man poured another round. As the sky pitched black, they finally wrapped up the chaotic dinner. Stepping into the cool night air, Suho and Chief Pai waved off the big shots. Suho played polite, saying the vibe was immaculate. The second the taillights vanished, Chief Pai reached into his coat and offered Suho a smoke. Suho passed, but the chief sparked up anyway, muttering that a good schmooze fest always required a post-party drag. He casually slid Suho his card, flexing that he ghosts most people, but would totally pick up for him. Then, he casually pried into where Suho was crashing. Suho shrugged, explaining his old spot was basically swarmed by crazy. Chief Pai scowled, calling it an absolute epidemic. The second hunters blew up. They got mobbed by toxic crowds. Suho brushed it off as just fans being fans, but that innocent take instantly made the aura of Pai turn pitch black. Oh crap. Suho instantly realized how painfully naive that sounded to a guy who looked at normal civilians like literal cannon fodder. It was an icy mindset the top brass fully embraced. Shifting gears, Chief Pai mentioned that, while the official exams were locked for the end of the year, Suho was basically already a shoo-in. Suho just nodded along. The chief smirked, admitting he originally pegged Suho as some humble kid, but now saw he was actually playing 4D chess. Suddenly, he threw an arm around Suho, joking that they should practice their boss and minion dynamic right now, since Suho was destined to be his subordinate anyway. Suho played along, getting a solid chuckle out of Pai. But then the chief dropped a bombshell, asking if Suho wanted to ditch the gate grind completely and join the completely cutting out Dong-hyuk as the middleman. Suddenly, the emotion ring flared to life, radiating a fierce white aura. In his head, Suho locked on to Pai, pulling the strings on his intentions. Flashing a fake smile, he assured the chief they were totally cool. He hyped up how insanely crucial the special forces were. The ring cranked the positive vibes to the max, and literal white mist seeped from the eyes of Pai as he praised Suho for actually having some serious hustle. That was the kind of fire he respected, unlike those wannabe hunters chasing clout. He leaned in, fishing to see if Suho was tight with Chu-Man from the gate sector. Suho played it perfectly, saying Chu-Man was cool, but he heavily hinted that teaming up with the special ops head was his ultimate goal. Hook, line, and sinker. Pai looked absolute. He clapped a hand onto the shoulder of Suho, hyping up his elite networking skills. Suho threw back some gratitude, sliding in his master plan to bypass the grind and snag a special recruitment spot in the department. Pai stroked his chin, doing the math. He muttered that the draft for level 5 hunters was already hyped for December, so burning a fast-track token on a guy who was guaranteed to pass anyway felt a bit extra. Behind his calm face, Suho knew the ring was doing the heavy lifting, twisting the interest. The mind control would not stick forever, but it was plenty to lock in his support tonight. Standing shoulder to shoulder, Pai confessed he was genuinely shocked Suho was grinding so hard to join their ranks. Suho instantly pivoted back to the special entry route. Pai sighed, admitting backstage passes were incredible. However, if the special division ran low on manpower, they could easily greenlight an emergency draft. Pai clarified that to trigger this fast-track recruitment, Suho had to prove he was an absolute asset. Suho immediately questioned if that meant raiding more gates, but Pai quickly corrected him. The special task force dealt exclusively with Rogue Awakened, a far deadlier. Suho had completely blanked on that detail. Pai stressed that villains armed with superhuman powers were walking natural disasters. Sure, Suho was insanely strong, but slaughtering monsters and hunting down superpowered fugitives were two totally different ballgames. The test was simple. Pick any high-profile target from the wanted list and drag them straight to headquarters. Pull that off, and he would be wearing the badge in just 1 or 2 months. Right on cue, a sleek ride rolled up. Pai noted that most rookies would totally freak out at the thought of hunting down rogue villains. Flashing a knowing grin, he promised to eagerly await the young hunter's success. Suho's mind drifted back to his previous life, Back then, Pai couldn't even remember his name until he completely dominated the nameless swordsman. But this timeline? The butterfly effect was already tracking the retreating vehicle. Suho smirked. He knew that shady syndicates and their grunts would soon infiltrate the rookie exams, serving as the perfect bait for his master plan. Just up ahead, a cluster of rundown buildings loomed. Suho's dark silhouette stretched across the concrete, while a nasty cloud of cigarette smoke bled from an open window. He whispered that he had waltzed straight into the Viper's den. Flipping on his mana radar, he locked onto a massive cluster of sketchy signatures inside. Bingo! He casually scooped up a stray brick with his left hand, and without a second thought, launched it like a missile right through the glass, shattering the criminal's cozy little hideout. The glass exploded. One thug stuttered in pure shock, wildly looking around, while another screamed that some suicidal kid was begging for a death. Furious, the whole gang stormed out into the alley, ready to absolutely obliterate whoever had cracked. They skidded to a halt right in front of the lone teenager, barking at him to spit out his demands. A bleach-blonde gangster sized him up, practically shaking as he asked if the Suho just flashed a cold, terrifying smile and promised them he was stone-cold sober. Then he dropped the bomb, asking if they were the exact same lowlifes who had been draining crypto wallets with their elaborate phishing scams. Instantly, sheer panic washed over the syndicate's faces. Then, he casually dropped the name COG1, asking if they were keeping the guy locked up. The mobsters furiously exchanged paranoid glances. Totally mind-blown. Who was this random kid, and how did he know all their dirty little secrets? One of the goons sweated, whispering that he had to be an undercover fed. A heavier guy snapped back that they needed to silence him permanently. Another flinched, nervously wondering if catching a body would bring down too much heat. But the boss instantly shut that down. This punk was already a massive liability, and they were already in too deep anyway. Burying him was their only option. He honestly couldn't believe how pathetic these losers were. In his head, he dared the absolute clowns to come at him. If anything, they would make phenomenal test dummies. Sparking his aura, he manifested a wicked shadow spear and blasted a warning shot right past a goon's face, erupting a flurry of dark chains that violently wrapped around the guy. Sizzling purple energy locked down his thrashing body, while his bald buddy shrieked his name in pure terror. Roaring furiously, a swarm of thugs rushed Suho, but he ghosted through their attacks like they were moving in slow motion. The bleach-blonde gangster suddenly lunged forward with a heavy polearm, actually scoring a dead-center strike. But the weapon simply bounced off. The mobster's jaw practically hit the pavement as Suho, now rocking a tiny scratch and a few drops of blood, just grinned like a demon. A system window chimed, activating his blood manipulation, and a terrifyingly sharp crimson spear materialized right in his grip. With zero hesitation, he slammed the blood-red polearm directly into the guy's chest, launching him across the concrete like a rag doll. Suho casually reminded himself to keep, but there were absolutely zero rules against beating them into a coma. Another hothead charged in blind, screaming absolute garbage, only to get completely obliterated by a devastating roundhouse kick. In seconds, the entire crew was wiped, leaving just the ball violently shaking and whispering that this kid was a literal monster. He spun around to sprint for his life, but Suho casually pinned his leg to the asphalt with the blood spear, softly asking if he really thought he could just bounce. Surveying the absolute massacre around him, Suho coldly ordered the groaning bodies to shut up, unless they wanted to find out what real torture felt like. Swiping the air, he sucked every single one of them into his dimensional subspace, brushing the dirt off his palms. He cracked his neck and muttered that it was finally rescue time. Stepping over the shattered glass and wandering into which literally looked like a hurricane had hit it, Suho spotted his prize. COG1 was collapsed in the corner, totally passed out in front of a glowing laptop. Suho tapped the desk, calling his name, and the exhausted hacker practically jumped out, staring at his savior in pure disbelief. When the young hunter smirked and asked if his brain had finally rebooted, Jiwan frantically scanned the wrecked room, stuttering out a desperate question about the ambush. Suho just gave him a super chill wave and formally dropped his name. The hacker completely froze. His jaw dropped as he panicked, asking if this was actually the infamous Sung Suho blowing up the news algorithms. His brain literally short-circuited, trying to figure out why an elite, and more importantly, where the ruthless cartel that kidnapped him had vanished to. Trembling like a leaf, the guy looked like he was about to pass out all over again. Suho's mind flashed back to the gritty pages of Jiwan's memoir. The guy had survived absolute hell, battered and caged by those exact scumbags for 6 months. Catching the raw panic in Jiwan's eyes, Suho knew words wouldn't cut it right now. He simply reached out, offering a steady hand to the broken survivor. Instantly, the ring on Suho's finger sparked to life, reacting to the suffocating waves. Without a second thought, Suho pressed his palm flat against Jiwon's chest, pulling every last drop of that crushing despair right out of him. Breathing easier now? Suho asked. Jiwon could only gawk at him, his mind completely blown and unable to process the violent shakes had just vanished. Dropping to one knee, Suho kept his voice quiet and level. He explained he had noticed the guy's wrecked nervous system and triggered a skill to stabilize him. Catching his breath, Jiwon stammered, terrified about what was coming next. Am I getting locked up? He choked out. Suho just raised an eyebrow. For what exactly? Jiwon guiltily confessed to crossing some major lines, but Suho instantly shut that down, reminding him he was a literal hostage with zero choice, and victims absolutely do not belong behind bars. Jiwon gave a shaky nod, though paranoia still clawed at him. How did you even track me down? Considering Suho wasn't even flying an association badge yet, it made zero sense. Suho brushed it off, claiming a top-secret tracking skill led him right to the hideout. He laid all his cards on the table for one simple reason. He desperately needed Jiwon on his squad. Jiwon just gripped his trembling left hand and whispered that he was basically garbage. Turns out Jiwon was the only awakened in all of South Korea rocking the cyber-type trait. Jiwon's jaw practically hit the floor as Suho dropped the lore. Explaining that out of millions of abilities popping up globally, it let the user actually dive their consciousness straight into the— One was Seo Jiwon. The other was a downright menace known only as Overload. That psycho tapped into the god-tier power of digitization, and dead-ass tried to hijack. Even after the system crashed down on reality, Overload morphed into an apocalyptic-level glitch, and the sole hero who managed to delete him, that was Seo Jiwon himself. Barely 12 months after breaking free from those underworld scumbags, Jiwon pulled a vanishing act and made the ultimate sacrifice, totally wiping Overload off the server at the cost of his own life. History remembered him as an absolute legend, stamping his brutal— Flashing back to that dark future, Suho silently swore that in this timeline, Overload wasn't even getting past the loading screen, and absolutely no one was dying on his watch. Staring down the broken hacker, Suho made it crystal clear. This was exactly why he needed him. Someday soon, the gates in the system were going to fast-track humanity straight toward an apocalyptic game, and there was zero chance Suho could solo that boss raid. I need your help, he asked directly. Shivers wrecked Jiwon's frame as he stared back, completely starstruck. While tendrils of inky blackness pulsed from the ring, triggering another system alert for a max-level stat drain, Jiwon shut his eyes tight, his mind racing. Could a shattered guy like him actually flex enough power to threaten the globe? Honestly, he would have pawned his soul to the devil just to break out of that. But looking at the absolute unit who just dragged him from hell, he knew he had to back up the guy who saved his life. Dropping to his knees, Jiwon bawled, finally grasping that an evil hacker with his exact skill tree could literally crash reality. I don't know if I'm built for this, he stammered. But I'm all in. Hearing that, Suho saw the exact legend from the book, a guy who dragged himself through the deepest pits of despair, yet never lost his pure heart. Suho flashed a genuine smile, thanked him sincerely, and declared mission objective number 1, getting some real food. When Jiwon embarrassingly mumbled he was broke, Suho kicked a pair of slides his way. It's on me, don't sweat it. Still reeling, Jiwon asked how this stranger had all the cheat codes to his life. Rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly, Suho just blamed it on an overpowered passive skill. Hot tears immediately blurred Jiwon's vision, hearing someone finally acknowledge the pure agony he had survived. Fast forward to the diner, Jiwon frantically apologized between massive bites for eating like a starved animal. It had been agonizingly long since his last decent meal. Suho just laughed it off, instantly signaling the waiter to keep the plates coming. Scraping his bowl clean, Jiwon nervously muttered a thank you before hesitating over a question. Suho quickly cut the tension. They were squad mates now, zero filters needed. Plus, with only a 1-year age gap, formality was basically banned, first names only. Handing off his empty dish, Jiwon gave a slight nod, telling Suho that the casual vibe went both ways. Then he dropped the big question. Instead of rolling with a top-tier guild or launching his own faction, after all, government gigs were notorious for their soul-crushing red tape. Suho leaned back, eyes drifting shut, because honestly, it doesn't matter how cracked a guild gets.